Chapter 759. Lady Qi's face was full of admiration. She said sincerely, "Governor, you're really not an ordinary woman. You're not an ordinary woman either." Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids and glanced at the pile of gifts. She then glanced at the maids with knives behind Lady Qi. The audience in the streaming room was dumbfounded. Even through the screen they could still feel that the atmosphere in the picture was a little strange. Yuatong, well? Can anyone tell me what Huang Song's lowly wife means? I feel like my IQ is not enough. If it was a mockery, her gift of rouge and jewelry would not cause the streamer any trouble. If it was a show of goodwill, I feel a little strange. If it were other women giving rouge, face powder, and cloth jewelry would certainly not be so out of place. However, if it were Jiang Pingji, even the dullest audience would feel that something was wrong. Rouge, face powder, cloth jewelry. These things that girls like seem to be very different from the streamer's style. Chioha Rimidu, haha, maybe she's jealous? Think about it. When the streamer and Huang Song were together, how many times did they go to the brothel? They held a little beauty in their arms, listened to songs and watched dances and looked like good brothers. If I were Huang Song's wife, I would definitely feel uncomfortable. However, giving rouge, face powder, and so on is something that I've seen too much of. I feel that her actions are particularly refreshing. Many people think that this is just a girl's jealousy. It's not a big deal at all. However, there are still many viewers who disagree. Xinjia, I don't agree that Huang Song's wife's methods are refreshing. She seems reckless and headstrong, but she's actually very shrewd. It's not as simple as jealousy. It's provocation and testing. Have you ever seen a maid carry a knife when visiting someone's house or thanking them? As for the gifts given by Huang Song's wife, there's definitely nothing wrong with them on a woman. The streamer said that they are all good things. Can you say that these gifts are not thoughtful? But the problem is that the streamer is not an ordinary woman. Using rouge as a gift is very provocative. Lao Ciji Lianming. For an inappropriate example, Prime Minister Zhuge gave Sima Yi women's clothes before the battle. Do you think this is appropriate? Anyone with a discerning eye knows that it's not appropriate to give the streamer rouge and face powder. It's better to change it to medicinal herbs and jade. It's not outstanding, but it's also not wrong. Madame Huang Song must have known this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked the streamer, "Are you angry?" She must have done this on purpose. On purpose? The live stream viewers were stunned. If no one had reminded them, they wouldn't have noticed the detail of carrying a knife. Indeed, who would be armed to the teeth when going out to thank a guest? Most of the audience were on the main streamer's side. They would subconsciously protect Jiang Pingji's interests. Their impression of Huang Song's wife was a little worse. Madame Qi shook her head in shame and waved her hand, motioning for the four maids behind her to retreat. After the maid retreated, Madame Qi raised her hand to remove the knife from her waist and pushed it a few feet forward, away from where she could touch it. "Prefecture Governor, you're praising me too much. In your eyes, I'm just a vulgar woman who only knows how to be jealous, right?" Jiang Pingji calmly watched her movements. Why does Madame say that? If Madame only knew how to be jealous, then the things that were sent to her door would not be good. It would be better to casually pick some ordinary things. Since Madame dares to bring these things to your door, isn't it because you're certain that you can achieve your goal and retreat unscathed? She clearly knew that Jiang Pingji could dismember people with an ivory baton, yet she still had the guts to come and test her. This could no longer be summed up as being bold. However, being bold did not mean being reckless. In Jiang Pingji's opinion, Madame Qi was quite scheming. The livestream viewers felt that Madame Qi was provoking her because of Huang Song, but Jiang Pingji didn't think so. The purpose of this person's visit was to test her more than to provoke her. Jealousy was just an added bonus. To put it bluntly, in the face of a gift from Madame Qi, there was no woman who would not like it. If Jiang Pingji acted like she liked it very much, it could only show that she was an ordinary woman who liked colors. A woman who loved beauty and was somewhat vain was naturally easy to deal with, because this was a weakness. If she flew into a rage, Madame Qi would not be surprised. This showed that Jiang Pingji's future achievements would be limited. Even if she was already the prefecture governor, she was limited by her identity as a woman and did not have enough magnanimity and foresight. How far could she go in the future? It was even more reassuring. In the end, Jiang Pingji's reaction was neither of the above two. She was not angry. Instead, she gladly accepted the gift. Her purpose was to give it to a beautiful woman, to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. Not only did it show her tolerance and magnanimity, but it also helped to save Madame Qi's face. The more she did this, the more Madame Qi did not dare to look down on her, so she ordered the maid to retreat and unsheathed the knife at her waist to show that she was on good terms with her. She was sure that even if Jiang Pingji was a woman, her advantages would not be diminished because of this, and her future achievements would not stop at being the prefecture governor of Wanzhou. She must be a formidable opponent. Madame Qi said, "Compared to my petty cleverness, your magnanimity are what make people tremble in fear." Jiang Pingji used a declarative sentence. "I don't think Huang Song asked you to prepare these gifts." "Bogeo doesn't know about this," Madame Qi said. "This is my decision. I hope this will not affect the friendship between you and Bogeo." "I guess so. Even if Huang Bogeo had the intention to test me, he wouldn't have the guts." Regardless of whether there would be a conflict with Huang Song in the future, at least for now, they were still friends who could talk to each other. Jiang Pingji smiled and teased, "Madam, aren't you worried?" Madame Qi twirled her handkerchief and rolled her eyes. "I was a little worried before I came, but I'm not worried now." She smiled guiltily and said, "I know that Bogeo isn't a very good person, but I admire him from head to toe. The two of us are husband and wife who drank the nuptial wine. In my eyes, he is the best husband in the world. However, your magnanimity are completely different from the women in the world who are in love. If it was a man, I might have fallen in love with someone else. He's so outstanding, so I naturally wouldn't think highly of Bogeo. I won't be delusional and think that Bogeo can attract your attention." Jiang Pingji laughed involuntarily. "If he heard what you said, he would fight me to the death." She asked the maid outside to put away Madame Qi's gifts. Madame Qi asked her with interest, "Just now you said that you wanted to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. I wonder which beauty is so blessed? In my opinion, all the women in the world are unparalleled beauties. How can this be considered a blessing? It's how it should be." When Madame Qi heard this, a smile bloomed on her face and she complained half-truthfully, "I feel that it's a pity that the governor is a woman, but I'm also a little glad." "Why do you say that? If the governor is a man, how fortunate would it be for the woman who can make you hold her in the palm of your hand and cherish her? But how sad would it be for those women who adore you but can't get their hands on you?" Madame Qi said, "Fortunately, the governor is a woman." Chapter 760. Although there was some friction at the beginning, the conversation was still relatively pleasant. Seeing that the sky outside was slightly dark, Lady Qi said with a smile, "I had a pleasant conversation with you. We hit it off at first sight. I was so happy that I forgot the time. If I delay any longer, I'm afraid I'll delay your official business. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." "Please do as you please, my lady. The security in the city is unstable now. If anything goes wrong on the way, I won't be able to explain it to Bogeo." Jiang Pingji arranged for someone to escort Lady Qi back. Huang Bogeo is really lucky to have a good wife. Huijun was a little happy when she received the generous gift. When she heard that it was from Huang Song's wife, she was immediately displeased. "Good wife? I can't tell. If it weren't for Langjuan's magnanimity and not bothering with such a vulgar woman, I'm afraid she would have caused trouble for Chief Huang." Huijun frowned. She said that she came to thank Langjun for saving her husband, but her actions aren't like that. Who would come to thank you fully armed? Those maids all seem to be trained. It's not a problem for them to deal with one or two ordinary burly men. Jiang Pingji laughed involuntarily and raised her hand to poke Huijun's furrowed brows. Seeing that Huijun exclaimed and raised her hand to cover the space between her brows, Jiang Pingji said, "Do you also think that Huang Song's wife has no guts? She's not reckless, but she's not worthy of Langjuan's praise." Huijun thought of those precious items and frowned even more fiercely. Langjun was different from ordinary women. He was more outstanding than ordinary men. Why would he need to deal with cosmetics? "I think you're quite jealous." Jiang Pingji smiled helplessly and shook her head. The matter of her giving rouge and cosmetics depends on how others interpret it. Don't forget that it's also a big trend for men to wear cosmetics nowadays. Not only do women use it, but men use it even more. Strictly speaking, there's nothing wrong with her gift this time. The fault lies in the fact that your Langjun is a woman and not a man. That's why there's a dispute. Huijun snorted softly, feeling unsettled. Is she certain that Langjun won't be able to do anything? What else? Jiang Pingji said, "If I were to go against the grain and insist that she gave me rouge and cosmetics to humiliate me, wouldn't that mean that I also mind my identity as a daughter? Otherwise, why would he be so angry? What's more, according to the current fashion, even men giving each other cosmetics was considered elegant, let alone this matter. If I get angry, I'll just be a joke to the people outside." This was the best way to deal with it. "I still don't like her," Huijun said. "I'm angry. She is Huang Song's wife. Naturally she will protect Huang Song for free. Jiang Pingji smiled. You are my family. Naturally you will protect me. Let's go and see what good things Madame Qi has sent. If the goods aren't good enough, I'll blackmail Huang Song for some. This matter quickly reached the ears of Feng Zhen and Yang Si. A visitor with a knife. Who on earth is this Madame Qi? How dare she be so bold? Feng Zhen frowned at first, but when he heard that his lord had successfully settled the matter, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and began to pay attention to the gossip. Yang Si thought about it carefully and said, the surname is Qi. Could it be the Qi family whose ancestors had 2 military officers? The Grand Commandant was in charge of martial arts. His salary was 10,000 stones and he had a golden seal and purple ribbon. The Qi family was a martial family. During the Great Xia dynasty they had produced 2 military officers in a row. At the end of the Great Xia dynasty, the Qi family was dragged into the battle for the throne. They lost by a single move, and the entire family was liquidated by the new emperor. The Qi family decisively cut off their tail to protect themselves. Although their vitality was greatly damaged, at least their legacy was not broken. However, it was said that the Qi family had few descendants in the past 2 generations. It was a little difficult to pass on their legacy. Feng Zhen rolled up his sleeves and sighed. Who knows? If she's really a woman from the Qi family, it's not surprising that she did this. Yang Si lit the oil lamps in the hall and added 2 more lamps to his table so that he wouldn't have to spend too much effort reading official documents. Huang Song is really lucky. Yang Si took out a roll of bamboo slips. It's a pity that our lord can't take this shortcut. Others could use marriage to strengthen themselves, but their lord was a woman. If she wanted to do this, she could only let someone marry into her family. Was it something that decent people would be willing to do? Even if it was an ordinary family, as long as they didn't starve to death, they wouldn't easily marry into their family. Although their lord had done very well, her identity as a woman was still a shortcoming. Therefore she needed to do her best to smooth out the injustice. Fairness was never given out by outsiders. One could only rely on oneself to fight for it. Feng Zhen twirled the beard that he had just begun to grow. She doesn't need it either. She had been able to go from poverty to where she was now without relying on Lu Shi. Now that she had restored her original form and was in control of Wanzhou, how could it be more difficult than before? Elsewhere, Huang Song happened to find out by chance that his lady had prepared a thank you gift for Jiang Pingji. He was instantly scared out of his wits. Gift of rouge, face powder, cloth jewelry? Huang Song restrained himself again and again before he managed to suppress the urge to lift the person up by the collar. Was this the lady's own idea, or was it instigated by you wicked servants? How could the servants dare to say that they had instigated it? The entire backyard was Lady Qi's world. Not to mention Huang Song, the male master, the other servants were so disciplined that they didn't dare to say anything. Yes, it was the lady's own decision. Huang Song was like a deflated doll. He felt like his whole body was about to go limp. All of you can leave. Just as he was about to send them out, he remembered something and called them back. How long has the lady been out? It's been about 4 hours. 4 hours? Huang Song looked at the sky, which was almost completely dark. His face suddenly darkened. The lady hasn't returned yet? The servant replied, she hasn't returned yet. Huang Song was anxious and said, prepare the horse immediately. He was quite confident in Jiang Pingji. She was magnanimous. He also had confidence in his lady. Although she had a temper, she wouldn't go overboard. However, if the 2 of them were to meet, Huang Song wouldn't have the slightest bit of confidence. The coachman had just brought the horse over. Before Huang Song could mount the horse, Lady Qi's carriage had already leisurely stopped in front of the door. Madam, are you all right? Huang Song hurriedly went up to greet her. What can happen to me? The governor of Liuzhou isn't a jackal. He won't eat me. Lady Qi glanced at him as if she was rebuking him. Her young and beautiful face had a hint of sharpness. I'm afraid that you'll hurt each other. Huang Song swallowed his words and said, I'm worried about the lady. Lanting's temperament has always been difficult to understand. When I heard that you sent a pile of rouge and face powder just now, I almost broke out in a sweat. Lady Qi rolled her eyes at Huang Song. I'm not giving her a menstrual band. It's just some high-quality rouge and face powder. Both men and women can use it and it doesn't violate any taboo. If she accepts it magnanimously, not only will it help both parties maintain their dignity, but it will also become a good story. If outsiders know about it, at most they'll say that I'm a petty woman and praise her for being magnanimous and extraordinary. If she even cares about this, it shows how broad-minded she is. A narrow-minded woman, no matter what her starting point was now, would have a very difficult time in the future. As long as Jiang Pingji wasn't stupid, she would definitely not make the wrong move. Huang Song was choked and speechless. Chapter 761. How is Bogeo's relationship with Lu Prefecture's governor? Madame Qi took off her cloak to keep out the cold and handed it to the maid. We have a good relationship. We used to go together, Huang Song said casually. When his eyes met his wife's stern eyes, he immediately swallowed the rest of his words. It was not convenient to talk about their romantic past. Anyway, we have a good personal relationship. Fortunately, Lady Qi didn't care about what he didn't finish. I think that Lu Prefecture's overseer is extraordinarily ambitious. After today's conversation, I feel that her restoring her identity as a woman may not be passive but active. Madame Qi sat down, picked up the tea that the maid had poured for her, and took a sip to moisten her mouth. Her words were astonishing. Huang Song frowned and said, "That's impossible. Lanting's identity is well hidden. If it weren't for today's incident, I'm afraid I wouldn't have discovered it. Furthermore, what good was there in restoring his identity? If Lanting had been a man, he would have been conferred the title of governor of Wanzhou. With her father's power, he would have been able to sit firmly in the north. The imperial court was on the brink of death, and it was clear that there was no hope for them to be saved. This was merely the final radiance of the setting sun. Other than causing trouble for him, what other benefits did she gain from returning to her female identity? If you hide it, your future will be limitless. Why bother? As for the marriage of children, compared to his future prospects, this was not a problem at all. As for having children, she could find a man she liked in private. Wouldn't it be easy for her to give birth to a child for herself? As for the father of the child, he could either keep him or kill him. There were ways to deal with him without leaving any traces. If it wasn't for someone else exposing her or her own stupidity, how could she have discovered her true identity? How could they find out? Who would suspect that the playmate they drank with all day was a woman? Whether it was his words, actions, or style of doing things, he couldn't see any flaws at all. As for Jiang Pingji's appearance, according to the current trend, there were many men who were more effeminate than her. Lady Qi raised her eyelids and rolled her eyes at her husband. This is a woman's intuition. What do you know? Today he had a pleasant conversation with the governor of Liuzhou. He did not feel the slightest bit unhappy that his identity had been exposed, nor did he feel confused or hesitant about the outside world. On the contrary, he seemed to have been prepared. If that's really the case, then this Lu province overseer's ambition is definitely greater than I imagined. Faced with his wife's speculation, Huang Song only gave one response. Lady Qi said, "Oh what? Give me some reaction." Huang Song laughed and said, "What kind of reaction can your husband give?" Lanting was ambitious. This was not the first time he had found out about this. Their current relationship was still fine, so they could talk about the future in the future. I can't cut ties with Lanting just because she's too ambitious, right? Madame Qi said, "Even so, you have to be prepared. You have to keep an eye on Haozhou. This place is located at the border between the north and the south. Based on the current development of the two of them, there would definitely be a day when their interests would collide." Huang Song smiled and raised his hand to pull his wife into his arms. The couple's posture was intimate, as if they were hugging a doll. He said in a low voice, "It's not that I don't understand Madame's thoughts, but now is not the time. Lanting is powerful and is entrenched in the north. However, that is only on the surface. In the next few years I will only cooperate with her. There will be no conflict. It's too early for you to worry." What? Madame Qi was surprised. Huang Song said in a low voice, "In the north there are not only the Lu father and son, but also the northern borderline. As long as the northern borderline existed, Lanting's power would be restricted to the northern borderline. Starting a dispute with her because of me would be courting death. She will peacefully develop to the north, and I will develop from the north to the south. We will form an alliance and not interfere with each other. When she deals with the northern borderline, we will be completely at odds with each other. Do you understand?" Personal friendship was personal, and official business was official business. Not only did Jiang Pingji see it clearly, but Huang Song also understood it. United they were friends. Divided they were enemies. Whether they were enemies or friends depended on their standpoint. Originally, I thought that Lanting's chances of winning against the forces of the northern borderline were not high. Now that I look at it, I feel that the chances are 50-50. Huang Song lowered his eyes slightly and said, "In terms of magnanimity alone, there are very few in the world who can surpass her. Unfortunately, she is not a man." Madame Chi raised her hand and pinched the soft flesh on his waist. She bared her canine teeth and said, "What's wrong with being a woman? Can't women do big things?" "Madam, I didn't mean that. It hurts, it hurts. Let go. My flesh is about to turn purple." Huang Song begged for mercy repeatedly. Madame Chi only let go after a while. "Then do you hope that she can win against the northern borderline? The northern borderline is an outsider. How many innocent people have been slaughtered? Naturally, I hope that Lanting can win. If she is unable to do so, I will definitely do my best to help her." Huang Song secretly sucked in a breath of cold air and rubbed the area pitifully. Madame Chi's grip was still so strong. Women were really not to be trifled with. As he rubbed, he complained, "Sigh, Madame has caused unnecessary trouble this time. I will have to spend some of my private money again." Madame Chi's ears pricked up. "Are you saying that I have caused unnecessary trouble for you?" Huang Song bit her earlobe and said with a smile, "If you had given me something else, others would only think that I have a good personal relationship with Lanting. It would be normal for Madame to visit and thank me. But now I have given her rouge and face powder. Even if Lanting doesn't mind, it is difficult to guarantee that outsiders will not maliciously gossip and drive a wedge between us. To be safe, I have to personally visit her tomorrow and give her a double gift. I have to be serious." Madame Chi pouted but did not say anything. Huang Song continued, "Otherwise, if others deliberately humiliate Lanting in the future and ask the lady of the inner house to step in for everything, guess what will happen? Not only will she deal with those people, but she will also deal with your husband. Just in case, I will spend money to avert disaster." It had to be said that Huang Song still had some understanding of Jiang Pingji. Madame Chi said, "That's fine. I will go to the storeroom again and pick some good ones." The couple had not seen each other for a long time, and it was far better than being newlyweds. That night they were inseparable. As soon as they stopped, the flustered voice of the maid came from outside. At the same time, Jiang Pingji, who was about to rest, also received similar news. "The corpse is gone?" Jiang Pingji wore a cloak to ward off the cold and held a roll of bamboo slips in her hand. The servant who was reporting to her turned pale. The servant trembled and said, "Yes, I heard that a gust of demonic wind blew past and the remains of the corpse disappeared. His lord was the main force in killing the demon. It was difficult to guarantee that the demon would not cause trouble for his lord after it was resurrected." Thinking that there would be a demon secretly watching the mansion, the servant's face turned ashen. "If it's gone, then it's gone. Is there a need to make such a fuss?" Jiang Pingji waved her hand to dismiss the servant. Looking at the light on the lamp, Jiang Pingji reached out and teased the flame. "It has been killed 3 times and resurrected 3 times. I suppose that part of the popularity points stored in the system have been consumed," she muttered in a low voice, her eyes filled with a cold light. Chapter 762. How could Jiang Pingji not know that it was dangerous to let the time traveler run wild? As long as the hidden danger was not eliminated, not only would Jiang Pingji face the danger of being assassinated, but the people around her could also be implicated. A time traveler with no bottom line, a greedy system that wanted to see the world in chaos, and a scheming, greedy system that harbored evil intentions towards Jiang Pingji. Just based on this, Jiang Pingji could not allow them to live freely and cause trouble for her. Weeds would grow again if the roots were not removed. However, she was a rational hunter. She knew what to do to successfully catch her prey. No matter how anxious she was, she had to endure it. She could not let her prey discover her true intentions in advance. When hunting, one naturally had to kill in one shot. Once she made her move, she could not give her prey the slightest chance to escape. Tormenting the time traveler and the system was just a warm-up before the hunt. Step by step, she gave her prey the greatest pressure, made them run for their lives and exhausted them to a certain extent. When the time was right, it would be her time to strike. The system in the time traveler's body was different from the one in Jiang Pingji's body. The two came from the same source and their starting points were exactly the same. However, with different hosts, their growth paths were also different. Jiang Pingji knew about the hidden spark in the system from the beginning. She was always on guard against it and limited its growth. To use an analogy, Jiang Pingji's system was a pitiful little person whose food was deducted. She only ate 1 meal a day, her nutrition could not keep up, and her growth was seriously delayed. She was 1.8 meters tall and weighed less than 40 kilograms. She was skinny and had no ability to fight back. What about the system around the time traveler? Under the guidance of the system, the time traveler started a live stream. For the reward given by the system, the time traveler's bottom line became lower and lower. In the end, she did not even have a bottom line. With such a hard-working and willing host, how could the system earn less points of popularity? Compared to the pitiful system on Jiang Pingji's side, the time traveler's system was very happy. Every day it ate seafood and every meal was a feast with 108 dishes. It had to eat 8 to 10 meals a day. Its digestive system could not take it and it was already overweight. Jiang Pingji tormented the system just to slim it down and find ways to consume its points of popularity. When he had slimmed down to a certain extent and there were not many points of popularity left, it would be the best time for Jiang Pingji to close the net. If she could imprison both subsystems, she would like to see how big of a wave the system could cause. Teasing the dancing flames, Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. When the truth was revealed, she would let the Smartaliki system know who was the one scheming against whom. 2 flowers blossomed, one on each side. The woman had disguised herself as an old woman. Her body had been dismembered alive by Jiang Pingji using 5 ivory batons. She had died a miserable death. Host, this is the 3rd time. The system's voice was exceptionally cold, with a strong sense of reproach. If it weren't for Jiang Pingji's mischief that bound the system to the physical body, it would have long given up on this incompetent host. In just 1 or 2 months, it had died 3 times in the hands of the same person, and each time was more tragic than the last, which made the 3-corpse god furious. The old woman's soul was pulled into the system's space by the system and restored to the appearance of the beautiful woman in the red dress. Her face was extremely pale, and her eyes were still filled with panic and fear that hadn't dissipated. Although it was only for a moment, the severe pain of being dismembered still brought indescribable pain and trauma to her soul. The system's reproach made her slightly come back to her senses, and she secretly licked her full red lips. Because of the system's guidance, she never thought that she was controlled by the system. What was the system? What was the host? Just from the word itself, it was obvious who was in the dominant position. In her mind, the system was just a string of data. In the past, the woman in the red dress could tolerate the system's criticism because of their common interests. Now that she had suffered setbacks one after another, she was also annoyed. The 3rd time is the 3rd time. Who gave me the rotten idea? System, you said that exposing Lu Shi's identity as a woman would teach her a lesson. Now that it failed, you put all the blame on me. Who do you think you are? You're just data that isn't even a person. Don't put on airs in front of me. If you continue to provoke me, I'll go on strike now. Find another host if you can. The woman in the red dress was so angry that she said these words out of anger. She didn't know that her angry words just hit the system's sore spot. If I could change the host, why would I still argue with this idiot here? At first, the system chose the woman in the red dress as its host because it saw that she was easy to control. She had the intelligence of an ordinary person, was a little greedy, liked to reap without sowing, had a lot of unrealistic daydreams in her head, was vain, bullied the weak and feared the strong. The system liked this kind of host the most. She wasn't too stupid, but she wasn't smart either. She had weaknesses that could be easily controlled and made her the most obedient puppet. Now, it seemed that she was too stupid. She was incompetent, and even with the system's help, she was still beaten half to death by Jiang Pingji. The system was not afraid of this host at all. It had cooperated with her for more than 20 years and knew her true colors too well. It sneered, "Host, according to the original contract, you can unilaterally go on strike at will. Aren't you afraid of electric shock punishment or obliteration?" When the woman in the red dress heard the words, electric shock punishment, and obliteration, her body subconsciously trembled. "I haven't done anything wrong now. What right do you have to obliterate me?" For the woman in the red dress, nothing was more powerful than this threat. No one knew that she wasn't like this in the beginning. As a small online streamer who accidentally traveled to a strange and different world and had a powerful live streaming system in her head, she seemed like the standard for a female lead in a romance drama. The system's behavior was also similar to that of a novel. She became more and more convinced that she was extraordinary. At first, the system used its own tasks to test her bottom line and make her do things she didn't want to do. She was also unhappy. It was just a system, but it wanted to control her? Who was the host, and who was the obedient servant? She completed 2 tasks and tasted the sweetness. She resisted the 3rd task and the system judged her failure. The price of failure was a 2nd-level electric shock punishment. She didn't dare to recall that painful feeling after experiencing it once. On one hand, there was the generous reward for completing the task, and on the other hand, there was the painful punishment for failing the task. She cleverly chose the former. Even if the tasks issued by the system made her frown and made her feel uneasy, she still worked hard to complete the tasks when she thought of her own interests. As long as she was well, What did the life and death of other people have to do with her? When her streamer level reached the top, she would be able to travel back to this world with her gains from all these years. This world would have nothing to do with her. It was a little like, after I die, who cares about the flood? As long as her interests were not harmed, the life and death of others had nothing to do with her. The system said darkly, "Host, do you need me to remind you how many popularity points you owe me now?" Chapter 763. Although the debtor was the boss, this did not apply to the system. Not only did the system control the debt, but it also controlled the life of the woman in red. Host, let me remind you again. You were the one who first proposed to expose Lu Shi's identity. You also thought that the crime of deceiving the emperor could bring down the father and daughter. You're just telling me your thoughts and then you want me to be a follower and push the blame onto me. The system was not without a temper. It had failed again and again. This had already worn out the system's patience with the woman in red. However, Jiang Pingji had bound the system to the body of the woman in red. As long as Jiang Pingji did not release the woman, the system would not be free at all, let alone find a new host. Before Jiang Pingji kicked the bucket, the system could only pinch its nose and bind itself to the foolish host, cleaning up after her mess. The woman in red's face was flushed. It was not from embarrassment but from anger. She did not know much about politics. How would she know that deceiving the emperor was not a serious crime? She could only blame the television drama she had watched in the past. They made her think that deceiving the emperor was a crime that could easily lead to the death of a person's entire family. Speaking of which, it was rather funny. In the past, the reason why the woman in red had been able to thrive was because of the system's golden finger, not her own brain. She had been wholeheartedly focused on how to fight for favor in the palace and how to please the audience in the live broadcast room. When had she ever studied the situation or politics? With the system, her face could be flawless. Her skin was fair and tender. Her figure was as graceful as the devil, and her curves were curvaceous. As for talent, with a skill book, she could be promoted from an ordinary internet celebrity to a global goddess in minutes. With the help of the system, she could not only use her appearance to capture men's attention, but her body was also very mysterious. What were the masterpieces and the white tiger? They were just child's play. There were more mysterious treasures that could make men crave the taste. It was like poison seeping into their bones. It was difficult to quit once they were addicted. If the senses of the body were used as an analogy, a man and a woman in red rolling in the sheets was like eating the world's best delicacy. It could conquer the taste buds in one go. A man and an ordinary woman rolling in the sheets was like eating rancid porridge and sour rotten vegetables. How could the taste be the same? The former was watertight, while the latter was like an inelastic cowhide bag. It was puffing and leaking air. When it came to seducing people, the red-clothed woman was very familiar with them. But when it came to the political situation, she was completely clueless. How could you expect a useless person raised by the system to put in the effort to learn boring politics? She took it for granted that deceiving the emperor was a serious crime. She did not know that the current emperor had no prestige to speak of. The imperial power was loose and the royal family had lost all face. They could only struggle at death's door. How could they use a chicken feather as a command arrow to deal with a feudal vassal? The woman in red thought that she could succeed, but in the end she walked right into Jiang Pingji's trap. She was caught and killed by Jiang Pingji. "I don't want to go against her anymore," the red-clothed woman muttered in a low voice. She thought back to her 3 deaths, each one more miserable than the last. She couldn't help but shudder. The system said coldly, "Between you and her, only one can survive. Either you die or she dies. Are you sure you want to give up?" The woman in red was choked to the point that she couldn't speak. In the end, her desire to live overcame her fear. "You really are the stupidest host I've ever seen. You know you can't beat Lu Shi, so why do you keep coming at him? You can achieve your goal by hurting the people around her. You can't get close to Lu Shi personally and give him the level 9 loyalty talisman, but you can use tricks like confusion and control to make the people around her betray her. You have to be flexible." The woman in red suddenly had a flash of insight. To really attack Lu Shi, using Lu Shi as a target is not a bad idea. The system was not optimistic about her choice and poured a bucket of cold water on her. Lu Shi stays in Chongzhou all year round. It doesn't matter if the father and daughter don't meet each other at least once a year. Moreover, based on the hatred between you and Lu Shi, do you think he won't have his guard up? Or do you think that your body can seduce Lu Shi? To put it mildly, when Lu Shi faced the woman in the red dress, he would be lucky if he didn't vomit, let alone attack the city. Then who should I choose? The woman in red mumbled softly and began to analyze. Currently, among Lu Shi's subordinates, only a few can get close to her and gain her trust. Meng Han, Li Yun, Dian Yan, Yang Si, Feng Zhen. Meng Han and Dian Yan are too ugly. According to Gu Min's memory, Yang Si is a smart and self-disciplined person. Only Li Yun and Feng Zhen are left. Based on looks, she would definitely choose Li Yun. He was a handsome white horse with unparalleled waist strength, a real high-quality fresh meat. It was said that he was a virgin and would be easy to control. However, considering Li Yun's wariness as a martial artist and the fact that women were not allowed in the military camp, it would be difficult for her to sneak in. After a round of elimination, it seemed that only Feng Zhen was left. Feng Zhen is a beauty. To put it bluntly, he's a lecher. He's a good choice. Although she disliked the weak body of a scholar, he was the most suitable. At that moment, the system reminded her mercilessly, "Host, if you still want to revive, make the decision to revive as soon as possible. Otherwise, if you wait for those people outside to cremate your corpse and then want to reconstruct your body, I'm afraid it will be impossible without tens of billions of popularity points." The woman in red's face paled and she immediately said, "Of course I want to revive. 2 billion popularity points, no bargaining." The woman in red's face was almost unsightly. 2 billion? Reviving would increase the price? The system explained, the amount of popularity points used for reviving is determined by the degree of damage to the corpse. The smaller the damage, the smaller the cost. Your corpse. Lu Shi was more ruthless, more thorough than dismemberment. The degree of damage is greater, so the cost is also higher. The woman in red waved her hand weakly. 2 billion it is. As the saying goes, when you have too much debt, you don't need to worry. She was already carrying a debt of 2 billion, so adding another 2 billion wouldn't hurt. Anyway, it would be paid in installments. Based on her popularity in the streaming room, she would be able to clear her debt after a few years of hard work. With the system's help, after a gust of demonic wind, the corpse that should have been cremated was swept away, alarming countless officials and making it impossible for them to sleep at night. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, ate well and slept soundly. She slept dreamlessly until dawn. She was already the magistrate of Wanzhou, so she couldn't leave the base camp for too long. The mission of the Alliance army to rescue the king was almost complete. She should also pack up and prepare to return home. As for whether Prince Changshu, who had already proclaimed himself emperor, would make a comeback after the Alliance army left, it had nothing to do with her. "Why is my lord free to come out today?" Feng Zhen raised his sleeves to cover his yawn. 2 drops of tears squeezed out of the corners of his eyes. He had cultivated too late last night, so he didn't have enough sleep. Jiang Pengji said gloomily, "This time your lord came to rescue the king for only 3 things. First, to be the official magistrate of Wanzhou. Second, to make some money by selling the method of making flashing bricks. Third, to see if the other side is tight and to poach some people. So far the first 2 things have been done well. I came out with empty pockets, but when I go back my pockets are full. But there's only one person, Qi Kuang. Sure you're slacking." Feng Zhen was speechless. He had almost forgotten about this matter. However, he couldn't be said to be slacking. Even Qi Kuang, who was the only remaining person, had been roped in by him. Chapter 764. There are no corners in this world that can't be pried open, only people who don't work hard. Jiang Pingji readily accepted Feng Zhen's advice and made him swallow his words. Think about the whole of Wanzhou. There's so little land and so few people. You have to do everything yourself. Sooner or later, you'll die of exhaustion at the desk. Jiang Pingji was just short of telling Feng Zhen, "If you still want breaks, young ladies, wine and delicacies, hurry up and get to work." Even if she didn't say it clearly with Feng Zhen's IQ, how could he not understand the deeper meaning behind her words? It was precisely because he understood that he regretted it even more. Of all the things she should not have done, she should not have rushed over after receiving Wei Xi's letter. Now he had plunged into a bottomless pit of overtime, endured Jiang Pingji's exploitation, and had no proper breaks all year round. For a prodigal son, no private time meant no chance to live a dissolute life, no chance to interact with various young ladies. He had nothing to live for. It's just that this also depends on fate. It can't be forced. Feng Zhen weakly tried to defend himself. It was useless to poach ordinary people. Top talents weren't radishes that grew legs and could be bought at wholesale prices. It depended on fate. Besides, for the sake of the internal harmony of the entire Wanzhou group, Feng Zhen couldn't bring all the good and bad people to his own family, could he? If Feng Zhen dared to do so, would Jiang Pingji dare to accept those uneven talents? Sometimes I'm quite envious of those with good backgrounds and big businesses. At least they don't have to worry about talent. Jiang Pingji looked at the desolate and deserted streets and complained in a low voice, "The Su brothers are fine, but I can't even compare to Bogeo." Jiang Pingji wouldn't admit defeat in other aspects, but in terms of personal charm she was a nameless wildflower by the roadside. No matter how hard she tried to bloom, she still couldn't compare to flowers like peonies and medicinal peonies that attracted butterflies and bees. That was a real pain in the ass. Feng Zhen was 2 steps behind Jiang Pingji. When he heard her complaints he couldn't help but laugh. It's clearly the Lord who's stubborn and concealing her shortcomings. How is it that you're inferior to others? Feng Zhen wasn't comforting Jiang Pingji. He was speaking the truth. Jiang Pingji's current situation was not her own doing. Even though the Lus in Hejin County were not considered the top aristocratic families, they were still in the middle of the second tier. With a father like Lu Shi who laid a solid foundation for the next generation, Jiang Pingji's resources and advantages were far more abundant than she had imagined. As long as Jiang Pingji was willing to reveal Lu Shi's name, borrow the power of the Lus, and use the resources at hand, would there be a shortage of talents? He might not be able to surpass the Su brothers, but he was more than capable of defeating Huang Song. In this era, wasn't it all about relying on one's father and one's ancestors? His lord held a few powerful trump cards in her hands, but she refused to show them. What else could she do? If she didn't show these trump cards and show her foundation, she naturally wouldn't be able to attract enough attention. As a result, the scholars in the world didn't know much about her. The scholars couldn't see the slightest bit of hope in her to display their skills and ambitions. Which fool would take the initiative to join her? To put it simply, she clearly had the qualifications to rely on her father and ancestors, but she insisted on starting from scratch. Wasn't this looking for abuse? Not only did his lord want to abuse herself, but she also wanted to drag her subordinates along with her. This was very torturous. However, Feng Zhen seemed unreliable, but in fact he had a clear mind. He could see through everything. His lord refused to borrow the power of her father and the clan. It was obvious that she wanted to stir up trouble. She was born into an aristocratic family, but she wanted to attack the aristocratic families. Did you think this child was a bear? Jiang Pingji waved her hand weakly and frowned. I know what you want to say. Since this is the path I chose, I will finish climbing it even if I have to kneel down. It's very difficult for me to do it alone. Don't I still have you guys? In short, I'm short of people now. Go and poach them for me. After talking for a long time, the topic still went back to the original topic. Feng Zhen expressed that he was weak and didn't have the strength to wield a hoe. Jiang Pingji was so angry that she laughed. She stood still and asked him, "Then what do you want?" Feng Zhen muttered to himself for a while and said, "Speaking of which, there are many places in the imperial city where one can seek pleasure and relax the body and mind. It's rare for me to come here. If I don't see the scenery of the human world, wouldn't I have come for nothing? I really don't have any other intentions. I just want to go and experience it." Jiang Pingji chuckled. An old mast that has seen thousands of sails wants to go and experience it. This is definitely the coldest joke I've ever heard. If she didn't let him go, Feng Zhen was obviously saying, "I already have a choice, but if you don't let me go and have some fun, I'll slack off." Jiang Pingji's molars were itching to see this. If she let him go, who knew if Feng Zhen would enjoy himself so much that he forgot to go back home. The two of them confronted each other on the street, attracting the attention of many people. They had no choice but to stare at them. Who asked them to attract too much attention? Jiang Pingji was dressed in female clothing, but she was taller than all the men on the street. Her aura was 2.8 meters tall, and even the naughty children who passed by trembled with fear. Feng Zhen was dressed in a green scholarly robe. He did look a little tasteful, but he looked like he had a weak kidney. He looked indecent. The two of them confronted each other on the street. The people who didn't know what was going on were curious. "My lord, please allow it. The time and place have already been decided. If you don't go, the talent will grow wings and fly away." Feng Zhen was acting like a troublemaker. What else could Jiang Pingji do? Act first and report later? You've grown up. Fine, then let's go together. Otherwise, you'll have to coax him over and make me pick a time to meet him. Feng Zhen responded subconsciously. Looking at his lord's slender and tall figure, he suddenly froze on the spot. "My lord, are you going to go dressed like this?" In the past, he didn't know that Jiang Pingji was a woman. He was still trying to abstain from hanshi powder. The two of them often went to drink in secret, cultivating a revolutionary friendship. It's different now. "My lord, you're a woman. It's not appropriate to go to the red light district, is it?" Jiang Pingji replied, "If I don't go, who's going to foot the bill for you? If you're detained there, don't mention my name. Feng Zhen secretly touched his shriveled money pouch. He clicked his tongue. After Jiang Pingji became rich, she never mistreated her own people in terms of salary. But she couldn't stop Feng Zhen from spending. Naturally, he was from the Moonshine clan. He actually wanted to trick the other person into paying the bill. Feng Zhen muttered, "I keep feeling a little weird." Not only did he feel weird, but the receptionist also felt that the two of them were weird. It didn't seem like the male master brought his concubine out for a romantic experience. Whose concubine's aura was so terrifying? It didn't seem like the male master brought his wife out for a romantic experience. Whose wife would be more familiar with the brothel than her husband? It was more like a valiant mother brought her untamed son out for a romantic experience. But Chapter 765. However, no matter how strange the feeling was, it was still a customer. Customers entering the door was business. Who would push their business away? Under the guidance of Huan Yang, the two people went to the private room on the second floor of the backyard. Along the way, the decor was extremely elegant, and every inch of the scenery seemed to have been meticulously polished. The audience in the live broadcast room expressed that this place was a bit high class. If it wasn't for the clear indication that this place was for men and women, and the screen was filled with beautiful women in thin clothes, the audience might have misunderstood and thought that this was a high-ranking official's mansion. Love the night? Actually, I don't quite understand. Why do they have to come to such a shady place to recruit talents? Because of the relatively conservative social atmosphere of the dimension where the audience in the live broadcast room came from, the education of gender was very obscure, causing many people to be extremely interested in brothels. No matter what it was, once it involved unspeakable and discordant content, there would always be someone who had a tacit understanding in their eyes. However, Jiang Pingji's style was too wild. How many times had she gone to brothels over the years? After seeing so many of them, they were no longer as curious and eager as they had been in the beginning. Xianggu Bukai. For men in ancient times, brothels shouldn't be considered indecent places, right? When they were hungry, they could order food and eat. When they were bored, they could call for the musicians to play music, the singers to sing, and the dancers to stretch their bodies. It was a combination of eating and entertainment. If they talked too late, they could still use this place as a hotel to stay, and at the same time they could also ask for a girl they liked. Although the brothel was a place for pimping, its functions were very complete. A wine shop, a tea shop, a restaurant, a hostel, and a musical house were all in one. It was definitely a multifunctional entertainment venue. However, Jiang Pingji had a question that she had to ask. The person you want to kidnap is the same as you, coming to this place to talk business? Feng Zhen didn't mind the sarcasm in Jiang Pingji's words. He smiled and said, "We can barely be considered like-minded friends." Jiang Pingji understood. Even if that person wasn't as frivolous as Feng Zhen, he was probably a Casanova. Otherwise, how could the two of them have gotten together? Feng Zhen had booked a private room. When they arrived, the room was already occupied. The door opened, and several maids dressed in light-colored clothes walked out of the room. The trays in their hands were empty. They bowed slightly and moved aside to let Jiang Pingji and the others pass first. "What a good Feng Zisher. You've changed your temperament. Why are you so late?" The voice of a hearty man came from the room. His voice was full of vigor and vitality, far more energetic than a patient with kidney deficiency like Feng Zhen. "I brought someone with me, so I was delayed on the way here. I hope Chongming can forgive me." Before they even entered, Feng Zhen was already smiling and bowing in apology. Jiang Pingji deliberately lagged a few steps behind. She waited for Feng Zhen to go in and talk to someone before she stepped into the private room. A person's appearance could be deliberately concealed, and his aura could be restrained, but his temperament could not be concealed. The man in dark brown clothes saw Jiang Pingji and was stunned for a while. He bowed with his hands folded in front and said, "This commoner pays his respects to the commander of the army." Beside Feng Zhen was a young woman with a strong aura. Other than Lu Shi, who was currently in the limelight, there was no one else. Jiang Pingji also sized him up. This man, whom Feng Zhen called Chongming, was about 30 years old and had a beautifully trimmed goatee. His face still looked very youthful, but his eyes carried a calmness that a young man didn't have. No matter how one looked at him, this person was much more reserved and restrained than Feng Zhen. Jiang Pingji said casually, "No need to be so polite. I just hope that you won't blame me for being an uninvited guest." No. The fact that Magistrate Lu is here is a great surprise to this commoner. Jiang Pingji wasn't familiar with the man, so she didn't deliberately intervene in their conversation. She just deliberately restrained her aura and lowered her presence. On the other side, the man secretly winked at Feng Zhen, asking with his eyes what was going on. Wasn't it just supposed to be him and Feng Zhen, and the two of them communicated harmoniously in private? Why did Feng Zhen's current lord come over? Feng Zhen smiled bitterly and pointed at the shriveled money pouch hanging on his waist. The man instantly understood. Although he understood, he still felt a little uncomfortable. For example, a man and a woman chatting on a blind date with more than a dozen friends and relatives next to them. How could they feel at ease? Jiang Pingji also realized that it was inappropriate. She simply found an excuse to go out for a walk, giving them some privacy. Your lord's aura doesn't seem like that of an ordinary person. No wonder Zixiao has such a high opinion of her, the man said. Feng Zhen was surprised. Zixiao wrote a letter to you? He did. Zixiao praised her so much in the letter, as if he was praising his own son. I've known him for so many years, but I've never seen him praise someone so hard. But at that time I was going to try my luck with the Su brothers, so I politely declined his invitation. The man's surname was Xiao, and his first name was Guang. His courtesy name was Chongming. Feng Zhen made an O sound. He wasn't surprised by Xiao Guang's choice. Xiao Guang's hometown was in Zhe County, which was the headquarters of the Su family. He would definitely favor the local power. Noble Su family, these 4 words were a golden signboard. It didn't need to deliberately bloom to attract countless bees and butterflies. It seems like your life in the Su family isn't going your way. He smiled helplessly. If it was going my way, I wouldn't be here. The Su brothers aren't bad, but they value family status too much, so I'm not very suitable for Guang. As the saying goes, those who walk different paths can't make plans together. Coincidentally, you sent me news, so I came to give it a try. Xiao Guang wanted to become an official under the Su brothers, but they had high standards and were picky about family status. Xiao Guang was lucky enough to be chosen, but because of his lowly background, he had never been put in an important position. It was like an exquisite toy bought on the street, beautiful but useless. It was pure coincidence that he had secretly hooked up with Feng Zhen. A good man's ambition was to travel far and wide. Xiao Guang was open-minded. If one family didn't work out, he would jump to another. He wouldn't hang himself under an old locust tree. To put it in a narcissistic way, the Su brothers were blind and missed out on a bright pearl. That was their loss. With Wei Xi's flattery, Xiao Guang had a certain impression of Jiang Pingji. When he heard news, he would more or less pay attention to Lu Shi. His initial impression of her was pretty good. Now that Feng Zhen was recommending him, Xiao Guang was hesitant about whether or not he should accept the recommendation. As for Jiang Pingji's identity as a woman, it didn't affect him much. As a commoner of lowly birth, no matter how capable he was, he didn't have much capital to choose his lord. Moreover, with the recommendation of 2 friends, if he joined the Wanzhou group, he wouldn't have to fight alone. As long as he could stand out and fulfill his ambitions, he didn't care if his lord was a man or a woman, a dog or a human. It was a bold idea, but it could be seen that Xiao Guang was a hard-working and practical person. In other words, it was, don't touch that job, let me do it. Look at my lord. Is she satisfied? Feng Zhen winked. Xiao Guang had a strange expression on his face. A woman who can go to a brothel with you, it's really hard to explain. Although Wei Xi and Feng Zhen's recommendation was very tempting, he felt that a woman who could hang out with Feng Zhen wouldn't have such a frivolous personality, right? Thinking about the losses he had suffered at the hands of Feng Zhen and Wei Xi, he always felt the urge to break into a run. Feng Zhen said, "How can my lord be an ordinary woman? What's wrong with visiting a brothel? If she doesn't come, will you pay the bill later?" Thinking back, when Jiang Pingji had abducted him, she had promised to play at public expense. Chapter 766. What do you think? Give me a definite answer so that I can pass it on to my lord, so that she won't stay out for too long and cause trouble. If Feng Zhen and Xiao Guang were a couple on a blind date, then Jiang Pingji was a group of friends and relatives. In order not to disturb their conversation, she went out to avoid arousing suspicion. Feng Zhen understood why she was doing this, so he didn't spend too much effort teasing Xiao Guang. He got straight to the point. If it was delayed for too long, who knew if his lord would cause some trouble in the brothel? This was a place where conflicts were high. If rumors spread that Lu prefecture magistrate fought with someone over a beauty in a brothel, or the minister of the palace took his love away for the sake of a beauty, it wouldn't be pleasant to hear. If it happened to a man, it would be romantic, but if it happened to a woman, it would be a loss. After being warned by Yang Si, Feng Zhen more or less took it in. Occasionally he would secretly worry about Jiang Pingji's identity as a woman so that she wouldn't be taken advantage of. Xiao Guang was speechless. He struggled internally. This isn't a small matter. I should give Guang some time to think about it. Based on the current situation, Wanzhou was indeed an excellent place to go. Lu Shi's background wasn't bad. Even though he was still a long way off from the Su brothers, he was still the son of an aristocratic family with a noble background. Lu Shi's power wasn't weak. It was best if Lu Shi gave him power. If Lu Shi wasn't willing to give him power, she could sit on a state and not be empty-handed. If Xiao Guang wanted to abandon the Su family and jump ship, Jiang Pingji was indeed a good choice. The key was, if he liked her, would she like him? It wasn't that Xiao Guang felt inferior, but one had to look at one's family background to become an official. If his family background was good, he wouldn't be neglected by the Su family. With a solemn attitude, Xiao Guang asked about the situation in Wanzhou and Jiang Pingji's team structure. Don't think that his questions were nonsense. By asking these questions he could judge and understand Jiang Pingji's character. Only then could he make a decision. Things couldn't happen again and again. Xiao Guang had abandoned the Su family and jumped ship to Lu Shi. If he still couldn't get an important position under Lu Shi and was buried because of his family background, then what was the point of him jumping ship? Was he supposed to keep kicking Lu Shi and find another family? There were still some questions that needed to be clarified. Feng Zhen could understand Xiao Guang's worries, but he didn't expose the other's attempt to test him. Instead, he went along with the other's topic of conversation and replied to them one by one. The more Xiao Guang heard, the more astonished he became, and he almost spilled the tea in his hand. Are you telling the truth? According to Feng Zhen's description, apart from Feng Jin, who was born into a good family, everyone else in the Wanzhou group was below the passing mark. From this, it could be seen that Lu Shi really did not care about one's background. He did not have to worry about this. As long as they didn't discriminate against his background, Xiao Guang felt that he would still be able to make a name for himself one day. Feng Zhen scoffed and said, "How could it be fake?" His lord had taken over all of Wanzhou without saying a word. She seemed to have a lot of power, but who knew who Lu Shi was before sending troops to rescue the emperor? The most she could say was, Lu Shi's son, or like father like son. How many geniuses could she attract with her meager wealth? Even if they were willing to come, she might not dare to accept them. After all, we're recruiting talents, not looking for ancestors for ourselves. After saying this, Feng Zhen paused and lowered his voice to speak to Xiao Guang. To put it bluntly, after sending troops to rescue the emperor, the lord's reputation should have soared. Even if she can't compete with the Su brothers in Dongqing, there are less than 5 people whose reputation can surpass hers. It should have been a great situation, but news of the Lord's identity was revealed. Let me ask you, the world despises women so much. Which geniuses from noble families would be willing to submit to a woman? Even if Dongqing was not like Zhongzhou, where the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was rampant, it was still affected to a certain extent. Not to mention the current era, which was becoming stricter and stricter. Even if it was traced back to the early days of the Xia dynasty, weren't there also people who made up all sorts of scandals about the ancestor of the Su family, Master Su? Don't underestimate these seemingly harmless scandals. They were in themselves disdainful and belittling of Master Su. Those who attacked Master Su never used the reason of Master Su's lack of ability. It was simply because she was a woman. Even now it was still the same. In many people's eyes, gender was the original sin, which had nothing to do with ability. Xiao Guang looked hesitant and asked in a low voice, "Sure, if you tell Guang all this you..." Feng Zhen snorted and laughed. The icing on the cake will never be as good as providing timely help. Using the Lord's crude words, "Today you can ignore me, but tomorrow you won't be able to reach me." The world scolds her for being a sissy, but who knows if she will ascend to the throne in the future. Now that you have nowhere to go, why not take a gamble? With the Lord's temperament, she will definitely not disappoint you. Xiao Guang felt as if his worldview had been completely changed. Could it be that you, like those ordinary people, believe that she can't do great things? Feng Zhen asked again. Xiao Guang secretly rolled his eyes and said helplessly, "We've been friends for many years, how can you not understand Guang? Male or female, human or dog, to Guang, what difference does it make? How would others know what it feels like to be restricted in every way because of one's background?" Feng Zhen and Wei Xi's recommendation was too tempting. How could Xiao Guang not be tempted? To put it bluntly, the choice was in other people's hands, not his. Xiao Guang's temperament was like that, which was also why Wei Xi and Feng Zhen came to him one after another. After settling Xiao Guang, Jiang Pingji naturally didn't have to continue loitering outside. Did the Lord have a romantic encounter? Why are you smiling so happily? Feng Zhen looked at the smiling Jiang Pingji and asked with a dirty mouth. I didn't have a romantic encounter, but I met a beautiful woman with a beautiful face. I heard that she will be combing her hair today. Jiang Pingji's face was full of excitement. It wasn't just her, the bullet screen in the streaming room was full of content praising the beauty, one after another overwhelming. The corner of Feng Zhen's mouth twitched slightly, while Xiao Guang was dumbfounded. Was the new boss in front of him a man or a woman? What was combing? The original meaning was to use a wooden comb to comb the hair together and then tie a knot on the top of the head to signify the end of a girl's life. The meaning was obvious. It was hinting at the favor of a prostitute receiving a customer for the first time. If it was a man it would be fine, but the new boss was a real woman. Jiang Pingji restrained the expression on her face and turned her gaze to Xiao Guang. Feng Zhen immediately understood and said a few words of introduction. Although the three of them had reached a consensus that Xiao Guang was going to jump ship and Jiang Pingji was going to poach Su Bei, they still had to put on a show. So, Chongming is really willing to give up his current future and lend me a helping hand? Xiao Guang bowed and said, I hope that the Lord will not give up. In this life I will do my best to assist the Lord. Chapter 767. It was worth mentioning that Xiao Guang's forte was not in strategizing. His intelligence was higher than the average person's, but if he wanted to compete with a black-hearted person like Feng Zhen, he was still too inexperienced. Feng Zhen had poached him and recommended him to Jiang Pingji because Xiao Guang was a relatively unpopular talent. He specialized in water conservancy and minored in Moism. It was no wonder that Xiao Guang had never been put in an important position by the Su brothers. The Su family was rooted in Zhe County, which was a fertile land with abundant rainfall but not flooding. Ordinary people could handle simple tasks, but Xiao Guang had no chance to display his skills for the slightly more difficult tasks. He was of little value. On the other hand, Jiang Pingji definitely needed Xiao Guang. Last year Wanzhou had experienced a great drought. If Jiang Pingji hadn't discovered it early and taken preventive measures, who knew how many innocent people would have died of thirst and how much fertile land would have been wasted? There would have been no harvest and the whole year would have been difficult. Feng Zhen's swing of the hoe this time was too accurate. With a swing of the hoe, he had poached the talent she needed the most. The atmosphere was harmonious. Jiang Pingji didn't put on any airs. She didn't make people think she was easy to bully, but she also didn't make people think she was unreachable. After a round of conversation, Xiao Guang was secretly surprised. In his eyes, the Su brothers were already rare geniuses among the younger generation. However, they still had a small flaw that was unavoidable for the descendants of landowning households. They were proud of their noble bloodline and looked down on those with poor backgrounds. It was extremely rare for them to lower their statuses and open their hearts to others. If only the Su brothers were like this in the eyes of others, they would probably receive the evaluation of little princesses with so many flaws. Unfortunately, the general atmosphere was like this. It was normal for them to look down on others. Those poor bastards who wanted to stand out had wishful thinking. To put it in a vulgar way, they weren't called princess soldiers, they were little princesses. In Xiao Guang's opinion, Jiang Pingji was also a noble son of noble birth, a noble daughter. Regardless of whether she was a noble son or a noble daughter, even if she was a meritorious person, she should still have the arrogance and nobility of a gentry family in her bones. After some interaction, he realized that Jiang Pingji wasn't difficult to get along with. He even had the urge to get close to her. She was amiable but wouldn't make people look down on or offend her. She was noble but wouldn't make people feel unapproachable. In short, this was a rather non-mainstream aristocratic family. Xiao Guang still had eyes. Whether it was an act or sincere, he had a balance in his heart and could clearly distinguish it. In this way he didn't feel the slightest bit of psychological pressure when he called Jiang Pingji his lord. Jiang Pingji ordered many delicacies, and the three of them ate until they were almost full. She looked at the empty space beside them and asked, "Should I call 2 people over to serve me? Don't forget where they are. It would be too formal if they didn't call the dancers over." The 2 men fell silent at the same time. Once again they confirmed that their lord was a woman. Visiting a brothel? Why was he even more open-minded than the 2 of them? "You don't want to? It's rare for me to treat you. If you're wrong there won't be a next time." Feng Zhen didn't hold back anymore. With a wave of his hand, he summoned quite a few beauties. He even asked Jiang Pingji about them. "It's a pity that this isn't the South Courtyard. Otherwise my lord would have ordered 2 as well." The so-called South Courtyard was a male version of a brothel, a place where men were sold. The young masters inside were the prostitutes. Jiang Pingji raised her eyelids. No need. You guys can have fun. Feng Zhen was a shameless person. He didn't know what it meant to be reserved. Xiao Guang had just joined, so he was more reserved. More importantly, there was a female lord staring at him. If he hugged a flower lady, he would feel uncomfortable. Feng Zhen ordered a few songs and dances in a row. He was fascinated. Jiang Pingji's fingers nimbly played with the wine cup in her hand. She glanced at the sky outside and the corners of her lips curled up. There are a few beauties grooming today. Are you interested in watching? Feng Zhen watched the beauties dance without blinking. Without turning his head, he said, yes. Xiao Guang was speechless. He felt like he was dreaming. Even the male lords didn't have the face to say such things. Why was his new lord so bold and unrestrained? And Feng Zhen, why were you so shameless? Then go take a look. Maybe we'll have a romantic night together. As she said this, a strange look flashed in Jiang Pingji's eyes. Feng Zhen and Xiao Guang didn't notice. Once again, Xiao Guang felt that his new lord was a little speechless. The brothel wasn't small. This time there were 9 beauties, all between 14 and 16 years old. Looking at the young girl on the stage, the viewers in the live stream felt a little heavy. In the past, when Jiang Pingji visited brothels, she had encountered beauties grooming. The viewers could only watch, unable to save them. Feng Zhen said in a low voice, this brothel is interesting. After such a big commotion they can still do something like this. Prince Changshou's army attacked the imperial city of Qinzhou. They burned, killed and looted. The entire imperial city was engulfed in the flames of war. Although the alliance army had stabilized the situation, they couldn't change the fact that the people were living in poverty. This brothel had survived the disaster and even produced so many beauties at once. It was really impressive. Jiang Pingji curled her lips and said, I see a girl up there looking at you. Feng Zhen noticed it too. The young courtesan girl who had been looking at him shyly was dressed in pink. She was about 15 or 16 years old. Her face was still a little immature, but she already had a beauty that could cause the downfall of a city. She was young, but her figure was curvaceous. She was not that hot and mature, but rather a little immature, somewhere between mature and immature. She stood there alone, and the 8 people around her immediately fell to the ground. She was the center of attention. Now, the center of attention was secretly looking at Feng Zhen. Feng Zhen said proudly, she's still as charming as before. Young lady, you have good taste. Jiang Pingji chuckled. Zisher, I see that your house is empty. You don't have a considerate person to take care of you. Why don't you buy one? Jiang Pingji's eyes were filled with malice and mockery. She suggested to Feng Zhen, they're all young girls. If they stay in such a filthy place, I don't know what will happen to them. If you buy one, even if you don't give her a title, she can be your personal maid to take care of you. Based on what she said, she could be considered the best lord in the 5 countries. How can my lord make fun of others? Feng Zhen shivered and begged for mercy. The naughty children at home are already enlightened. I really shouldn't harm young girls. I appreciate my lord's kind intentions, but I can't accept them. How could Feng Zhen not know Jiang Pingji's temperament? Similarly, how could Jiang Pingji not know Feng Zhen's temperament? Feng Zhen liked young ladies, but they should be mature and charming young ladies. He'd never touched these kinds of unripe fruits. It wasn't the first time that the 2 of them had colluded to drink in a brothel. How could his lord not know what he liked? He only liked mature ladies. He didn't like young girls. Chapter 768. If one didn't understand Feng Zhen, they might think that he was a gentleman, but in reality? Even the audience in the streaming room saw through his tricks. Uncle loves lowly. This is definitely the funniest joke I've heard today. Feng Zhen doesn't want the fat meat that's right in front of him? Young beauty royal sister. That lady is so pretty. She'll mature in another 2 years. She'll be as pretty as Sister Huijun. Feng Zhen actually said he didn't like her. Streamer, did the sun rise from the west on your side? Has Feng Zhen changed his mind? Zwizen Beishijing. I'd rather believe that the sun rises from the west than believe that Feng Zhen will change his preferences. Gui Kai Guofengxiu. A prodigal son is a prodigal son. I don't believe that he'll repent. He must be playing hard to get. Faced with the questioning and ridicule on the screen, Jiang Pingji smiled and teased Feng Zhen. Didn't you complain that you don't have anyone close to you? Jiang Pingji bluntly exposed Feng Zhen's disguise and said bluntly, now that I've agreed to find you one, why are you acting so reserved? Do you want to be a saint who doesn't lust after women? I'm telling you this won't happen again. I'm in a good mood today. If you want the girl up there, I'll buy her. If you don't want it, don't make a fuss in the future. Feng Zhen frowned. He knew Jiang Pingji. The lord in front of him had a black heart. When had she ever been so generous? She was so stingy that she wouldn't even give him a break. How could she reward him with a beauty? Feng Zhen frowned. He realized that things weren't as simple as they seemed. Do you want it? Jiang Pingji smiled and leaned against the table. She supported her chin with one hand and held a wine cup in the other. Her eyes carried a hint of mockery. Feng Zhen gathered his thoughts and secretly gritted his teeth. He smiled and agreed. It's rare for my lord to spend money. Of course I can't miss it. But with such an outstanding beauty, I'm afraid the price of combing her hair won't be low. He wanted to see what his lord was up to this time. Jiang Pingji teased him lazily. Zisher has done me a great service and recommended me well. It's just a beauty. How can it be considered spending money? Not to mention one, even if you want all 9 on the round table, as long as you think you can handle it, I don't mind buying all of them for you. Feng Zhen. He didn't even like one lowly, let alone 9. Don't be fooled by his unrestrained private life. It wasn't that he didn't have principles. He shook his head seriously and said, My lord, please don't joke with me. With my body I still need to take care of it. I can't withstand any torment. In order to avoid Jiang Pingji's dirty tricks, he started to defame himself and said that he couldn't do it anymore. Jiang Pingji knew when to stop. She pointed at the beautiful girl in the middle and said, No matter how I look, this girl is the most beautiful. Which man doesn't like good-looking women? Zisher is also my right-hand man, so he should be matched with the most beautiful woman. How about choosing her? Feng Zhen agreed with a smile on his face, but on the inside he was frowning fiercely. He felt a little uneasy. How could he not know what kind of person his lord was? The more this person was like this, the more uneasy he felt. The unknown always made people nervous. Feng Zhen couldn't guess Jiang Pingji's intentions, so he could only focus on dealing with it. He was not a fool. How could he believe Jiang Pingji's words? If she was really considerate of her subordinates and wanted to show her kindness, she could just let everyone have a break. Why would she need to send beauties? He was afraid that she was a demon in the skin of a beauty. Of the 9 artists, only the one in the middle has the most beautiful appearance. Xiao Guang didn't know what was going on and agreed. He secretly sighed at the good relationship between Jiang Pingji and Feng Zhen. He felt more and more satisfied. My lord has good taste. You picked the best one at a glance. Jiang Pingji smiled and asked Xiao Guang, Does Chongguang want to choose one as well? Seeing that the fire was about to burn him, Xiao Guang smiled bitterly and declined. I have wives and concubines at home. They've been together for many years. I can't bear to add another person. Xiao Guang thought to himself, not only can I not add another person now, I can't casually add another person in the future. My lord is a woman. Why would she like to see her subjects have multiple wives and concubines? Feng Zhen's situation was special. He didn't have a wife or concubine in his backyard. It was normal for my lord to bestow another person. As they spoke, the artists on the stage appeared one by one. Other than the one with the best looks, the other 8 weren't bad-looking either. There were all kinds of them, each with their own characteristics, and they attracted a lot of hot gazes. Lively and cute, sweet and charming, pure and quiet, steady and generous, elegant and elegant. Their looks were limited by their age and hadn't fully developed, but one could already see the charm they would have in a few years. To put it simply, the beauties in the palace were nothing more than this. The young artists with braided hair were all wearing black wedding dresses. The guest who offered the highest price would be her groom for the night. The rich and the nobles were competing with each other. The pimp who was the MC on the stage was so happy that she could only see her teeth. The artists were ranked according to their social status and appearance. The most ordinary ones were ranked first and the best ones were ranked last. Without a doubt, the beautiful girl who attracted everyone's attention was the most precious jewel of the night. A storm of blood was about to start. Looking at the final prices of the artists in front, Feng Zhen's brows furrowed even tighter. Something was wrong. According to this price, the last lady will cost at least 200,000 strings of coins. My lord, Jiang Pingji was generous to her subordinates and gave them generous benefits, but she didn't like to waste them. She was generous to her subordinates because they deserved the salary. It was an equivalent exchange. But this girl in front of him? Other than her good looks, what else could attract Jiang Pingji to spend so much money to bid for her? If his lord was a man, he could understand. Spending a lot of money for a beauty was a romantic thing to do. But the lord was a woman. It was ridiculous to spend so much money just to buy a courtesan to serve her counselor. Wait, there's no hurry. Jiang Pingji smiled and drank a cup of wine, indicating for Feng Zhen to not be anxious. I'll definitely let you be the groom tonight. The beauty won't fall into the arms of others. Your lord is quite reliable at times like this. Don't panic. Feng Zhen was speechless. He would rather his lord not be so reliable. After a few rounds of intense bidding, the atmosphere of the grooming ceremony reached its peak. The pimp was wearing heavy makeup that day. She looked as if she was marrying off her daughter. Well, for the pimp of a brothel, holding a grooming ceremony for her subordinates was in itself another way of marrying off her daughter. The strange thing was, the 8th artist had already finished her bidding, but the 9th artist still hadn't moved. The guests below the stage had some strange reactions. Chapter 769. A girl from a brothel naturally couldn't be the wife of a high official or a rich man. The brothel keeper had to settle for the next best thing, a concubine, and she'd even promised 1,000 gold coins. As soon as she said this, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone looked at Miss Huan passionately. Someone asked, I wonder who Miss Huan has taken a liking to? As soon as the question was asked, Huan shyly glanced in Feng Zhen's direction. Feng Zhen shuddered involuntarily, feeling weak all over. He didn't like young girls like her. When he used to wander around the red light district, he'd always found mature, beautiful women who understood the ways of the world. At least they wouldn't easily go easy on their benefactors. If it was a young girl like her, things would be different. Feng Zhen didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Being young and immature meant that she had little experience and would easily go easy on people. Jiang Pingji teased him from the side. She's looking at you. She's obviously interested in you. Feng Zhen gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, My lord, please don't tease me. She doesn't want a single cent of your money. Instead, she's bringing 1,000 gold coins to be your concubine. You're not moved at all? Xiao Guang was surprised, but what surprised him even more was that his lord had already predicted this scene. Feng Zhen said righteously, I'm not moved. While he was resisting the peach blossom that had been delivered to his doorstep, the other guests were also in an uproar. They didn't understand why a beautiful girl would take a liking to a poor middle-aged man who had a woman by his side. To put it bluntly, the man's eye bags were swollen and he had dark circles around his eyes. He was obviously weak. How could he satisfy a young and beautiful girl? The girl was young and immature. How could they let such a beautiful girl marry such an unreliable, ordinary man? Seeing that a beautiful flower was about to be stuck in a pile of cow dung, someone stood up to object. Miss Huan, you're so beautiful. Why would you take a liking to such a poor, ordinary man? That's right. He even has a female companion by his side. He's obviously not the one to entrust his life to. On the stage, Lady Huan raised her fan and covered her face slightly. She walked in front of Feng Zhen with dignified steps, completely shattering Feng Zhen's dream that Lady Huan had taken a liking to Xiao Guang. She bowed slightly and looked at Feng Zhen with a burning gaze. I am of lowly birth and know that I am not worthy of you. However, I am still delusional and hope that you will take pity on me and grant me my wish. Even if I don't have a title, I will gladly endure it. Feng Zhen smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, My wife's great hospitality is something that I cannot accept. To tell you the truth, I am nearly 30 this year, and I have a child at home who is just starting out. It would not be good for me to delay you. Now that you are still in your prime, you will naturally find someone who will treat you sincerely. Huan bit her red lips, which were illuminated by the candlelight, and her eyes were watery. I truly love you, Langjun. No matter how many wives, concubines, and children you have in your family, even if I can only be a lowly concubine or not, as long as I can be by your side, I have no regrets. Feng Zhen, there was something wrong with the script. Jiang Pingji smiled and covered her mouth. Since she likes you so much and has fallen in love with you at first sight, just accept her. Feng Zhen secretly cursed in his heart. His lord was obviously waiting for a good show. Xiao Guang also egged on from the side, laughing at Feng Zhen's embarrassment at being teased. Feng Zhen secretly took a deep breath. Even though others envied him for being able to win the heart of a beauty, who knew how frustrated he felt inside? Not to mention anything else, just his lord's behavior alone made him feel very perturbed. More importantly, Huan had obviously come prepared, and her target was him alone. Normally, no matter how much love at first sight, seeing that there was a beautiful woman by the man's side, one would have some reservations and wouldn't be so thick-skinned as to stick close to him. But Huan hadn't looked at Jiang Pingji at all, as if she already knew of her existence. Feng Zhen didn't mind making a bold guess. Huan already knew of his lord's identity, and she also knew of his identity. A beauty throwing herself at him might not necessarily be a blessing in love. Feng Zhen was displeased, but he secretly saw the look in Jiang Pingji's eyes. He endured it and finally gave in to reality. If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble you, Huan. It was obvious that this was a tacit agreement. Huan looked bashful. With the help of the brothel keeper, she went upstairs to the bridal chamber to wait for Feng Zhen. No matter how displeased the other guests were, they couldn't simply show their anger. The atmosphere was relatively peaceful. Jiang Pingji and the other two returned to the private room. As expected, the brothel keeper sent someone to deliver the dowry. She opened the box and took out the high-quality gold ingot. She had a chilling smile on her face. Go. Tonight's groom, your bride, is waiting for you. Don't keep her waiting. Feng Zhen's expression darkened. He asked in a low voice, what does my lord mean? She knew what Huan was planning from the start, yet she still pushed him into the fire pit. It was obvious that she wasn't making him the groom, but rather a lab rat. Jiang Pingji said, don't worry. Just treat it as a blessing in love. Just accept it. Even though Feng Zhen was a playboy, he wasn't completely unscrupulous. Even if Huan had ulterior motives, he couldn't not know the truth and sleep with her for no reason. Yet his lord kept him guessing and didn't want to tell him the truth. Since you're so curious, go find out the truth yourself. Feng Zhen took a deep breath and looked at the gold ingots worriedly. I'm afraid I'll lose myself before I can get anything out of her. Jiang Pingji teased him playfully. Don't worry. Tonight is your wedding night. I'll guard the door for you. If she wants to harm you, just scream and I'll rush in to protect your chastity. Feng Zhen's mouth twitched. He resisted the urge to kill his lord. Could it be a honey trap? Xiao Guang chewed on peanuts. Is she using this to sow discord between my lord and Zisher? To seek other benefits? Feng Zhen said, it doesn't seem like it. If it's a honey trap, the price is too high. Who would be willing to waste a 26-year-old beauty on him? You'll know once you go take a look. Jiang Pingji continued to urge him. I'll disguise myself as a manservant and follow you in. Feng Zhen said helplessly, fine, that's all we can do for now. She had an unreliable lord, and her subordinates were even willing to sell their male charms. According to the rules of the brothel, Feng Zhen changed his clothes. He looked like a bridegroom. In the wedding room, the beauty had already dressed up. The air was filled with a sweet scent. Putting down the circular fan, Huan saw Jiang Pingji behind Feng Zhen. Her expression froze. She asked timidly, Langjun, this person? Feng Zhen said heroically, she's just a manservant. You don't have to care about her. Otherwise you'll miss the night. Jiang Pingji made her face look very ordinary. The audience in the streaming room sighed. Jiang Pingji wasn't putting on makeup. She was obviously changing her face. Huan didn't continue talking about the manservant. She and Feng Zhen went through the procedure one by one. Just as they were about to drink the nuptial wine, a peanut hit the soft part of his waist. Feng Zhen was so shocked that his whole body trembled. He frowned and touched the edge of the peanut with his lips. He didn't touch the wine and put it down. Chapter 770. Why didn't he drink? Feng Zhen smiled bitterly. It wasn't that he didn't want to drink. It was his lord who warned him not to touch it. However, he couldn't say that out loud. He thought for a moment and found a reason. It's not that I don't drink, it's just that I don't drink enough. Feng Zhen put down the gourd and said seriously, I've been weak and sickly since birth. I've been taking good care of myself for many years and have only gotten better in recent years. I shouldn't drink too much alcohol or meat to avoid triggering the root of my illness and scaring Huan. He explained it so clearly that Huan complexion improved. However, only she knew what she was thinking. Did he really drink the nuptial wine? Huan expression didn't change. Her face was full of adoration for Feng Zhen, but her voice was unusually cold. After a while, a dry mechanical voice sounded in Huan's mind. No, the puppet venomous insect didn't respond. The puppet venomous insect, as the name suggested, could hide in a person's brain and control their words and actions without them realizing it. Huan wanted to use a normal loyalty talisman to control Feng Zhen, but his brain was much stronger than normal people's. Normal loyalty talismans wouldn't work on him at all. It wasn't just Feng Zhen. Almost all difficult tacticians couldn't be controlled by normal loyalty talismans. As for the unusual loyalty talisman, she didn't want to waste it on Feng Zhen, so she could only settle for something else. She searched the system store for a long time and finally found the puppet venomous insect. Not only did she want to use the puppet venomous insect to control Feng Zhen, but she also wanted to use him to get close to Jiang Pingji and find a chance to plant a level 9 loyalty talisman on her. Hearing the system's feedback, Huan didn't show it on the surface, but she was already gnashing her teeth in anger. Feng Zhen didn't drink. Langjun, the night of spring is short. Don't waste it. Huan put down the gourd and walked to Feng Zhen's side on her knees. Her delicate hands covered his right hand and gently placed it on her lapel. She lowered her eyes and leaned her delicate body in Feng Zhen's arms. She guided his hand to untie the belt around her waist. Her clothes were gently removed, revealing her fair shoulders. Langjun, am I beautiful? Her plump red lips moved slightly. Her gaze was full of tenderness, as if there were thousands of stars twinkling in them. If it was someone else, they would have been moved by her gaze. Feng Zhen still didn't react. Instead, he smiled and glanced at the beautiful woman in his arms. Very beautiful, the most beautiful I've ever seen in my life. He praised and tried to pull his hand back. At this time, there was some movement at his waist, and then there was the rustling sound of someone untying his belt. My wife Huaner, it's still early, since she's the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, why aren't you moved at all? What else could Feng Zhen say? His private life was very unrestrained, but he knew very well what kind of woman he could mess with and what kind of woman he should avoid. Obviously, the beautiful girl in front of him belonged to the latter. Even though Feng Zhen still didn't know her background, the flaws she had revealed were enough to make him tense up. My heart is swaying, how can I not be moved? Feng Zhen's mouth was saying sweet nothings, but his heart was crying bitterly. What was going on? If the Lord did not make a move, would he really have to take a spear and go into battle and lose his innocence? Since you're moved, why don't you take me? The candlelight in the room flickered, and the air was filled with a sweet and flirtatious smell. Under Huaner's passionate and bold invitation, Feng Zhen's hand was forced to rest inside her bellyband. Well, she wasn't old, but her bellyband was full of material. But when he thought of the Lord watching from outside, Feng Zhen couldn't summon any of his romantic thoughts. He felt bitter. He wanted to break free but couldn't, so he could only be teased. Little did he know that someone was envious of his luck with women. This person was none other than the people in the streaming room who didn't mind watching the show. Maroa Josher, Tiske, I feel like the entire streaming room is going to turn yellow. Is the streamer planning to broadcast a fight between demons in real time? Shimon Yin Yin, I hope not. Otherwise the entire streaming room will become vulgar. Li Wushuang, I don't think so. The streamer has her principles. What was Jiang Pingji doing now? She wasn't paying attention to the bullet screen in her own streaming room. She was looking at the bullet screen in Huan Er's streaming room. Did anyone know why she was able to discover Huan Er's true identity every time? With such a big screen in the streaming room, if she couldn't figure it out, wouldn't she be blind? Of course, even if the other party turned off the streaming room, Jiang Pingji would still be able to discover it immediately. After all, she had left a spiritual seal in Huan Er's body. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to get close to her without anyone noticing. Feng Zhen was able to enjoy such good luck with women mostly thanks to the audience in Huan Er's streaming room. If it weren't for the audience's generous spending, missions and rewards, encouraging Huan Er to broadcast the fight between her and Feng Zhen, Huan Er might not have taken the initiative to do so. Not long after, Huan Er's clothes were half taken off, revealing her long, slender legs. Her shoulders were exposed to the air, and her clothes were in a mess. Langjun, take a concubine. Her hoarse voice was filled with lust. Even Feng Zhen felt his bones go weak when he heard this. It's still early, Feng Zhen stuttered, trying to stall for time. He didn't know that the bullet screen in Huan Er's streaming room was already filled with curses. Such a lively beauty with her clothes half taken off in front of him, no matter what kind of man he was, would he be able to hold himself back? He would have already pounced on her and ripped off the clothes that were in the way, and the two of them would have sexed together. Feng Zhen, on the other hand, was still stuttering and stalling at this juncture. He was clearly a eunuch who couldn't handle sex. Feng Zhen, who was suspected of being a eunuch, had no words to express his bitterness. His lord watched coldly from the side. Under such circumstances, he was still able to mobilize his troops. He admired him for being a real man. In the end, he could only use his strength to push the woman in his arms away. Huan Er wasn't prepared and was really pushed away. She rolled on the ground twice. My lord, stop watching the show. Help. Feng Zhen pushed her away, turned around and ran towards the door. The audience in the streaming room was stunned. What happened? Juana was also stunned for a while, but she quickly reacted. Her face turned cold. Who was Feng Zhen's lord? Lucy. Lucy had actually followed her? Juana's eyes were filled with hatred. She stared coldly at the servant not far away. Feng Zhen was hiding behind the servant. You're here to ruin my plans again. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms and said, I can't let my most important subordinate be tormented by you. I can only follow you to watch the show. When Feng Zhen heard this, he felt that something was amiss. My lord, you know this person? Jiang Pingji said, during the Sun Assembly, I used the ceremonial tablet to dismember the guy in front of you. Chapter 771. How could his face not turn green? How could a person who had been dismembered by his lord appear here as a prostitute in a brothel? It was like a ghost story. Is this woman a ghost? Feng Zhen recalled the encounter just now and felt goosebumps all over his body. She's a living person, but she has some ghostly abilities. Even after death she can come back to life. Why are you so afraid? What did she mean by, even after death she can come back to life? Coming back to life was already strange enough, let alone coming back to life after being dismembered. Feng Zhen didn't know what to say. His lord was so tough, but he was different. He was a coward. My lord, you're such a good lord. My lord, you must be joking. I'm just a mortal, how could I not be afraid? He had lived for almost 30 years and this was his first time seeing a demon. It was already a miracle that he didn't lose his soul in fear. You're afraid too? I really can't tell. If it weren't for me keeping an eye on you, perhaps you would have already fallen in love with her and forgotten yourself. Jiang Pingji stared at Huaner's movements as she teased Feng Zhen. His face looked like it had been painted green. Thinking about that demon begging in his arms, Feng Zhen felt his stomach churn and he almost vomited. On the other side, Huaner glared at Jiang Pingji with hatred in her eyes. Lu Shi, one day I will tear you to pieces. Jiang Pingji chuckled. You said, one day, but it won't be today. Faced with such mockery, Huaner's face turned green. Her previous 3 experiences told her that Jiang Pingji's combat ability was terrifying. She had no chance of escaping. Should she use the death escape again? The pain before death surfaced in her mind, and her body subconsciously shivered. If not for the system's insistence, she wouldn't even want to appear in front of Jiang Pingji. She asked the system with a guarded expression, but her heart trembled. System, give me an idea. Do you want me to die? The system wanted to play dead and not answer, but it reluctantly said, Lu Shi is strong, but Feng Zhen is different. If death is certain, you can consider using Feng Zhen to restrain Lu Shi. If that doesn't work, you can still put the level 9 loyalty talisman into Feng Zhen's body. The rank 9 loyalty talisman only costs 25 million popularity points, but you'll need 1 billion or more to revive once. Every time she revived, she would need to borrow at least 100,000 popularity points. That was enough for her to buy 40 grade 9 loyalty talismans. Thinking of this debt, Lady Huaner's face turned ashen. She had died several times before because of the high price of the 9th grade loyalty talisman. Instead, she had paid the price of death. If he had known this earlier, he would have used a few more 9th grade loyalty talismans. Perhaps his situation would have been much better than it was now. What is this? Jiang Pingji frowned. She noticed that there was a strange layer of mental energy in Huaner's hands. I'll make you the most obedient lackey. For safety reasons, she even bought a few life substitution puppet cards from the system. This thing was very useful. If it weren't for the help of the life substitution puppet card, she would have been assassinated by Xie Qian. As she finished speaking, Huan didn't care that her clothes were half undone. In a flash, she approached Jiang Pingji. Under Feng Zhen's horrified gaze, Huaner's 10 fingernails eerily elongated until they were 3 inches long. They were silvery white and extremely sharp. With a wave of her hand, 10 silvery white shadows were left in the air. The sight of them made people tremble and panic. Jiang Pingji was already familiar with her routine. She was about to kill him, but the attack that was supposed to land on a fatal spot deviated strangely. Huaner's heart went cold. Jiang Pingji had crushed a life substitution puppet with her bare hands. The system instructed in her mind, draw Lu Shi's attention away first, then focus on Feng Zhen. He won't be able to react in time. Huan cursed under her breath. She knew what to do. What was the point of the system's advice now? Feng Zhen secretly wiped his sweat as he retreated from the battlefield. He could tell that if he continued to stay there, he would only cause trouble for his lord. It was better to leave so that she wouldn't have to restrain herself. Seeing that the last life substitution puppet had been destroyed. Huan suddenly twisted her body. She was supposed to be charging at Jiang Pingji, but now she was charging at Feng Zhen. Her movements were as swift as lightning. Jiang Pingji had anticipated this. She moved in front of her and blocked the attack. Unexpectedly, the attack didn't hurt. Her right arm was just a little numb. Jiang Pingji wasn't the only one who was shocked. Huan Er's expression changed from shock to ecstasy. But her joy didn't last long. Her left chest was pierced through by a hand from front to back. Her eyes quickly dimmed. Feng Zhen scrambled to his feet. My lord, bring the lamp over." Feng Zhen did as he was told. He fetched the undamaged candle and handed it to Jiang Pingji. He watched helplessly as his lord dripped oil on the corpse, covered it with a few flammable cloths, poured oil on the cloths and finally lit them on fire. Was this the rhythm of burning the corpse? This demon is completely dead? The last time we dismembered her body, someone even fed her body to the wolves. Not even her bones were left, but didn't she come back to life in the end? Feng Zhen shuddered when he heard this. Let's go back first. I'll tell you in detail later. Seeing that the corpse was already burning, Jiang Pingji carried Feng Zhen and jumped down from the second floor through the window. She picked a quiet room. Just now, that demon seemed to have hit my lord's arm with something. Feng Zhen recalled Huan Er's words about turning you into the most obedient dog. He felt a little uneasy. I was indeed hit. That thing should be a spiritual mark that can forcibly control a person's soul. You won't understand even if I tell you. All you need to know is that once you're hit by it, you'll become an obedient puppet. It looks so ugly. Jiang Pingji pulled up the sleeve of her right arm. There was a large, strange, black mark on her fair arm. My lord, Jiang Pingji snickered. I got hit on purpose. Why are you panicking? When she finished speaking, the black mark on Jiang Pingji's arm seemed to come to life. It scrambled to the back of her hand and palm. Inexplicably, Feng Zhen felt a sense of pitifulness. On purpose? Including this time, I've killed her 4 times. The demon's target is me, but she's too stupid and fell into my hands 4 times in a row. Now she's become smarter and knows to target the people around me. I can guarantee that she can't hurt me, but I can't guarantee that she won't seize the opportunity to hurt the people around me. I stopped playing with this thing a long time ago. I can't believe she still treats it like a treasure. Feng Zhen fell silent. Even so, it's not enough for my lord to personally take the risk. Jiang Pingji lifted her eyelids lazily. Only when I fall for it, will she continue to target me and attack for the 5th time. If she returns without success this time, she'll only go into hiding and plot something else. This time it's you. Who will it be next time? I can defend myself once, but I can't defend myself a 2nd or 3rd time. Rather than that, it's better for her to continue targeting me and kill me every time she attacks. There was one more thing she didn't say. Not only was she worried that the time traveler would target her subordinates, but she was even more worried that the time traveler would hide away. Chapter 772. Feng Zhen knew that he couldn't change Jiang Pingji's mind, so he said helplessly, I've heard that demons are also a type of living creature. She's targeted you multiple times. Perhaps there's some kind of entanglement that no one else knows about. My lord, should we send someone to investigate so that we can learn more about ourselves and our enemy? Jiang Pingji tore off a piece of cloth and wrapped it around her right hand to hide the black marks. As she wrapped it around her hand, she said, There's no need. It's just a ghost. Why would we need to mobilize so many people? It's not like I have too much time on my hands to waste my energy on investigating someone like this. If she's not afraid of death, she can come at us. I guarantee that she won't be able to return. Her time was precious. It was already good enough that she could spare some time to deal with the transmigrator woman. How could she possibly spare any time to deal with her? If the transmigrator woman continued to work hard, she would be in the mood to keep her company. Feng Zhen laughed bitterly. His lord's combat ability was already comparable to that of a ghost. Ordinary warriors could only look up to her. If we leave just like that, what should we do with that demon's corpse? Feng Zhen frowned when he heard the commotion coming from the 2nd floor. Most of the houses were made of wood. If the demon's corpse was allowed to burn, the entire building might be affected. Jiang Pingji's answer dispelled his worries. It's fine. My opponent and I are fighting already. Someone outside heard the commotion and rushed over. Furthermore, that person's corpse was placed in an open space. The fire won't spread for a while, so it won't be a big deal. Just as Jiang Pingji predicted, people quickly came in with basins of water and drenched the entire room. When the fire was extinguished, they finally found a skeleton from the messy scene of the fire. Seeing the charred skeleton lying on the ground, the group carefully examined the black accessories beside the body. They confirmed that the person who was burned was Huan Er, and they were all horrified. Tonight was supposed to be the wedding night of a beautiful couple. How could a fire break out without a sound and burn such a beautiful woman to death? In an instant, the entire brothel was filled with an aura of fear. Everyone was panicking. Report to the authorities. Report to the authorities right now. Someone's dead. Who exactly caused the death of Huan Er's wife? How utterly devoid of conscience. Beautiful women are unfortunate. I don't know which bastard would be so ruthless to even lay his hands on such a peerless beauty. The sounds of discussion continued. The onlookers gathered outside the boudoir and craned their necks to look inside. They could barely see the messy scene after the fire. It was a horrifying sight. Many of the guests recalled Lady Huan Er's heavenly beauty and sighed inwardly. If Lady Huan Er had chosen them as her husband tonight, they would not have mistreated her, nor would they have allowed her to die. However, no matter how much of a pity they felt, such a peerless beauty had already perished beyond the heavens and would be hard to find again. They all agreed that Huan Er's husband, Feng Zhen, had killed her. No matter how hard the crowd searched, it was as if Feng Zhen and his group had vanished from the face of the earth. At this time, a strange cold wind blew in the brothel, causing everyone's clothes to flutter, and they almost couldn't open their eyes. Ah, monster! Monster! There's a monster! A shrill and terrified scream came from the second floor. The brothel keeper ran over with her thugs, and when she saw clearly, she was so shocked that she fell to the ground. The skeleton that had been burnt to a pitch-black skeleton actually stood up shakily. The dirty color faded from the pitch-black bones and was quickly replaced by clean, bright red muscles and nerves. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the dried corpse actually recovered its flesh and blood. Its skin was transparent, and the flowing blood vessels and beating heart could be seen clearly with the naked eye. After another breath's time, the transparent skin became tender and snow-white again. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, the corpse had turned from a skeleton into a living, naked beauty. Her hair was as black as a cloud, and other than her hair, eyelashes and eyebrows, her body was completely bare. Not a single strand of hair could be seen on her body. Her skin was white and translucent, like a beautiful piece of jade. She was so gentle and delicate that people couldn't bear to put their hands on her. Unfortunately, in the face of such a heavenly beauty, the onlookers who witnessed the entire process couldn't muster up any romantic thoughts. Monster. Someone took a few steps back in fear and then sat on the ground on his butt. A foul smell came from his crotch and the wet urine was everywhere. Suddenly the monster opened her eyes. The crowd didn't dare to look her in the eye, and started to run away in a panic. Those who didn't run were mostly too scared to run. Seeing this, the monster sneered coldly, "Cowards." With a wave of her hand, she tore off the tattered cloth that hadn't been completely burnt, and used it to cover her private parts. Then she jumped through the window and disappeared. Monster, monster. Seeing this, the brothel keeper was so scared that her eyes rolled back and she fainted. On the other side, the time traveler who was mistaken by the crowd as the monster, hid in a safe place and changed into a red dress. She asked the system excitedly in her mind, did Lu Shi really get hit by the level 9 loyalty talisman? The system suppressed its excitement and replied, reporting to the host, Lu Shi was indeed hit by the level 9 loyalty talisman, and the talisman has already taken effect. Once again the time traveler received a positive answer, and her heart was in turmoil. She had no choice but to be excited. She had fallen into Jiang Pingji's hands so many times, and this time she had finally made a comeback. She was in such a good mood that she didn't even feel bad about the debt of $2 billion. Jiang Pingji had burned her body, and if the system wanted to repair this body, it would have to pay more popularity points. The system was a profiteer who demanded an exorbitant price of $2 billion, and the time traveler could only pinch her nose and accept it. If it was in the past, she would have exploded in anger. But now, she had never felt so happy in her life. Even the profiteer, the system, found her pleasing to the eye. Jiang Pingji was hit by the level 9 loyalty talisman, and she would become the most obedient puppet and lackey. She would no longer be a hindrance to them. I'll go find Lu Shi now. The time traveler secretly gritted her teeth, and her eyes were filled with malice. Not now, it'll take some time. The system stopped her, lest the time traveler girl court death again. The system explained, the level 9 loyalty talisman invades a person's brain on a spiritual level. The stronger the person's spirit is, the greater the resistance. Lu Shi's spirit is very strong and he's not easy to control. We'll wait for a while, and when the level 9 loyalty talisman has the upper hand, then we'll make our move. If we appear now, it's hard to guarantee that Lu Shi won't play dirty, such as harming you while you're still conscious. After listening to the system's explanation, the time traveler finally suppressed her restless heart. She said, "All right, a little impatience spoils great plans. I'll bear with it." Chapter 773. Before Jiang Pingji left for the Alliance meeting, she gave Wei Ci a secret mission. Now that the Alliance meeting was nearing its end, the merchant teams that Wei Ci sent out had arrived at the north borderline one after another from different routes. The 3 tribes of the northern borderline were stunned by the sudden horse plague. Not only did their military strength suffer, but their economy also collapsed. The large stud farm was severely damaged, and the imperial court still gave them some subsidies and support. However, the small stud farm and the normal herdsmen were in deep trouble. A few caravans entered the border of the northern territory, and they were extremely surprised when they saw the desolate scene that was no longer as bustling and prosperous as before. How long has it been? How did Beijiang become like this? They were not the only ones who wanted to know the answer to this question. Countless herdsmen of the northern borderline who had lost their families also wanted to know the answer to this question. Why had things become like this? Before the horse plague, the northern borderline was Dongqing's greatest threat. In the eyes of the north borderline, Dongqing was just a piece of fatty meat stained with blood. Sooner or later they would tear it into pieces and swallow it into their stomachs. After the horse plague, everything changed. First, the war horses suddenly died from the disease. Less than 10 to 20% of them survived. Then the horse plague spread further and affected ordinary horses. The quality of ordinary horses was inferior to that of meticulously trained war horses. After the horse plague ravaged the area, the death rate of the horses reached a terrifying rate of less than 1%. As you all know, ever since this king ascended to the throne, he united the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, causing the military strength of the northern borderline to skyrocket. The king of the imperial court was not satisfied with this. He was still very ambitious. All these years he had been training war horses on a large scale. Wasn't it to attack Dongqing? In order to breed a large number of war horses in a short period of time, the imperial court even encouraged ordinary herdsmen to breed horses in large numbers. Ordinary herdsmen could buy foals from the stud farm and sell them to the farm after they grew up. Many herdsmen profited from it and attracted more and more herdsmen to raise. Many herdsmen saw that it was profitable and sold their cattle and sheep to raise horses. Many borrowed money to raise horses. When he said that, the old man from the merchant group clicked his tongue. His hoarse voice had a tinge of schadenfreude. Now, with the horse plague, all the horses that ordinary herdsmen have reared for a year or 2 have died. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They finally understood that for many northern borderline herdsmen, horses were money. A single horse plague had caused their efforts and money to go down the drain. After working hard for several years, not only did he not earn anything, he even lost his underwear. Apart from those who came from wealthy families, many ordinary herdsmen were so poor that they couldn't even afford to eat. Countless families had been ruined. At this moment, a merchant lamented, "How pitiful!" Someone didn't agree and mocked coldly, "How are they pitiful? It is obvious that the northern border imperial dynasty is too evil. If it weren't for their ambition, the herdsmen wouldn't have been persuaded to raise horses instead of cattle and sheep. Now that we have provoked the horse plague, it seems that God has opened his eyes." In the beginning, ordinary herdsmen mostly herded sheep and cattle, and there were not many horses. Because of the northern borderline's imperial court's repeated calls, the herdsmen reduced the number of sheep and cattle and switched to raising horses. Otherwise, these herdsmen would not have ended up in such a state. It was clearly the northern borderline imperial court's fault, but in the end, the common people had to pay the price. Shut up. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and hurriedly warned, "This is the northern borderland. If the barbarians hear this, do you want to die?" After traveling for a while, the caravan received very few sheepskins, rabbit skins, mutton jerky and rabbit jerky. The herdsmen don't raise sheep anymore. How much dried goods can we get? Looking at the dried goods they received, many people frowned. After so many days they had only received so little. How were they going to report in the future? Didn't we say to buy as much as we can? Anyway, we don't have to worry about sales, we just need to buy, we can make a profit no matter how much we buy. Even so, after several caravans walked around the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, they had received less than 20,000 sheepskins and rabbit skins. If it was in the past, they would have received 30,000 to 40,000 sheepskins and rabbit skins, and even more mutton jerky and rabbit jerky. The size of these caravans varied, and they seemed to be ordinary caravans, so they did not attract the attention of the officials. Apart from sheepskins and rabbit skins, they also bought many special products unique to the northern borderline, and privately agreed with the ordinary herdsmen that they would come back in 2 to 3 months. Even so, the caravan was not optimistic about the prospects of the next purchase. For these goods, I don't know how many people have gone. The next time we come, we probably won't even get mosquito meat. They bought all the goods they could and almost cleaned out the ordinary herdsmen's stores. If they came back in 2 to 3 months to buy again, even if they were willing to pay a high price, the herdsmen would not be able to produce the goods. A merchant interrupted, after a while the pasture in the northern borderline will be lush, and the herdsmen can raise more rabbits and sheep. Anyway, the horses they raised are all dead and the pasture is just sitting there. It's better to raise some small animals that can support their families. If they didn't find a way to support their families, these unlucky herdsmen would be so hungry that they would have to eat grass. The merchant continued, in my opinion, rabbits are not bad. They give birth quickly and give birth quickly. Sheep and rabbits had different growth cycles. They couldn't raise a lot of sheep in 2 to 3 months, but they could raise rabbits. If they wanted to have enough to eat in a short period of time, raising rabbits was a good choice. The pastures in the northern borderline were so big and there was grass everywhere. It was convenient to raise rabbits without having to worry about feeding them. At this time, someone raised a different opinion. If we really do as you say and they only raise rabbits, then we can only buy them. I don't know how much money we'll lose on this trip. The head of the caravan clicked his tongue and said indifferently, people in Wanzhou are rich and they like these things. We'll do business along the way and we'll earn twice as much on this trip. We won't lose out. No matter how small a mosquito is, it's still meat. Buying rabbit skin and rabbit meat won't earn us much, but it'll add up to a considerable amount. But someone hesitated. No matter how rich Wanzhou is, they can't keep doing unprofitable business. The voices of the caravan gradually faded away. Not only did these traveling merchants not know Wanzhou's purpose, but even the people of Wanzhou didn't know what they were up to. What did the Lord ask you to do? It's going to be spring plowing now. If you keep buying sheep skin and rabbit skin, I'm afraid it'll rot in your hands. Feng Jin looked at him coldly for a while, but still couldn't guess Wei Si's real intentions. Naturally, Wei Si couldn't reveal the specific details. The fewer people who knew the plan, the better. If Feng Jin and the others guessed it themselves, then it would be a different story. Chapter 774. Feng Jin wasn't someone who could be easily dismissed. He said, preparing for a rainy day a year in advance isn't your reason too perfunctory. Wei Si laughed involuntarily and said lightly, I also want to find a reason that isn't perfunctory, but I still haven't found one. Feng Jin was so angry that he almost fell down. This person actually shamelessly admitted it. Wei Si's mouth was like a gourd with its mouth sawed off. It was so tight that he couldn't get any useful information out of him. Feng Jin steeled his heart and thought to himself, if Wei Si doesn't want to say it, then I won't say it. I'll guess it myself. However, Feng Jin was born into an aristocratic family. He usually went out in a carriage with a servant accompanying him. His knowledge was broad enough, but his field experience was slightly lacking. He thought for a long time but still couldn't guess the real intention. In the end, he could only quietly ask Qiguan Rang. Qiguan Rang was born in the border of Dongqing. His father was a barbarian from the northern borderline, so he knew far more about the northern borderline than Feng Jin. Feng Jin found a suitable time to stop Qiguan Rang and casually mentioned it while chatting. Qiguan Rang listened and pondered for a while. His pupils suddenly shrank and he quickly grabbed Feng Jin's arm. You said that the Lord asked Zixiao to arrange for a caravan to go to the northern borderline to buy sheepskin and rabbit skin? When he asked this, Qiguan Rang's face turned a little more livid. Feng Jin was shocked by Qiguan Rang's action, but he quickly calmed down and asked, Wenjing, do you know the Lord's intention? Qiguan Rang laughed bitterly. His aura dissipated and a little helplessness appeared on his face. He said bitterly, I have a rough guess but I don't know if it's accurate. Seeing Qiguan Rang's reaction, Feng Jin knew that this matter wasn't simple. He looked left and right. Even though there was no one around, he still cautiously invited Qiguan Rang to his house to discuss in detail. If this matter was related to the entire Wanzhou strategy against the northern borderline, he couldn't just casually talk about it. Wen Zheng, don't be in a hurry to say it. Why don't we sit down at my house and discuss this in detail? Qiguan Rang wasn't surprised by Feng Jin's actions. This person had always been cautious and self-restrained. Even if there were only the two of them around, Feng Jin wouldn't be careless. When they arrived at Feng Jin's residence, the two went to the study and dismissed the servants. After confirming that it was safe, Feng Jin asked solemnly, "What exactly did Wen Jing guess?" Qiguan Rang never left his fan. Every time he encountered something important or when he was nervous, he would habitually fan himself. Now that the weather was still chilly, his fanning made it even colder. He did not answer Feng Jin's question directly. Instead, he talked about an old matter. Qiguan Rang said, "Rang was born in the borderlands. The people nearby often make a living by herding sheep and cows. There was a family that raised nearly 100 sheep. They were considered a big family in the village. This family liked to let their sheep graze at the foot of the mountain. Why, you guess what happened next?" Feng Jin imagined the scene in his mind. If there were hundreds of sheep grazing in a small area, there wouldn't be enough food, right? No more grass to eat? Qiguan Rang fanned himself even harder. He blew away all the heat in the vicinity. Feng Jin leaned closer to the charcoal brazier. "It's not just grass to eat, those goats are so hungry that they've dug out the grass roots." After saying this, Qiguan Rang's face was a little red. It was obvious that he was angry. Then he said, "There's an ancient book that says a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. From this, it can be seen that rabbits not only eat grass, but they're also used to living in burrows. They hide in their burrows during the day and look for food at night. They dig holes to prevent the enemy from harming them." After hearing this, Feng Jin vaguely felt that something was wrong. However, he did not understand why Qiguan Rang's reaction was so intense. If he thought about it in the direction of northern borderline and combined it with Qiguan Rang's words, a flash of inspiration flashed through Feng Jin's mind. Could it be that the Lord and Zixiao want to touch the grasslands of northern borderline? Feng Jin was shocked for a long time. He almost could not close his mouth. The barbarians of northern borderline had been a hidden danger for a long time. Since the chaos of the 16 kingdoms, the barbarians had been eyeing the central plains covetously. Their land was not suitable for farming. They often gathered together with horse caravans to raid the borders. They burned, killed, and looted. How did the ancestors of northern borderline, the Chenggu tribe, become so powerful? To put it nicely, the Chenggu tribe was brave and ferocious. To put it bluntly, they were just a group of beasts in human skin. Not only did they burn, kill, and loot, they also kidnapped countless Central Plains women and kept them captive. Not only did they use them as food, but they also used them as mobile reproduction machines. They used these innocent girls as carriers to force them to give birth to children and expand their population. In the middle of the chaos of the 16 kingdoms, the Chenggu tribe only had a population of 200,000. By the end of the chaos, their population had expanded to more than 3 million. From 200,000 to 3 million. Looking at these shocking historical documents, he could only imagine the faces of countless women in pain. However, although the barbarians of northern borderline were hateful, they knew how to ride horses since they were young. They were very good at fighting on horseback. If they could not win, they would run. After the Xia kingdom was founded, they went on several expeditions to northern borderline in an attempt to stop them from raiding every season. However, the results were minimal. Until now, they still had no effective way to deal with northern borderline. They could not defeat them in battle, and stopping them was ineffective. After all, they could not send a large number of troops to be stationed in this place. Countless sages had worried about northern borderline. No one had thought of directly attacking the pasture in northern borderline. Feng Jin's heart was beating wildly, and his face showed obvious joy. When Qiguan Rang saw this, he fanned Feng Jin several times to wake him up. "You're celebrating too early," Qiguan Rang said resolutely, interrupting Feng Jin's joy. Feng Jin was puzzled. "Why do you say that?" Qiguan Rang sighed. If this method was really that good, why would he be complaining here? Just like Feng Jin, he was so happy that he did not know what to do. "You don't understand? If the Lord really used this method to attack northern borderline, she might really be able to destroy the entire northern borderline. However, it would only be a lose-lose situation." Qiguan Rang paused at this point. He did not know how to continue. After all, Feng Jin was a pure Central Plainsman. Feng Jin frowned. "You mean a lose-lose situation?" Qiguan Rang let out a long sigh. "That's right. Even if we can really rely on this method to destroy northern borderline, the Lord will not be able to gain any benefits. Although northern borderline is hateful, the people who do evil are in the minority. If the entire grassland is destroyed, what will happen to the innocent people? Limited by the background of the entire era, Qiguanrang did not know the concept of grassland degradation and desertification. He only vaguely guessed it. Even if it was just a guess, he could foresee the disaster that would be brought to northern borderline after this plan was implemented. Feng Jin was a pure Central Plainsman. Those who were not of the same race would definitely have different intentions. However, Qiguanrang was of mixed blood between northern borderline and the Central Plains. Chapter 775. After a while, Qiguanrang said calmly, "If it's for the sake of the Lord's great plan, you have no choice but to do so." Rang has nothing to say. To be merciful to the enemy was to be cruel to one's own side. To be merciful to the barbarians of the northern borderline, it was possible that one's family would be destroyed. Forget about other stories. Just based on the example of the Chengwu tribe, the ancestors of the 3 tribes in the northern borderline, who relied on abducting women from the Central Plains to expand their population from 200,000 to more than 3 million in just 20 to 30 years, it was enough for the Central Plains people to view the northern borderline as a great enemy. Feng Jin was silent for a moment. He completely understood Jiang Pingji and Wei Xi's plan. Will the northern borderline find out about this? Feng Jin's heart was ruthless. As long as the enemy was not dead, he could not let his guard down. I can't be sure, but the northern frontier is vast. These little bastards won't have much of an impact for the time being. Qiguanrang thought about it and said uncertainly, "It would take at least 50 to 60 years to destroy all the pasture in the north borderline, right? The 3 tribes of the northern borderline aren't stupid. As long as they haven't conquered the Central Plains, they can only be confined to this piece of land. It's impossible for them to sit back and watch." Feng Jin breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, 50 to 60 years? Did Wenjing think that his lord would tolerate the northern borderline for so many years? In Jin's opinion, in at most 3 to 5 years, the lord would be sharpening his knife to attack the northern borderline. The war would be unavoidable. Rabbit Goat was definitely not a fatal blow. It was better to think about it from another perspective. The lord probably didn't want to use this method to destroy the northern borderline. Since that's the case, why go through so much trouble? Qiguan had been too anxious just now and had actually fallen into a dead end for a moment. His thinking had gone astray. That's right. Our lord isn't using rabbits and sheep to destroy the northern borderline, so he must have other plans. Could it be that he's trying to restrain us? Feng Jin nodded in agreement. That's what I mean too. It's probably to divert the northern borderline's attention so that they won't be able to focus on increasing their combat power. The northern border had just been hit by the horse plague. Countless warhorses had died, and their combat power had been reduced by more than half. They would not be able to recover for a while. But what if they were to settle down and think of ways to continue breeding warhorses after spring? In at most 10 years, the northern borderline would be strong again. At that time, it was hard to say whether the 5 countries of the Central Plains would still exist. It's hard to guarantee that the northern borderline won't take this opportunity to invade. As Qiguanrang listened to Feng Jin's words, he recalled the chaotic history of the 16 kingdoms. If the 5 countries of the Central Plains also fell into chaos, wouldn't the situation be the same as the 16 countries that had been at war for hundreds of years? It was not impossible for the border barbarians to take advantage of the situation. At that time, the Central Plains would be weak while the barbarians would be strong. It would not be impossible for them to lose their clothes. Qiguanrang broke out in a cold sweat, but his expression did not change. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. He concluded, "In that case, my lord only wants to use this strategy to delay the rise of the northern borderline?" Feng Jin nodded. That should be it. The next afternoon, Feng Jin secretly hinted to Wei Xi about this matter. The latter only laughed and cried in secret. "In the end, you still managed to guess it. That's about it." Feng Jin pretended to be angry and said, "Although this plan is vicious, it's not like Beijiang has no reaction at all." "If we're discovered," Wei Xi said, "we won't be discovered. We've already purchased countless sheepskins and other items from the north borderline. They won't be suspicious for a while. What's more, I only asked the caravan to purchase from the ordinary herdsmen and not from the rich families. It's even more impossible for the imperial court to find out. By the time they find out, the flock of sheep and the scattered rabbits on the grassland will have begun to take shape. At that time, we'll send an undercover agent to the king of the northern borderline. Tell me, will they continue to allow these little bastards to run rampant, or will they send people to destroy the rabbits and sheep? Feng Jin was stunned on the spot. He had a deeper understanding of Wei Ci and his lord's evil intentions. Wei Ci sneered again and said, "It's true that the 3 tribes of the northern borderline are arrogant and like to act on impulse. However, they still have a calmer wise man. The current wise man is the rare wise general of the northern borderline, Wu Liba. Wu Liba is a cautious person. He doesn't see the hope of the northern borderline crushing the central plains, so he won't easily abandon the northern borderline. At least he has a way out. Therefore, in Xi's opinion, this person will definitely strongly support the king of the royal court to spare manpower and energy to destroy the rabbits and sheep. In this way, the northern borderline's energy will be tied up." Jiang Pingji came from the future. She feared nature more than anyone else. She also knew how excessive the plan was to destroy the ecology. Even if nothing happened now, after 100 years, the descendants would come back to their senses and curse their ancestors. Since she dared to propose such a plan, she had naturally thought of a few backup plans. It was true that the rabbits and sheep would bring harm to the ecology of the northern borderline, but as long as it did not exceed the limits of the ecology's ability to regulate itself, there was no need to worry. After conquering the northern borderline, she would continue to send people to clean up the rabbits and sheep in the northern borderline. Then she would encourage the people to plant grass and trees in large quantities. It would only be 3 to 5 years. The situation was still within her control. What she needed was time, not a barren desert that was riddled with scars and could not be saved. After receiving Wei Ci's reply, Feng Jin also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then he privately revealed it to Qiguan Rang to make him feel at ease. The northern borderline was completely unaware. Since the outbreak of the horse plague, the northern borderline's business had suffered a devastating blow. They had opened up the business of foreign merchant caravans. It was just that there were more merchant caravans buying rabbit and sheep skins. This matter would not reach the ears of the king of the royal court. Wei Ci was a person who did things meticulously. His arrangements for the merchant caravans were even more thorough. Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang watched for a while and they both shuddered. Even though they knew that this method would not kill the northern borderline, it could still carve a piece of flesh out of them. The two of them thought at the same time, "We can't casually provoke this fellow in the future." It was one thing to be plotted against, but they were afraid that they would not even know how they were plotted against. With everyone's help, Wanzhou slowly became orderly. The depressed economy also began to slowly recover. It was just that the group of officials suffered. More than once, Feng Jin envied Wei Ci's ability to write with 2 hands and multitask. But it was just envy. Sigh. "Changxing, why are you heavier than before?" Feng Jin weighed his daughter and was filled with emotion. He had not touched the pillow to sleep for a few days. Wei Jingxian looked at the dark circles under his eyes with heartache. He could not hide the heavy eye bags no matter what. "How many days have you not been home?" Wei Jingxian glared at him. If it were not for Changxing's good memory, she would have long forgotten about this father who had not appeared for a long time. She continued, "I went to see Madame Wei yesterday. She has not seen Sir Qiguan for a long time." The Madame Wei that Wei Jingxian was talking about was none other than Qiguan Rang's wife, Wei Yuan's eldest daughter. Looking at Jiang Pingji's team, only these 2 couples had wives and daughters and were not separated from each other. "I'm busy," Feng Jin said with some grievance. Lanting through the big mess of Wanzhou here and did not care about it. At the thought that his lord was still carefree and happy at this moment, Feng Jin felt his molars itch even more. To be honest, he had really wronged Jiang Pingji. She was not carefree and happy at this moment. After being appointed as Wanzhou's magistrate, the alliance troops withdrew one after another. Jiang Pingji and the others were also preparing to retreat. After marching for only 2 days, she received a message. Chapter 776. There were 23 forces in the alliance. Some had more soldiers, some were fewer, and some were stronger than others. However, since they had a place in the alliance and had the right to speak, the troops they brought with them were naturally not weak. The force that was ambushed by Prince Changshou's army was the county chief of Wulong County in Haozhou. Jiang Pingji sneered. "So this old man is waiting here. Does he want to capture all of the alliance forces in one fell swoop?" It was one thing to proclaim himself emperor 7 days before the former emperor, but now he refused to retreat and was waiting at the border of Qinzhou to ambush the scattered alliance forces. The county chief of Wulong County was an impatient person. He wanted to return to Haozhou immediately after taking credit for the rescue mission, but he didn't expect to lose his life. Jiang Pingji scouts were the first to discover the remnants of Wulong County in Haozhou. They heard about it from the survivors. The situation was serious, so Jiang Pingji didn't continue on her way. Instead, she chose to rest and reorganize while gathering people to deal with the situation. Everyone's faces turned pale when they heard what the remnants of Wulong County told them. Prince Changshu had been emperor for more than half a month, but he had been quiet and didn't do anything. The alliance forces camped outside the imperial city of Qinzhou for a while. At first they said they were there to protect the imperial court. To put it bluntly, there were 23 forces in the alliance, ranging from the governor to the county magistrate. They had gathered more than 400,000 soldiers. The 400,000 soldiers camped outside the imperial city of Qinzhou. Their camps were connected and their flags fluttered in the wind. It was a majestic sight. However, the royal family didn't feel safe when they saw this. The 400,000 soldiers didn't listen to their commands. After Prince Changshu became emperor, he didn't target the imperial city of Qinzhou, nor did he intend to attack it. Therefore, some people couldn't help but think that maybe Prince Changshu was satisfied with being emperor and planned to retreat to his fief in Jiangzhou. As a result, the alliance forces protecting the imperial city of Qinzhou and resisting Prince Changshu seemed unnecessary. The Empress Dowager wasn't a strong woman with foresight. She was just an ordinary woman. It was already good enough that she was familiar with makeup, clothing, and jewelry. How could she have any knowledge of politics? Her biggest skill was having a messy private life. She had cheated on her late husband countless times. The relatives of her mother's family had secretly slandered her several times, urging her to find trouble with the allied forces and secretly squeeze them. The Empress Dowager still wanted to secretly take back the military power that was scattered in the hands of the allied vassals. From the Empress Dowager's point of view, how could she sleep soundly when there were 400,000 troops of unknown loyalty stationed outside the imperial city where she and the young emperor lived? As a result, she had spoken several times in court meetings, vaguely mentioning the matter of withdrawing troops and handing over military power. The allied army of the feudal vassals all pretended to be ignorant. The royal family of Dongqing was nothing. What right did they have to take back the military power in their hands? Who gave them so much face? Thus, the allied forces all chose the former option. If they wanted to retreat, then so be it. Who would want to stay in the imperial city of Qinzhou? Recently, many of the alliance's vassals had packed their bags and spoils of war, preparing to return home. Haozhou wasn't far from Qinzhou, and the Wulong County governor was an impatient person. He was secretly annoyed by the Empress Dowager, so he left without a second thought. Who would have thought that the Wulong County's governor, who had withdrawn his troops several days earlier, would die just like that? Jiang Pingji scanned the crowd and clenched the bamboo slip in her hand. We have more than 10,000 elite soldiers and strong generals. Even if we were ambushed by Prince Changshu in advance and caught unprepared, we shouldn't have lost so miserably. After a night of fierce fighting, there are only a few dozen soldiers left. Although there were dozens of defeated soldiers who managed to escape alive, they were all wounded, and a few of them even suffered extremely serious injuries. If it weren't for the fact that they were still holding on to their last breath, these people might have already died. Even so, more than half of them had been left with physical disabilities that could never be cured. As for the Wulong County governor, he had died a heroic death in the ambush. Not even his bones were left. Before he died, he entrusted his only remaining bloodline, the 11-year-old Kai Xiang, to his trusted aide and asked him to protect Kai Xiang as she broke out of the encirclement. Jiang Pingji had the logisticians take care of the wounded. Only when those with lighter injuries woke up would she be able to ask for more first-hand information. When everyone heard this, their hearts sank. Li Yun pondered for a while, then said, "It seems that Prince Changshu intends to take advantage of the disintegration of the alliance army to defeat them one by one. For now, should my lord send people to chase after the other allied forces? At the very least, they can't be left alone and give the enemy an opportunity?" The first force to leave Wulong County had already been destroyed. The 11-year-old Kai Xiang had escaped. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a massacre. Thinking about the grudge between their lord and Prince Changshu's forces, this ambush would fall on them sooner or later. Although Jiang Pingji and Lu Shi's forces added up to only 30,000 troops, so it should be safer, but life was unpredictable. Who knew how many troops Prince Changshu would send to ambush them? Even the newly joined technicians Qi Kuang and Xiao Guang were not optimistic about this idea, not to mention Yang Si and Feng Zhen. The Allied forces come from all over the world and they all have different paths. The most eye-catching among the forces in the north of Dongqing are my lord and the old master. If we were to count them, there is also the Haozhou Maota County Governor, Huang Song. But who knows where Huang Song is now? The Allied forces did not evacuate at the same time. They were separated by a day or two. In ancient times, communication was not very developed. It was not easy to contact the Allied forces. Li Yun's expression darkened. That's true, it was better to rely on oneself than on others. Who knew what the other Allied forces were planning? When Li Yun mentioned the other Allied forces, Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of Yang Jian. Yang Jian was the county chief of Zhangzhou's Dongmen County, and Zhangzhou was Prince Changshuo's original fief. Yang Jian's achievements today were all thanks to Prince Changshuo's promotion. Logically speaking, Yang Jian should naturally be in Prince Changshuo's camp, but he joined the Allied forces. According to Prince Changshuo's narrow-minded personality, how could he let Yang Jian and the others go? However, she thought of Yan Lin, who was by Yang Jian's side. That young man had always been vigilant, so he might not be at a disadvantage. As they were talking, a messenger reported that someone from Wulong County had woken up, and he was a trusted aide. Thank you, Commander, for saving my life. The person's body was wrapped in white cloth that oozed blood. Although there were many wounds on his body, none of them were fatal, so he had woken up earlier. 2 medical female soldiers carried him in on a stretcher. The person propped himself up and bowed to Jiang Pingji. No need for formalities. Jiang Pingji skipped the step of asking about his well-being and asked directly, what did the Wulong County chief encounter to end up in such a state? When and where did that traitor ambush you? How many troops did he have? Chapter 777. If it's only 10,000 soldiers, there's no need to worry. Feng Zhen frowned, showing no signs of relaxing. But for a night ambush, we must choose strong soldiers with good eyesight. Otherwise, what's the difference between sending a bunch of blind people to battle? Moreover, it's the latter half of the night, which requires even more eyesight. It's hard to guarantee that there won't be any reinforcements. Although Jiang Pingji often brought thousands of soldiers to conduct night attacks were rare, and the chances of success were low. Of course, if they succeeded, the results would be bountiful. In ancient times, people lived in poverty and were malnourished. Sometimes they couldn't even afford to use salt, which led to all kinds of diseases, let alone a balanced diet. Under such circumstances, many people were infected with night blindness, and they were like blind people when they walked at night. Under such circumstances, very few generals would choose to conduct night attacks. But in the history books, there were still examples of night attacks. Every battle was fought beautifully, and their names were recorded in the annals of history. But if you looked closely, you would notice that the scale of night attacks was relatively small, with only a few hundred to a few thousand people. As for Prince Changshuo's troops, Yang Si lowered his eyes, a hint of mockery in his voice. Sending 10,000 soldiers to conduct a night attack is impressive. Let's make a wild guess. First, some of the Wulong County chief's subordinates might be working with the enemy from the inside. Otherwise, why didn't the night patrolling guards notice the tens of thousands of soldiers? Second, the total number of enemy soldiers is far more than 10,000. Normally, it's less than 10% of the soldiers suitable for night attacks. Why would Prince Changshuo place more than 100,000 soldiers at Jimen Pass and wait for us? That's impossible. But if the entire army is made up of elite soldiers, then maybe 2 out of 5 fit the bill. The worst-case scenario is that the enemy is made up of elite soldiers. Feng Zhen was speechless. Jing Rong, are you saying that there are between 20,000 and 25,000 enemies hiding near Jimen Pass? It's just a rumor. It doesn't count. Yang Si smiled and said to Jiang Pingji, whether you believe it or not depends on your judgment, my lord. If the Wulong County chief's troops could provide more detailed data, Yang Si would at least be more confident. The problem was that the other party had been beaten senseless, and it was impossible to get a more accurate number in the chaos of war. Yang Si's speculation and the reality of the situation would be more and more different. In short, the next target of the enemy's ambush was very likely to be them, so they had to be on guard. If they thought that the enemy only had 10,000 men while their own had 30,000 men and horses, they would be careless. Perhaps they would capsize in an easy task. Jiang Pingji did not say a word. She just clasped her fingers together out of habit and fell into deep thought. After a while, she continued asking the remaining troops of the Wulong County governor. Can you recall the details of that night? Where did the enemy attack from? Has the commander appeared? The middle-aged man tried his best to search for the relevant memories. His mind was filled with the carnage of that night. His face revealed a pained expression. Although the soldiers were used to seeing life and death, no one could accept their former comrades falling at their feet. They used their bodies and lives to cover for them, opening up a path for survival. The man thought for a while and barely remembered the details of that night. That night there was indeed an extremely valiant general. Almost no one could stop him. It was this person, who cut off the head of the county governor. The man's lips trembled. He suppressed his emotions and said, "If I remember correctly, those bandits attacked from the right camp." After saying this, he recalled some more details. After this gentleman's reminder, now that I think about it, perhaps there really was a spy. His face became even paler, as if a thick layer of powder had been applied to it. The sudden appearance of the enemy is one thing, but there was also something wrong with our soldiers that night. Although it was the second half of the night, all of them seemed very tired. Usually we would not be at a disadvantage in a one-on-one battle, but that night, we were utterly defeated. No matter how they ambushed them, the enemy could not have killed all 10,000 soldiers in an instant. From the beginning of the battle on the outskirts to the end of the Central Army, only 15 minutes had passed. The reaction speed of the soldiers had been exceptionally slow. Now that he thought about it, there had to be something fishy going on. Perhaps there really was a spy who added something extra to the soldiers' meals? Thinking about this, he suddenly raised his hand and took out a roll of something wrapped in dried lotus leaves from his armor. It looked soft and fluffy. This was the dinner of that night. I wanted to save it for the next morning, but can the military doctor take a look and see if there's anything wrong with it? Marching to war was different from other things. One meal was usually enough to last 2 or 3 days. The soldiers always ate cold leftovers. It was good enough to have dry rations. Since the night of the attack, he had been hungry for 2 days. He had not eaten the food either. He had left it all for the young Lord Kai Xiang. Now that he thought about it, Kai Xiang had been sleeping most of the way. Even when he was awake, he was still somewhat listless. At that time he thought that Kai Xiang had lost his father and was grieving. Now that he thought about it, he shuddered. Jiang Pingji's expression was solemn. She waved her hand and asked the military doctor to come over and take a look. The military doctor's medical skills were not outstanding, but he could still handle ordinary external injuries. He had a rich knowledge of pharmacology. Even though the weather was still cold, the food had been left for 2 or 3 days. It was slightly rancid, but the military doctor could not smell it. He had no choice but to pinch some of it and put it in his mouth. He carefully identified the abnormality other than the rancid smell. After a while, his expression was solemn. "Reporting to my lord, it was mixed with sleeping grass that calms the nerves and induces sleep. In addition, there are traces of golden eggplant." Golden eggplant? Jiang Pingji frowned. She glanced at the screen of the streaming room and wondered what it was. Wow, AIGG, I checked on Baidu. Golden eggplant is the common name of datura. In modern society, this thing can also be used for medical purposes. Golden eggplant made from datura is used for surgical anesthesia. Incidentally, some people speculated that the knockout drugs in Wuxia novels were also made from datura. If this thing was mixed with food, it could really induce sleep. It seemed that there was a spy. As for sleeping grass, the audience in the streaming room could not find it. In fact, it was impossible for them to find it. Sleeping grass was a special kind of horse grass unique to this world. It could induce sleep and calm one's mind. Horse grooms would always carry some with them. This thing was used to calm down horses that were full of energy and restless emotions during the spring season. It was used to calm down horses that were full of energy and agitated. However, sleeping grass took effect quickly and lasted for a long time, but the medicinal effect was not strong. Instead, it was relatively mild and difficult to detect. In that case, there was a spy who drugged the food of the defenders. The enemy took advantage of the effect of the drug and the soldiers were tired. That was how the night attack was successful. When the burly man heard this, he immediately burst into tears. He mourned that his comrades had died unjustly. Jiang Pingji did not feel anything. War was never a matter of conforming to the rules. Generals were not brainless warriors. On the battlefield, each of them was more sinister and treacherous than the other. In Jiang Pingji's opinion, it was not a big deal to drug the enemy's food. If it was not for the fact that the strong poison took effect too quickly and was easily discovered, perhaps the enemy would have asked the spy to kill them directly. Chapter 778. Jiang Pingji frowned and thought for a while. The burly man ignored his injuries and bowed to Jiang Pingji in tears. His rough and tired face was covered in tears and his eyes were red. Middle Commander, my master died unjustly. Now, only a strand of young master's bloodline is left. I hope that Middle Commander will take into account the fact that my master was an official of the same dynasty and lend a helping hand. Send someone to escort young master back to Wulong County of Haozhou. I am willing to serve you for the rest of my life. The tall and sturdy man was crying and kneeling to someone. No matter who it was, they would definitely be moved by this sight. The viewers in the livestream room were moved by him. They secretly felt sympathy for him and sympathized with his experience. Garlic Lobster Gafen, I can feel his helplessness and pain even through the screen. The ancients said that a scholar would die for his bosom friend. I think the Wulong County chief was his bosom friend. His lord died in front of him. He must be in so much pain. Shrimp meatballs, I feel the same. On the surface, the burly man should be the resolute type, but now he is crying so miserably. Secret sauce mixed rice. You all sympathize with him? I hate him a little. His lord and comrade died, but what does that have to do with the streamer? There are enemies ahead and the streamer can't even take care of herself. Why should she agree to his request? To serve him for the rest of his life? The streamer doesn't lack people who would risk their lives for her. Even if he died a terrible death, I don't like him. Inji red date and lotus seed soup, you're being too serious. But I don't like it either. If the streamer had survived the crisis, the streamer might have agreed to his request. Isn't he just making trouble for the streamer by bringing this up now? The comments in the streaming room floated across the screen. Many viewers expressed their opinions, but most of them sympathized with the burly man. Jiang Pingji ignored the comments and asked someone to help the burly man up from the ground. She said, the Wulong County chief died a terrible death at the hands of a traitor. I can't just sit back and do nothing. You should recuperate first. If even you collapse, who can your young master count on? You have to pull yourself together to protect the young lord. Jiang Pingji's answer was a little vague, but she was a little relieved. The burly man knew when to stop. Thank you, Lieutenant General. There were many wounds on his body and he had lost a lot of blood. After talking for a while, his emotions had fluctuated several times, and now he was mentally and physically exhausted. The medics placed him on a stretcher and carried him out. When they were far away, Jiang Pingji's gaze turned slightly cold. Yang Si stepped forward and said, My lord, this matter should not be concluded too early. I know, but I haven't agreed yet. Jiang Pingji smiled. Her jade-like eyes were filled with calculation. When Feng Zhen heard this, he understood Jiang Pingji's intentions. A meaningful smile appeared on his face. The Lord was the Lord. She was not easily emotional or moved. Only in this way could she go further. He said, Wulong County is located in Haozhou, which is not a bad place. How does my lord intend to use it? How could he not eat a fat piece of meat that was delivered to his doorstep? However, Feng Zhen wanted to know if his lord intended to eat it herself, or if she was doing Huang Song a favor. Jiang Pingji thought for a moment, then said, Wulong County's elites are almost all dead, and only a few of them managed to escape. How can they defend Wulong County with just a few injured people and an 11-year-old Kai Xiang? Bogeo is also in Haozhou. He is the county chief of Haozhou's Mauda County, which is Wulong County's neighbor. How could he not have any ideas? Even if we don't talk about Bogeo, just the local power in Wulong County is not something that Kai Xiang can suppress. It is indeed a fat piece of meat. It is no less than a child carrying a gold brick through the streets. After saying this, Jiang Pingji added, As for how to use it, I have not decided yet. I would like to hear your opinions. Hearing this, the bullet screen in the live stream turned into astonished exclamation marks. *CK. Their streamer had no intention of helping the remaining soldiers in Wulong County. Instead, she wanted to use them for her own benefit? Many of the viewers felt uncomfortable. Wasn't this bullying children and stealing their property? But they knew that the streamer lived in a different era from them. They felt that her actions were excessive and inhumane, but reality proved that her actions were correct. If she was soft-hearted, she would not even be able to protect her family and property, let alone the world. Therefore, the viewers tolerated this discomfort. Only a few with a bad temper expressed their disgust. The Wulong County chief's retainer was crying and begging, so why did the streamer not feel the slightest bit moved? Instead, she was thinking about stealing their property? Using modern thinking, the streamer's father had just died in an accident and left a large inheritance for the little boy Kai Xiang. The streamer had nothing to do with Kai Xiang. She just happened to pass by and saved him. Yet, she was thinking about how to divide his inheritance. Wasn't that disgusting? Of course, Jiang Pingji did not care about the bullet screen. Li Yun, who had been silent for a long time, lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. He tried to ask, why don't we lend the troops to Kai Xiang? Lending the troops to Kai Xiang was just an excuse. On the surface she was saying that she was helping Kai Xiang, but in reality she was making Kai Xiang a figurehead. Huang Song did not dare to confront Jiang Pingji head-on. If Jiang Pingji used this method to take over Wulong County, he could only pinch his nose and bear with it. But Jiang Pingji frowned and recalled the great universal geographical map of Dongqing. Seeing that Jiang Pingji did not say anything, Li Yun secretly glanced at Yang Si and Feng Zhen's expressions. Did he come up with another stupid idea? Feng Zhen sighed. Wulong County is indeed a good place. If we can occupy it, Huang Song's every move will be under the Lord's nose. With that, we won't have to worry about him becoming a powerful force. But it's a pity, we have to give it up. Chongzhou, Wanzhou, and Hu County were all north of Dongqing. From Feng Zhen's point of view, Wulong County was an awkward place. If they took it for themselves, it would be too much of a stretch. Not only that, but Wulong County was located in a mountain range. It was a place that military strategists would fight for. If Jiang Pingji really took it, she would have to tilt her troops to the south to ensure that they would be able to send reinforcements in time if anything happened to Wulong County. Thus, there was a problem. If Jiang Pingji tilted her troops to the south, how would they defend the northern borderline from the north? For Jiang Pingji, Wulong County was currently of little value. It was a hot potato. It was better to use it as a bargaining chip and cooperate with Huang Song to gain more benefits. However, Yang Si and the others were not willing to let Huang Song take advantage of it. Let's put this matter aside for now. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyelids to hide the scheming in her eyes. The most important thing now is how to safely pass through Jumen Pass and avoid being ambushed. If we go down the same path as the chief of Wulong County, there's no point in thinking about it now. Everyone understood what she meant. Meng Hun, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly stepped forward. My lord, there's something I don't know if I should say. It's fine. Go ahead. I suspect that the spy might be hiding among the remnants of Wulong County. Chapter 779. The spy was hiding among the remnants of the Wulong army? Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Only Feng Zhen and Yang Si remained calm, as if they had expected this. Li Yun was a studious child who asked questions. He asked in surprise, if the spy is hiding among the remnants of the Wulong army, that's too bold. He secretly drugged the Wulong County chief and tens of thousands of soldiers. How can he be so sure that he won't be exposed? Meng Hun did not answer Li Yun's question. Instead he said, Kai Xiang is the only descendant of the Wulong County chief and can be said to be second only to the Wulong County chief. Didn't the enemy attack at night to eliminate this father and son pair? If we leave Kai Xiang alive, it's hard to guarantee that he won't recuperate and lay low for a few years to gather his father's old subordinates to avenge him. If we don't remove the roots, there will be endless trouble in the future. Li Yun listened attentively to Meng Hun's words. Although Meng Hun usually did not speak much and had a weak presence, he was very experienced and was worth learning from. Meng Hun continued, if the battle is in a stalemate, it's fine. We can find a weak point and fight to the death to break through. But according to what that person just said, the enemy is very strong and there is a huge disparity in strength. If we want to break through under these circumstances, we will need to mobilize many elites to escort them. The chances of success are even lower. Even if we can break through, our pursuers will not let us go. If the difference in strength between the two sides was not large, the success rate of breaking through was more than 50% if they gathered their forces and attacked one point. If there was a huge disparity in strength between the two sides, one side could crush the other and the weaker side still wanted to break through, which would only accelerate the pace of collapse. Not to mention the success rate of breaking out of the encirclement. Even if they could break out of the encirclement, their pursuers would not let them go. The death of the Wulong County chief was not enough. If they wanted to completely destroy this force, they could not leave Kai Xiang alive. If they left Kai Xiang alive, he could use his status as the young master to gather his father's old subordinates, which would be a hidden danger. Li Yun suddenly understood. He asked Meng Hun for confirmation. What Commandant Meng means is that when our scouts discovered the remnants of the Wulong army, they didn't find any traces of pursuing troops. This doesn't make sense, so Commandant Meng suspects that there's more to this? Meng Hun nodded and said, if it were me, I would definitely send a large number of troops to capture Kai Xiang. If he allowed a mere dozen people to protect their young master to break out of the encirclement right under his nose, it would seem too deliberate. Therefore I suspected that the spy was still hiding among them. Only in this way could the enemy not worry about Kai Xiang's whereabouts and allow them to escape. If Kai Xiang and the others were lucky enough to encounter other vassal forces and seek help from them, then would the forces that accepted them suspect that there was something wrong with this defeated army? The generals felt a chill in their hearts. If that was really the case, they really wouldn't suspect that Kai Xiang and the others were behaving strangely. To put it bluntly, Kai Xiang was just a stray dog that had to rely on others to survive. Who would suspect him and his servant? Many viewers in the live stream also felt that their brains were not enough to process it. The plot was one after another. Sanlintang, it can't be. There's really a spy among the people the streamer saved? Durian osmanthus cake. Normal people are used to sympathizing with the weak, so they don't guard against them. Who would have thought that there was an enemy spy among the defeated soldiers they saved? If they weren't careful, they might repeat the same mistake and become the second Wulong County chief. Coconut juice died in. If that's the case, the streamer must be careful. You must definitely catch the spy in order to prevent further trouble. Tianjin Zilong Bao, just thinking about it makes me shudder. If I wasn't smart enough, I might have been plotted against. The audience still had lingering fears. The scene of Jiang Pingji and the others falling into the trap and then being ambushed appeared in their minds. Li Yun's face paled and he felt a chill in his heart. He said, if that's really the case, they definitely weren't prepared. Dian Yin snorted in a gruff voice. Those thieves still want to use the same sinister plot against us? The strength of the plot doesn't depend on whether it's clever or not. As long as it's useful, it's fine. Feng Jin's gaze fell on Jiang Pingji. He said, my lord, why don't you send someone to investigate? See if anyone among Kai Xiang's group has brought the powder made from sleeping grass and golden eggplant. That person is the spy. Jiang Pingji nodded. She said, let the medics investigate. Remember not to alert the enemy. Everyone do what you need to do. Just like how the strong would not guard against the weak, the sick and injured would not deliberately guard against the medics who came to save them. Most of the medics under Jiang Pingji were female soldiers. Although they were all tough, they were still females. It was easier for them to let down their guard. Not long after, news came back. My lord, these are the cloth bags that we found inside the clothes of 2 of them. They were very vigilant, so it took us a lot of effort. A female medic took out 2 small gray bags from her narrow sleeves and opened them, revealing the contents inside. The military doctor has already taken a look. This is the powder congealed from the medicinal juice of sleeping grass. Its medicinal properties are much stronger than normal sleeping grass. The other cloth bag also contained powder of different colors. This was the powder of golden eggplant. The evidence was conclusive. There was indeed a spy among the group. Dian Yin frowned and asked, my lord, if all these medicinal powders are mixed in with food, how many people can be poisoned? The smell is a little strong. Can't the soldiers not taste it? If the food smells bad, they will definitely be vigilant. Jiang Pingji smiled. She said, the soldiers use a big pot to cook, so they eat coarse food. It's not that exquisite. If there's something strange, why would they mention it? Moreover, the enemy doesn't need to drug everyone. They only need to make them feel bad, sleepy, and weak. If they do it carefully, the possibility of being discovered is very small. That's why the chief of Wulong fell for it. My lord, do you want to capture the spy? Li Yun asked for his lord's opinion. Don't alert the enemy. Jiang Pingji shook her head and gestured for Li Yun to calm down. The spy can be a chess piece for the enemy to plot against us, but if used well, he can also be a chess piece for us to plot against the enemy. It all depends on how the chess player plays. Jiang Pingji sent people to keep an eye on the spy. The army marched as usual and didn't notice anything strange along the way. Soon she encountered a difficult problem. Gemin Pass has fallen. Jiang Pingji's face darkened when she saw the flag on the gate of Gemin Pass. Everyone was surprised. Gemin Pass was one of the most dangerous passes in Dongqing. It was easy to defend and hard to attack. But within a few months, it had been breached by Prince Changshu, the Alliance army, and the enemy. It was a disgrace to its reputation. Chapter 780. Even though Gemin Pass had been breached several times, its reputation as a dangerous pass was still a headache. Prince Changshu had breached Gemin Pass with fire, and the Alliance had won by sheer numbers. They had paid a heavy price. They only had 30,000 soldiers and they couldn't afford to lose any more, let alone force their way through. Jiang Pingji's expression was solemn. Send someone to find out who the general guarding the pass is. More importantly, she wanted to know if the forces guarding Jiamen Pass were the same ones that had ambushed the chief of Wulong County. If they weren't, Jiang Pingji would not only have to guard against sneak attacks, but she would also have to deal with the enemy at Jiamen Pass. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to have enemies on both sides. Everyone's expression was grim, and a few of the generals were prepared to challenge Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji ordered the army to set up camp and quietly observe the situation inside Jiamen Pass. The soldier who had been sent out shouted from outside the pass, "People on the city wall, my lord is the governor of Wanzhou, Lu Shi. Why aren't you opening the city gates?" Not long after, someone on the wall fired an arrow. The arrow landed about 30 meters away from the soldier. What kind of prefecture overseer is a rebel and a traitor? Only the prefecture magistrate appointed by His Majesty Long Qing can pass. Get lost. The soldier's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. Emperor Long Qing referred to Prince Changshu, who had changed the year to Long Qing after becoming emperor. What Emperor Long Qing? There's only one emperor in Dongqing, and he's still in the imperial city of Qinzhou. The emperor you're talking about is a rebel. Rebel on the city wall? Why don't you just surrender and renounce the darkness for the light? After the soldier finished speaking, the people on the city wall shot him 2 more arrows. Unfortunately, the 2 sides were too far apart, and the arrows still didn't hit anyone. The 2 sides exchanged words, trying to get information from each other. After a while, a tall and sturdy man wearing armor appeared on the city wall. He asked around and learned the whole story. He sneered and ordered a soldier to bring him his bow and arrows. The man knocked an arrow and pulled the bow to its full length. The arrow left the bowstring and flew toward the soldier's hair bun. The soldier felt a chill on his head. A strong force grabbed his scalp and forced him to tilt backward. Umph. The burly man snorted coldly and asked someone to pass on the message. Go back and tell Lu Shi to come here. The soldier escaped from the jaws of death and was in a sorry state. The soldiers guarding the Jiamen Pass cheered loudly, "General, you are mighty." Their voices were so loud that even Jiang Pingji, who was in the camp, could hear them. Not long after, Jiang Pingji received a message from a soldier. Fu Wang? Who was this person? Have you heard of it? Jiang Pingji didn't know much about the forces under Prince Changshu's banner. When she heard the unfamiliar name, she turned around and asked her subordinate. Yang Xi's old boss was Prince Changshu. As his former chief strategist, he was very familiar with the generals under Prince Changshu's camp. He thought about it carefully and shook his head in confusion. I don't remember there was a general called Fu Wang in Prince Changshu's camp. Perhaps he was a new recruit, but judging from his archery skills he must not be a nobody. To be able to shoot the hair bun of a small soldier who was far away and drag him several meters away, how could he be an ordinary military general? Prince Changshu wasn't a very good person, but he had good luck and acting skills. In his early years he had tricked many capable people into working for him. Maybe Fu Wang had been tricked the same way. Jiang Pingji noticed Meng Hun's strange expression and asked, Officer Meng, do you know this person? Meng Hun couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Not only did he know Fu Wang, but he also knew Fu Wang. Fu Wang isn't under Prince Changshu's banner, so it's normal that you don't know him. Meng Hun couldn't help but speak when he saw everyone looking at him. He said, Fu Wang is a vassal of the Mengs and has a very high reputation in Sangzhou. One could say that he is the most powerful general under the Mengs. Prince Changshu doesn't have enough troops, so it makes sense that the Mengs would send reinforcements. Meng Hun paused and smiled at Jiang Pingji. Speaking of which, you fought him before, my lord? Jiang Pingji was stunned. I fought him before? Are you saying that Fu Wang was the general outside the imperial city of Qinzhou that day? Meng Hun said, yes. Li Yun also remembered and asked Meng Hun, that Fu Wang, is he the one that Officer Meng stopped me from chasing after? Li Yun still felt the urge to break out in a cold sweat when he thought about what happened that day. If Meng Hun hadn't stopped him, who was eager to make a contribution, Li Yun might have been hit by the enemy's sudden attack and be seriously injured. Meng Hun nodded. About a month ago, Prince Changshu had sent a surprise attack on the imperial city of Qinzhou, forcing the emperor to flee with his ministers and Hui Jun. In the end, they were still caught up by the army led by Fu Wang. If Jiang Pingji and Yang Jian's troops hadn't arrived in time, Fu Wang might have returned with a full load. Jiang Pingji had even snatched Hui Jun from Fu Wang. Recalling the scene that day, Jiang Pingji tucked her hands into her sleeves and said calmly, that Fu Wang does have some skills. She could beat Fu Wang up because they weren't on the same level. Using her as a standard, the people in this world were all trash. According to the standard of this world, Fu Wang was indeed very powerful. How powerful was he? Take Li Yun as an example. Apart from his lack of combat experience, Li Yun was the second most powerful person in the Wanzhou group. If Li Yun were to compete with Fu Wang at his peak, Li Yun would likely be at a disadvantage. If he wasn't careful, he might even lose his life. However, the power of one or two people couldn't turn the tide of a battle. No matter how strong Fu Wang was, he couldn't beat tens of thousands of people. Meng Hun's expression was solemn. Jiamen Pass alone isn't a big deal, but with Fu Wang it's going to be tricky. Jiang Pingji thought about it and asked Meng Hun, "How much do you know about Fu Wang? Are there any flaws?" Meng Hun said, "I heard that Fu Wang was raised by a wild wolf. When he was young he was violent and vicious. He was raised by a rich aristocratic family in Sangzhou as a pet for deathmatch. The so-called deathmatch is a form of entertainment among the rich aristocrats, similar to cockfighting. The difference is that it's a fight between two prisoners on death row. The winner gets to live. Fu Wang was like that." Jiang Pingji listened to Meng Hun's explanation without a frown. When she was still a genetic warrior, she had entered the Colosseum to complete the task assigned by her superiors. Between humans and exotic beasts, only the winner had the right to live. What she had experienced was much crueler than Fu Wang's. However, considering the current era, Fu Wang's experience was pitiful enough. And then? How did he become a retainer of the Mengs? Chapter 781. According to Meng Hun, Fu Yang was Fu Wang's savior and master. Without Fu Yang's training and respect, Fu Wang wouldn't have become what he was today. No matter how you looked at it, Fu Wang couldn't jump ship and join the enemy. If he did that, he would definitely be reviled by the world. Meng Hun looked troubled when faced with this question. He said, "Apart from Fu Wang himself, I'm afraid no one knows the details. Many people in Sangzhou say that Fu Wang is an ingrate. No wonder he was raised by a wild wolf. He couldn't resist the temptation of money, power, and beauty. He betrayed his former master and became a lackey of the Mengs. In short, it's very unpleasant to hear. Nowadays it was fine to kick out an unreliable master. Take Yang Si for example. He jumped ship without any psychological pressure. Not only did he kick out his former master, Prince Changsho, but he also set him up. No one criticized him. But what if the master was good to his subordinates? He taught and trained them and spent a lot of time and effort on them. Fu Yang not only saved Fu Wang from a deadly fight, but also gave him a surname, taught him how to read and taught him martial arts. Not only did he save Fu Wang's life, but he also had a father-son relationship. Under such circumstances, Fu Wang still dared to join the enemy. If he wasn't an ingrate, then what was? It was fine for Fu Wang to join anyone. After all, people go to higher places and water flows to lower places. A father couldn't stop his son from achieving success, could he? But he joined the Mengs. Everyone in Sangzhou knew that Fu Yang and the Mengs didn't get along. They fought until their eyes were red. In the eyes of the world, it wasn't a big deal to be weak. It was a bad character that was unforgivable. Jiang Pingji didn't jump to conclusions. She believed what she saw. If Fu Wang was really an unscrupulous villain, he wouldn't have had to worry about her when he held Huijun hostage outside the imperial city of Qinzhou. Dian Yen frowned and asked with slight disgust, "He's an ungrateful villain who would do anything for wealth?" Meng Hun shook his head. He hadn't finished yet. Rumors were rumors, but there were too many exaggerations. He preferred to respect the truth. It's hard to say. There are rumors that Fu Wang was bribed by the Mengs. Not only did he betray his former master, but he also assassinated Fu Yang. However, if one were to look into it carefully, one would realize that this rumor did not hold water. Fu Yang wasn't murdered by anyone. His internal injuries ruptured, and he was unlucky enough to be infected by the epidemic which led to his death. Many people were well aware of this matter. In my opinion, Fu Yang's death shouldn't have much to do with Fu Wang. As for the Meng clan's solicitation of Fu Wang, it happened after the 7th day of Fu Wang's death. What was certain was that Fu Wang accepted the recruitment of the Mengs after Fu Yang's death, and he did not do anything to his benefactor, Fu Yang. The rumors and slanders outside grew uglier and uglier. On one hand, the people of Zhangzhou worshipped Fu Wang as the god of war, but on the other, they despised his style and character. In this way, it would be easier for the Meng family to control Fu Wang. As for the truth, who would care? They were more willing to believe in the content that they were interested in, and the more explosive, the better. Rumors have one mouth, but refuting them breaks one's legs. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, according to Officer Meng, Fu Wang has been accused of many groundless crimes. But no matter what, he still defected to the enemy after the death of his former master. That is something to be criticized for. Meng Hun sighed and nodded. There was indeed no way to clear his name. He could have defected to anyone, but he chose to defer to the Mengs. It was one thing to defer to the Mengs, but he worked hard under the Mengs. He wanted horses today, beauties tomorrow, fine wine the day after, and a high position the day after. To a certain extent he was the same as Feng Zhen. He rode around the streets on horseback and stirred up trouble. If he wasn't a rare general, the Mengs might not have tolerated it. If Fu Wang wasn't so greedy, asking for things from the Mengs all the time, maybe there would be fans who would help him clear his name. But his actions clearly showed that he defected to the Mengs only because the Mengs had money, power, and beauties. After saying so much, what is his weakness? Meng Hun smiled bitterly and said, this man loves beauties, horses, fine wine, and rare treasures. Jiang Pingji clicked her tongue. Everyone likes those things that Officer Meng mentioned. This is different. When he first joined the Mengs, Fu Wang fell in love with Meng Zhan's brother's mistress. He thought she was beautiful, so he flirted with her in public. He even asked Meng Zhan for her. Meng Zhan didn't agree, so he made a scene and almost took her by force. Meng Hun couldn't help glancing at Feng Zhen as he spoke. The Meng's horse farm is the biggest farm in Dongqing. They train countless horses. Many years ago, the farm bred a rare horse. Meng Zhan wanted to use it as a mount. But in order to win Fu Wang over, he had to give it up and use the horse as a lure. Who would have thought that Fu Wang would be greedy and ask Meng Zhan for a dozen beauties? In the eyes of outsiders, Fu Wang relied on his own ability to stir up trouble and court death. Everyone was amazed. How could the Mengs tolerate such a troublemaker? It was true love. Saipu, haha, this is an upgraded version of Feng Zhen Plus. Landie, come on, how can that Fu Wang be compared to our Feng Zhen? At the very least, the little princess Feng Zhen wouldn't do something so ungrateful, right? Feng Zhen is playful but not cheap. This Fu Wang. TSK, even 10 of him together can't compare to one little princess. Yuhun waning moon, exactly. Comparing him to Feng Zhen is a disgrace to our little Xinjin. Like the comment above said, Xinjin is playful but not cheap. Fu Wang thinks he has no principles. No matter what the reason is, he can't rely on the enemy of his benefactor. According to Officer Meng Hun, I think Fu Wang is a guy who has no bottom line for money, power, and sex. He's not cute at all. Shazi Chue Feng, I don't think the rumors can be trusted. I saw the live broadcast that day. Fu Wang had kidnapped Miss Hui Jun. Although he was restrained when he fought with the host, he didn't use Hui Jun as a shield to prevent the host from taking action. He also didn't let his own side or the enemy's arrows hurt Hui Jun. At that time I felt that this man was quite manly. I always felt that he was full of righteousness. Lemon slice. Righteousness? Maybe he's just too lustful and can't bear to hurt a beautiful girl. Why are you thinking so much? How many good men and Prince Charming came up with the idea of forcefully applying the Mo attribute on the other party? Meng Hun sighed. Although Fu Wang has caused a lot of criticism, he is indeed talented. He didn't ruin his reputation as the #1 in Sangzhou. Otherwise, the Mengs wouldn't have tolerated him for so many years. With him guarding Jiamen Pass, it's hard to break through. What's his temperament like? Chapter 782. Everyone's interest was piqued. Fu Wang was interesting. Why did he have such a double face? Who was he guarding against? Jiang Pingji sat in the seat of honor, deep in thought. She had a question in her mind. After Fu Yang died, were his old subordinates taken care of by the Mengs, or were they taken back by the court? It was as if a ray of light had penetrated his mind, and he was suddenly enlightened. Fu Wang still has Fu Yang's old subordinates, he said firmly. He said resolutely, I remember very clearly that those old subordinates were secretly controlled by the Meng family at first. Later, I don't know why they were transferred to work under Fu Wang. My lord suspects that Fu Wang defected to the Meng family for another reason? Jiang Pingji smiled. I didn't say that. Don't be emotional on the battlefield. I don't care what kind of person Fu Wang is or whether he had other reasons for defecting to the Mengs. To us, he has only one identity, our enemy. Since he is our enemy, we don't need to understand his difficulties. Humans were emotional creatures. Once they felt that someone had other reasons for doing things, they would unconsciously feel sympathy, pity, or approval for that person. It wasn't a big deal during normal times, but it was deadly on the battlefield. The most important thing now is how to pass through Jiamen Pass. We are outnumbered, so we can't attack by force. We have to outsmart them. Jiang Pingji could single-handedly beat Fu Wang, but Fu Wang was an enemy general. How could he fight her one-on-one? They had the advantage of the steep Jiamen Pass. If they stuck to it, Jiang Pingji wouldn't be able to afford it. Feng Jin said, "My lord, if Fu Wang really had other reasons for defecting to the Mengs, we can try to persuade them. No matter what, at least it shows that he and the Mengs are not united. We can use them to our advantage." Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and gestured for Feng Zhen to continue. "Yes, I have a plan. Maybe we can use it." Feng Zhen smiled confidently as if everything was under his control. "Let's hear it." Feng Zhen said, "My lord, you can send someone to persuade Fu Wang. At the same time, you can keep an eye on the spies from Wulong County and see when they make contact with the city. Fu Wang thinks that we haven't found the spies yet, so it is very likely that they will use the same trick of drugging us at night. On the day of the night attack, we once again sent an envoy to persuade them, in order to dispel the wariness of Fu Wang and the others. When night falls, Fu Wang will lead his troops to launch a night attack. We'll set up an ambush in advance and catch them off guard. It would be best if we could capture Fu Wang alive." Jiang Pingji was deep in thought as she listened. Feng Zhen's strategy was a good one, and it was highly likely that Fu Wang would fall into his trap. However, even if it was a sneak attack at night, they still had to pay a heavy price. Including Lu Shi's troops, Jiang Pingji only had 30,000 men. They could not afford to waste time. She knocked on the table with a cold expression. After thinking for a while, she said, "Zishi's plan is not bad, but I still want to add more." Feng Zhen cupped his hands and said, "I'm all ears." We set up an ambush to kill the enemy. The night was dark, and after a chaotic battle, we couldn't avoid heavy casualties. Jiang Pingji's tone was flat, but the content of her words sent chills down their spines. "Therefore we have to do something about the ambush. We'll send people to dig tunnels leading out of the camp and secretly transport dry and flammable items to hide in various tents. When the enemy comes, we'll burn them. We'll send elite troops to hide in the tunnels, and when the enemy's formation is in chaos, we'll rush out and annihilate them. What do you think?" Everyone kept quiet out of fear. Their lord was really ruthless. Feng Zhen frowned and said, "If we dig tunnels, we'll make too much noise and be easily discovered." Yang Si smiled and said, "That's not difficult. We just need to put the entrance to the tunnel in the tents." Feng Zhen was a meticulous person and had thought things through. He frowned again and said, "But if we do that, we can guard against the enemy, but we can't guard against the spy. We'll still make too much noise and won't be able to hide from the spy. Once the spy leaks information to the enemy, our plan will all be for naught. This is still too risky unless we expose the spy and make him our own." Yang Si thought for a moment and said, "He was originally a trusted aide of the Wulong County chief, but he secretly defected to the Mengs. I don't think he's a resolute person. If he can betray the Wulong County chief for benefits, he can naturally betray the Mengs for even more benefits. This is a feasible plan. If they could bribe the spy, their plan would be even more perfect. If none of you have any objections, then it's decided." Jiang Pingji looked around and asked, "Who's willing to lobby Fu Wang?" In this era, there was a rule about not killing envoys when two armies crossed swords. It didn't work on Jiang Pingji, but it was still binding on these people. Under normal circumstances, serving as an envoy wouldn't be life-threatening unless there were special circumstances. Meng Hun volunteered and said, "I have some ties with Fu Wang and know a little about him. I can go and give it a try." "Alright, then go ahead and give it a try. Probe Fu Wang's intentions." Jiang Pingji trusted Meng Hun very much and wouldn't doubt his loyalty just because he was in contact with his old boss. She agreed readily. "I won't let you down, my lord." There was a sign outside the camp that said, "No war." There was no sign of troops or intention to break into the pass. Jiamen Pass was also very quiet. Fu Wang heard that Lu Shi had sent an envoy and asked for the name of the envoy. He couldn't help but smile. He was wearing half a suit of armor and had a few jars of unfinished wine beside him. When he heard that there was an envoy outside the city, he sneered and said to the people beside him, "Back then Meng Hun was just a clumsy warrior. He couldn't even speak properly. Lu Shi actually sent this person to lobby me. What a joke. I won't see him. Let's just beat him out of here." The deputy general flattered Fu Wang and said, "General, you have a deep friendship with the Lord. Meng Hun won't be able to sway you. I heard that Meng Hun is a coward. His wife and children have been humiliated multiple times. He's a disgrace to men. Fu Wang sneered. That's why I don't want to see him. The deputy general said, General, why don't you see him and humiliate him? That way we can take Lu Shi down a peg. Fu Wang was silent for a moment. He raised his hand and picked up a jar of wine. He said indifferently, What's there to see about an ugly warrior? In my opinion, the girl next to Lu Shi is the real beauty. Every frown and smile can charm all living things. When I saw her that day, I fell in love with her. The deputy general had a smile on his face. His eyelids were lowered and his eyes were filled with contempt. He was still thinking about women in the face of battle. He was indeed a useless person. Fu Wang's temperament was fickle. He often said that the wind was the rain. Just a moment ago he despised Meng Hun. Now he called the messenger back. Forget it. Bring him here to have a look. After that, he pushed away the dancers who were trying to get close to him and turned to the side hall. As soon as he saw Meng Hun, Fu Wang said, Lu Shi sent you to persuade him to surrender? Meng Hun lowered his voice and said, No. Thank you for your help in the past. Back then he was just the county chief of Meng County. He burned down the county chief's office in a rage. He didn't have a detailed plan. If Fu Wang hadn't secretly helped him, Meng Hun wouldn't have been able to escape Cangzhou, let alone meet Jiang Pingji. Chapter 783. Facing Fu Wang's cold and distant attitude, Meng Hun didn't show any signs of anger. Instead, he smiled warmly and said, Things are different now. General Meng Zhan thinks highly of you, so of course you won't remember the useless soldiers and crab generals you helped. I heard that you were the general guarding the Jiamen Pass, so I volunteered to thank you for your help. Meng Hun spoke very sincerely, as if he had come all the way here just to thank Fu Wang. However, anyone with a normal brain would know that was impossible. In a situation where the two armies were enemies, even blood relatives had to avoid suspicion, let alone Meng Hun and Fu Wang. If Meng Hun really wanted to thank Fu Wang for his help, he could have done it at any other time. Why did he have to do it at such a sensitive time? Fu Wang sat lazily and casually, looking arrogant and rude. He didn't even look Meng Hun in the eye. I will accept your thanks. At this moment, Fu Wang's gaze fell on Meng Hun. He glanced at him and saw that his attire was simple, without the slightest trace of extravagance. Thus, he said in a mocking tone, Everyone says that a good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Why is it that after Commandant Meng joined the family, you've become more and more destitute? Even if you came to thank me, you should at least bring some decent gifts. Why did you come empty-handed? If you can't live like this, you might as well abandon Lu Shi. If I beg the Lord, I might be able to take you under my command. At this time, Fu Wang's sharp eyes saw a piece of cloth flashing outside the door. His eyebrows slightly furrowed. Who's sneaking around outside? Get the hell out here. After saying that, a ruthless look flashed across Fu Wang's face. He got up and strode out of the door. He raised his hand and dragged a person over. General, please calm down. Fu Wang threw the person aside. The soldier was so scared that his face turned pale. He hurriedly crawled over to beg for mercy. Stupid thing, who asked you to eavesdrop here? Fu Wang didn't listen to the soldier's explanation. He raised his foot and kicked the soldier's chest. The soldier screamed and spat out blood. He twitched twice and stopped moving. Someone drag him out. Fu Wang shouted towards the door. Not long after, the sound of armor rubbing against each other could be heard from outside. Two bodyguards came in. They weren't surprised at Fu Wang's habit of kicking people to death. One of them lifted his head and the other lifted his foot. They moved the body out. Meng Hun, who witnessed the whole process, was shocked. His eyes slightly twitched. Meng Hun sighed. It seems that you have been in a bad situation these years. Someone has been watching you all the time. Don't try to sow discord. Fu Wang was like an expert in changing faces. One second he was furious and the next he seemed like he had killed someone. Lu Shi sent you here, but he didn't want you to say such nonsense to me. I don't if you know me. If you came sincerely to thank me, we don and I have no. But if you come of me, we have a friendship. Meng Hun asked him, what does the general want? Meng of Meng. Fu Wang looked at Meng Hun provocatively and said in a contemptuous tone, otherwise what will you use to persuade them to surrender? Lias. Of she, I can of Ling of you are. He has no power, no money, no sex. Hey, Lu Shi seems to have a beautiful woman by his side. Thinking of the woman he saw the other day, Fu Wang said, If Lu Shi is willing to part with her, I may consider it. As for whether they were willing to pledge allegiance or not, that was another matter. General, you must be joking. My master has strict discipline. Why would he have a beautiful woman by his side? If you are used to the delicacies of the land and sea and want to change your taste. Meng Hun's expression didn't change and his eyes were sincere. As long as you are willing to pledge allegiance to my master, not to mention one peerless beauty, I will carefully look for 8 or 10 beauties for you. What do you think, General? Fu Wang said, what delicacies? Porridge and side dishes? I only have eyes for one woman. Does Lu Shi dare to give her to me? People say that Lu Shi is a fake man, but he is actually a woman. He has a woman by his side. Why is it not possible? That day Lu Shi took my woman. Now if she gives her to me, I will let her go. What's wrong with this general opening the door for her? Fu Wang's words never left the topic of beauty, but his eyes were like a deep pool. They were dark and pure, without a trace of evil. In other words, Fu Wang's words were just to make things difficult and humiliate Jiang Pingji. When did the general become like this? Meng Hun understood the meaning behind his words and sighed. What? Looking at the big picture, Prince Changshuo's throne was not obtained through the right means. The Mengs are helping him. How long do you think they can be arrogant? It's better to abandon the darkness and join the light. This general remembers General's elegant demeanor in the past, how heroic and farsighted you were. How could you not see through all this? Abandon the darkness and join the light? In my opinion, Lu Shi is the darkness, and my master is the light. Fu Wang's kindness to Meng Hun was not limited to that incident. They didn't talk much, but Meng Hun always remembered his kindness. He was originally a martial artist. It wasn't easy for him to make a name for himself under the Mengs. When he first met Fu Wang was much older than him, but he was more experienced and famous throughout Sangzhou. At that time, Fu Wang's words pointed out Meng Hun's way out. If you only know how to play with swords and spears, you can only be a martial artist. No matter how hard one worked, a martial artist would still be a martial artist and would not be able to climb higher. If you have time, read more books on the art of war. Maybe you can become a general in the future. Even if Fu Wang said it casually, for Meng Hun at that time, it was like dispelling the clouds and showing him the light. Now there is no one outside. General, don't worry about our conversation being heard by a third party. Before Fu Wang's expression changed, Meng Hun said, back then General was indebted to Chief Fu Cheng. You two are like father and son. Now you are serving the Mengs. Are you really willing? Trying to sow discord again. Fu Wang asked Meng Hun. Do you think there is room to talk about feelings in front of 2 armies? Send the guest away. He shouted angrily to drive Meng Hun away. Before leaving the side hall, he looked fiercely at a certain place. Fu Wang did catch one eavesdropper, but it didn't mean there wasn't a second eavesdropper around. If some people were eavesdropping, he could do as he pleased and kill them as he pleased. However, some people couldn't move. Meng Hun was so familiar with them because he knew there was a third person in the hall. It looked like he was trying to establish a relationship and win over Fu Wang, but in fact he was roasting him on the fire. Sowing dissension would work no matter what era it was. Chapter 784. Meng Hun was chased out by Fu Wang, and Jiang Pingji had secretly captured the spy from Wulong County. It was none other than the burly man who had woken up the day before. When the viewers in the streaming room saw the spy's true identity, they were all dumbfounded. Garlic Lobster Gafen, what a slap in the face. Earlier, I even said that I could feel his helplessness and misery even through the screen, that he was willing to die for his bosom friends. It's only been a day and I've already been slapped in the face, and now he's telling me that I'm a spy? Shrimp meatballs? I'm also one of those who got slapped in the face. Yesterday he was crying so miserably and I thought he was an upright man. Today he's telling me that he's the culprit behind the annihilation of the entire Wulong County. How is that possible? Secret sauce Shirji fan, haha, I knew it. He's definitely not a good person. I didn't like him when I saw him crying so miserably yesterday. Sure enough, there was something fishy about him. Now that I think about it, the streamer seems to have been guarding against him. In all fairness, the spy's acting skills were off the charts. Even the best actors in the entertainment industry were at this level, so why didn't the streamer fall for it? Jiang Pingji naturally wouldn't fall for it. She had already known that the spy was acting. When 2 acting queens met, only the one with better acting skills could fool the one with worse acting skills. When it came to acting skills, who could compete with Jiang Pingji? The spy's identity was unexpected, and the viewers in the streaming room were all fooled. Even the spy himself didn't know what he had done. Why did you capture me? The burly man tried to break free, but a hand pressed down on his shoulders, forcing him to kneel on the ground. Jiang Pingji sneered at him. Why did we capture you? Shouldn't we be asking you this question? You should be asking the commander. How would I know? You dare say you don't know. If you don't know, how could the chief of Wulong County have died? How could he have been completely annihilated? The spy was able to maintain his composure at first, but as time passed he couldn't suppress his guilt and fear. He didn't dare to look Jiang Pingji in the eye. It was as if there were needles hidden in the other party's eyes. Just a glance at them would cause one to feel a stabbing pain. The man's back was drenched in cold sweat, and his breathing became labored. I really don't know. Jiang Pingji glanced at the medic standing next to the burly man. The medic took out a cloth bag with a rope end sewn on it. This cloth bag was very wide and long like a long belt. It could be wrapped around the waist or chest, and some coarse cloth could be tied on the outside to disguise it as a wrapped wound. Jiang Pingji sneered and asked, "You're so stubborn. Do you want me to torture you before you confess?" The evidence was right in front of them, but the other party still wanted to argue and struggle. What is this? Sleeping grass and cigar pollen are things that are mixed in with food. I've already asked the military doctor. These things have all been purified many times, and their medicinal power is extraordinary. If you're not a spy, why do you have these on you? Confess now lest you suffer. The burly man's face paled. After a while he said evasively, "Middle Minister's words are too serious. Where did you get the details? These things are mine, but what does that mean? Even if I'm a spy, what does this have to do with the Lieutenant General? Even if he was a spy, he had only harmed the forces in Wulong County. He hadn't harmed anyone else. You don't need to quibble. I know why you're wandering around in the day. Aren't you trying to find out more information so that you can make your move?" The burly man knew that his plan had been completely exposed, but he still didn't know why. Was his acting not good enough? Or did he make a mistake somewhere? "Since when did the Lieutenant General suspect me?" Jiang Pingji asked. "I've suspected you ever since you woke up. The more you spoke, the more mistakes you made." The burly man's face stiffened. He never thought that Jiang Pingji would never trust him. Jiang Pingji continued, "I had someone look into your identity. You're the Wulong County Chief's trusted aide, and you're also his wife's uncle. Logically speaking, you can't be a spy. But nothing is impossible in this world. Once you become a spy, no one will suspect you. Everyone is heavily injured, and even the young master Kai Xiang is injured. But your injuries are a little strange. They look scary, but they're not fatal. From the knife wounds, some of them were inflicted by others, but some of them were inflicted by yourself. That alone is enough to suspect your identity. I believe that you did this to lower the Wulong County Chief's guard so that he would hand over his son to you and his other trusted aides. Am I right? The most suspicious thing is that you've never eaten any food with added ingredients." Jiang Pingji laughed mockingly. "You said that you were worried that the young master wouldn't have anything to eat, so you didn't eat any rations. But I had the medics secretly look at the food of the others, and the food you brought wasn't that scarce. You've been starving for a long time and you're only willing to drink water. Can you explain that to me?" To be honest, when the burly man said those words, it was indeed quite moving. In a few words he portrayed himself as a loyal and devoted retainer. But Jiang Pingji wasn't someone who would be so easily deceived. The burly man's face was pale. He resisted the urge to clatter and asked, "Does the commander want to kill me?" Jiang Pingji said, "Of course not. If I wanted to kill you, would you still be alive? Let me ask you, what did the Mengs offer you?" The burly man hesitated for a moment, then accepted his fate and said, "After the deed is done, I'll be made a duke, given a fief, and promised a daughter and beauties." "Jeske, the offer is quite generous." Jiang Pingji said, "I don't know which is more important compared to your life, feudal vassals, feudal lands, daughters and beauties? Have you ever thought about how you'll be able to maintain your position as a duke if all the elites in Wulong County are wiped out? How will you be able to protect your fief? As for the Mengs, they're just Prince Changshuo's lackeys. They still have to rely on them, so how will they give you a duke and land? How could you believe a person's words?" At that moment, the burly man was in a sorry state. His face had turned from pale to gray. Jiang Pingji smiled and continued, "You betrayed your old master and caused the death of your comrade. If word of this gets out, even if I spare your life, there will be no place for you in the whole wide world. Do you think the remnants of Wulong County will let you go?" Tens of thousands of soldiers had died because of his selfishness. Not only would those who were still alive not forgive him, but even the souls of the dead would demand his life. The burly man was so scared that he didn't dare make a sound. He was naturally afraid of death. As long as there was a chance of survival, he wouldn't seek death so easily. He could tell that Jiang Pingji had captured him and exposed his identity. Naturally, she had a use for him. As expected, men bring the things up. As soon as Jiang Pingji finished speaking, the soldiers carried 2 large chests and opened them, revealing the gold, silver, and jewelry inside. It was so dazzling that it almost blinded him. The 2 chests were filled with gold, silver, precious gems, and pearls. He even saw several perfectly round pearls that were as wide as 2 fingers. They were incomparably precious. Chapter 785. Power and money had always been mutually beneficial. With money you could buy power, and with power you wouldn't have to worry about money. The man knew this very well, but he couldn't suppress the greed in his heart as he looked at the 2 big boxes in front of him. Sometimes, no matter how powerful you were, you couldn't get so much money. How could he not know that the Meng family's promise to him was too illusory? But he was too greedy and wanted everything. Driven by greed, he took risks out of desperation. When the chief of Wulong died in battle, he felt a little bit of regret, but it was just a little bit. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to close the boxes and interrupted the man's thoughts. She asked him again, "Do you know what's good for you or do you not?" The man's heart sank and he smiled bitterly. "If I know what's good for me, I'll be able to keep my wealth for the rest of my life. If I don't think the commander will tolerate someone like me who killed my master. But, will the palace commander really keep his promise and not go back on his word?" Jiang Pingji sneered. "You trust the Mengs and now you doubt me?" The man knew that he had said something wrong, so he didn't dare to speak again. He had no room for negotiation in his current situation. He was like a fish on the chopping block. You can see what the Mengs are like if you keep your eyes open. Do you think the Mengs would dare to use you after you killed your master? Jiang Pingji's eyelids drooped slightly. Her pair of dark eyes seemed to be able to see through the man's soul, forcing the man to avert his eyes subconsciously. After a while, the man gritted his teeth and surrendered to Jiang Pingji. Apart from this path, he had no other choice. Jiang Pingji already knew his secret. If she revealed that he had betrayed the chief of Wulong, there would be no place for him in the world. He shuddered at the thought of that, so he had no choice but to cooperate with Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji wasn't afraid that he would play any tricks now that she had his weakness. Jiang Pingji didn't mind using some tricks to achieve her goal, but the viewers in the streaming room couldn't stand it. Many people were indignant. They felt that Jiang Pingji was asking a tiger for its skin. How could a traitor who betrayed his master and went back on his word have any credibility? Jiang Pingji cooperated with him. Wasn't she afraid that he would betray her and stab her in the back? Once unfaithful, 100 times not tolerated. Fairy Queen's Crimson, streamer, you better be careful. It'll be bad if this guy turns against you. Yamada Mia, in modern society this thing can't be used. After all, everyone had their own ambitions. But before he left, he had colluded with outsiders to kill his boss. Moreover, the boss was the brother-in-law of the employee. This was simply intolerable. He was clearly a traitor. Zhuang Xingxiaming, to put it in an extreme way, once disloyalty is tolerated 100 times. Although the host is broad-minded, not everyone has the right to be forgiven. This big man was obviously a traitor who pretended to be loyal. The anchor could not let her guard down, lest she failed miserably. The viewers in the live stream room expressed their worry. They knew that Jiang Pingji instigated the rebellion of the Burli Han dynasty for the sake of the overall situation, but they were still anxious and fearful that the other party would betray them. Jiang Pingji glanced coldly at the man kneeling on the ground and sent a bullet screen in her mind. Host V, I only said that it would be wise to keep him alive after the deed is done. I didn't say that I wouldn't settle the score later. Don't worry. Even if the Burli Han dynasty was instigated, Jiang Pingji would not trust him at all. She would take precautions against him. The viewers breathed a sigh of relief when they got the answer. For 2 consecutive days the camp was quiet. Jumen Pass also hung a no-war sign. Both sides seemed to dislike each other. After Meng Hun returned, he reported the operation to Jiang Pingji. My lord, in my opinion, Fu Wang is not doing well under the Mengs. There should be room for him to defect. If they could recruit Fu Wang, it would be a great harvest. When Meng Hun thought of this, his gloomy mood suddenly improved. Without Fu Wang, the Mengs would suffer a great blow. What could make Meng Hun happier than making the Mengs suffer? Jiang Pingji did not comment. Feng Zhen asked in detail. What do you mean? Meng Hun said, Fu Wang is surrounded by spies. When I saw him, not only were there people eavesdropping outside the hall, but there were also people hiding in the hall. They looked like Fu Wang's personal guards, but from Fu Wang's attitude towards them, it was obvious that he hated and feared them. Feng Zhen shook his head. His wariness was not so easily dispelled. Officer Meng, what you see can sometimes be deceiving. To say the least, even if Fu Wang's situation is really bad and he is surrounded by spies, what reason does he have to betray the Meng family and seek refuge with the Lord when the Meng family indulges him so much? As mentioned before, Fu Wang had caused trouble for the Mengs, but the Mengs had always granted him whatever he wanted. If Fu Wang defected to Jiang Pingji, could Jiang Pingji satisfy all of his demands? In other words, Fu Wang had a reason to defect, but he had no reason to defect to Jiang Pingji. Hearing this, Meng Hun broke out in a cold sweat. His mind cleared up. Counselor, what do you mean? Feng Zhen shook his head and said, if Officer Meng really thinks he can win Fu Wang over and secretly instigate him, he might fall into his trap. Meng Hun immediately apologized for his rash actions. Jiang Pingji raised her hand to signal him to stand up. She said calmly, you can't be blamed for this. Zisher only mentioned one of the possibilities. But from this, it seems that Fu Wang is not an ordinary person. You can't let your guard down. When two armies fight, there is no mercy. It's not only a battle of strength, but also a battle of wits. If Fu Wang was an ordinary brute, the Mengs wouldn't have tolerated him until now. It's always good to be more cautious. Meng Hun listened and nodded to show that he understood. But he still felt it was a pity. If he could win over Fu Wang, it would be like adding wings to a tiger for his lord. One Fu Wang was nothing. The key was the elites under his command. Meng Hun was a little envious. Wanzhou not only lacked civil officials but also military generals. Poaching Fu Wang and getting a few thousand elites at the same time was a very good deal. Jiang Pingji said, in the next few days send people to Jiamen Pass for all kinds of reasons. Since you and Fu Wang are friends, we can use this as an excuse to build a relationship. Even if we don't discuss Fu Wang, we must make the Mengs wary of him. If he doesn't have a good time, we can do it smoothly. If he shows that he wants to join us, we can just go along with it and confuse him. We can make him lower his guard. The possibility of making a famous general lower his guard was too low. As long as we confuse him for a while and make him lower his guard, Jiang Pingji would win. Chapter 786. For the next few days, Jiang Pingji's camp remained quiet. If it weren't for the soldiers on the wall and Jiang Pingji's messengers reporting daily, Fu Wang would have suspected that the enemy had escaped. At noon, Jiang Pingji's messengers would appear outside Jiamen Pass. They were more punctual than menstruation. At first, Fu Wang wanted to play with them, but as time went by, not only did he get annoyed, but his lieutenants also became suspicious. Fu Wang had several lieutenants working for him. Except for 3 of them, the rest were spies of the Mengs. As the days went by, the spies began to question Fu Wang's inaction. When will the general make his move? Seeing the days go by, the lieutenants who were tasked with monitoring Jiang Pingji couldn't wait any longer. Fu Wang feasted with the soldiers every day and arranged for beauties to sing and dance for fun. It was as if he didn't know that there were 30,000 enemies outside Jiamen Pass. What's the hurry? I have my own plan. Don't ruin my mood. Fu Wang was about to put down the empty wine jar when the lieutenant stepped forward to speak. Fu Wang was furious and threw the jar at the man's feet. Get out of here. The deputy general suppressed the anger and humiliation in his heart before retreating unwillingly. Everyone left on bad terms. Just then, the messenger came back with news that Lu Shi's messengers had arrived. It was the same for 7 days. Both sides seemed calm, but in fact there was an undercurrent of tension. Fu Wang waited until Jiang Pingji let down her guard before he sent someone to contact the spy. The spy was the one he had caught earlier. If it weren't for Jiang Pingji, who would have thought that the Wulong County forces, who were like stray dogs, would have hidden such a thing? After carefully reading the secret code and understanding the situation in Jiang Pingji's camp, Fu Wang quickly received the news. He furrowed his brows and drummed his fingers on the table. There was no sign that he was angry like he was during the day. Lu Shi really didn't do anything? He found it hard to believe. 30,000 soldiers were stationed outside Jiamen Pass. They didn't attack, nor did they escape. What was Lu Shi trying to do? The spy in charge of communication also said, "It's strange. Is Lu Shi trying to buy time until the pass runs out of ammunition?" Fu Wang laughed inwardly. This guess was simply a joke. Both sides were stalling for time. The longer this dragged on, the more disadvantageous the situation would be for Lu Shi. Gemin Pass had a steady stream of supplies, but Lu Shi's rations were running out every day. She was the one who couldn't afford to waste time. However, it wasn't a good idea to continue delaying. Neither side made a move, so there was no way they could fight. The spy said, "General, Lu Shi has been sending people to curry favor with you these days. This is clearly a disgusting move. There are already rumors going around in Gemin Pass. Many soldiers believe that General has accepted Lu Shi's conditions and wants to submit to him. 3 people make a tiger. When a rumor is repeated by many people, people will treat it as the truth." Fu Wang's position in the Mengs was awkward, and he had many spies around him. These spies had been unhappy with him for a long time. If the rumors were allowed to grow, the enemy wouldn't even need to act. Just these voices alone would be enough to kill Fu Wang. "Don't be anxious. The more anxious we are, the easier it is for us to fall into the other party's trap." Fu Wang said calmly, "What do you think Lu Shi, a woman, relied on to get to where she is today? If she was really a good-for-nothing, how could she make so many heroes bow down to her and serve her? We have to be patient and wait for the right time. Once we make a move, we have to choke her by the throat." Fu Wang was a child raised by wolves. It was his instinct to kill the enemy with one blow. Before he made a move, he would suppress his anxiety and not be easily swayed by his emotions. The spy said, "General, in that case, should we keep an eye on Lu Shi's every move? If anything happens?" Fu Wang shook his head and said, "No, the deeper the spy is, the harder it is for Lu Shi to find out. The more we contact him, the more likely it is for Lu Shi to find out. Once exposed, not only will this pawn be useless, but we will also be in a passive position. The key pawn must be used in the most critical position." "Yes, General." Fu Wang rubbed his eyebrows and said tiredly, "You can leave now." There was no one in the room. Fu Wang unrolled the scroll on the side of the table. It was a painting of a gorgeous woman. He touched the painting with his rough fingers and a magical power seemed to relax his furrowed eyebrows. The woman in the painting was the only one in many years who had fallen into his arms, only to be snatched away right in front of him. At the same time, under the watchful eyes of the soldiers, several tunnels leading out of the camp had been dug. Under the watchful eyes of the guards at Gemin Pass, Jiang Pingji transported a large amount of flammable wood and hid them in the tents. Everything was done in an orderly manner. There are many rumors in Gemin Pass. Many people believe that Fu Wang intends to surrender. It's about time. Yang Si gazed in the direction of Gemin Pass. His calm eyes seemed to be surging. "We're almost ready, but there's no movement from Gemin Pass. This Fu Wang is really patient. He's trying to stall for time with us. If we fight for time, I'm afraid we can't afford it. My lord, why don't we add fuel to the fire and force Fu Wang to make a move?" Jiang Pingji asked. "Add fuel? Oh. Fu Wang has mentioned beauty several times. Why don't we? You want Hui Jun to use a honey trap?" Jiang Pingji frowned and said decisively, "No. She would rather stall for a few more days than do that." She understood what Yang Si meant. If they were going to use a honey trap, who would be the most beautiful? Fu Wang had mentioned Hui Jun many times. Who else would be more suitable than Hui Jun? Yang Si opened his mouth but did not insist. Even so, Hui Jun was not a naive girl who lived in seclusion. For 7 or 8 days there was a lot of activity in the tent. She naturally noticed that something was wrong. Because she was with the army, she made herself look more ordinary. She did not stand out among the medics. The only thing different about her was that she did not sleep in the same bunk as the other medics. Instead, she slept near the main tent. "Langjun, I heard that the general in charge of Gemin Pass is called Fu Wang?" Jiang Pingji did not restrain herself, and Hui Jun had some understanding of the political and military affairs outside. "Yes." Hui Jun bit her lip and said, "I heard that Fu Wang likes beauties?" Jiang Pingji suddenly opened her eyes. Hui Jun almost jumped out of her skin. "Who told you this?" Hui Jun calmed herself down and whispered, "I heard it from the wounded soldiers in Wulong County." Jiang Pingji pursed her lips. What a bunch of gossips. They're seriously injured but they still won't stop. Hui Jun was amused and helpless. Chapter 787. You don't have to sacrifice yourself like this. Jiang Pingji wanted to say, I don't have to, but thinking about Huijuan's feelings, she swallowed the word back into her stomach. She said, the situation is still under control. I know what I'm doing. You don't have to think too much. Huijuan's expression was slightly gloomy. Her brows were furrowed. Not only would men be reluctant to see her go, even women would feel pity for her. But Langjun. Other than that, I don't know what else I can do for you. After Jiang Pingji's rejection, Huijun seemed to be deflated and dispirited. She said softly, Langjun once said that you don't take care of useless people. I've been living like a princess all these years and I don't even know how to take care of people. If I were in the casualty camp, even the most ordinary medical soldier would be more agile and capable than me. Thinking about it carefully, my skin and flesh seem so lowly, as if I can only sell myself for a living. At the end of her speech, Huijuan's voice even sounded a little choked and embarrassed. For Huijun, her past was wound so deep that her bones could be seen. Her skin and flesh had already rotted and had maggots. Even if she used the best rouge and face powder to cover it up, the stench and pain still followed her like a shadow. She could deceive the eyes of others, but she couldn't deceive herself. Silly girl. Jiang Pingji sighed slightly. Even if you're just an idle person, I see you as my sister. Even if you don't do anything and just act as a rich and idle person, I can still afford to take care of you. So what if it's your past? With me around, who dares to say a word about it? A person couldn't be bound by the past. She admired and felt sorry for Huijun. Naturally, she hoped that she could focus on the future. Jiang Pingji thought that Huijun was getting into a dead end because of her identity, so she said, if someone makes irresponsible remarks, let that person come to me. When we return to Wanzhou, I'll get someone to arrange a new identity for you. At that time you can set up your own household and be your own master. Huijun, who was originally sad, suddenly burst into laughter. She was amused by Jiang Pingji's words, but the latter didn't know what had happened. Although they were both women, Jiang Pingji's brain was fundamentally different from that of a normal person. Naturally, she wasn't as meticulous as Huijun. She could understand why Huijun was sad, but she couldn't understand why Huijun would suddenly laugh. The clouds dispersed and the rain stopped. A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Jiang Pingji suddenly remembered what the audience in the streaming room had said. She thought about it and felt that something was wrong. He felt that he had excluded himself from the category of women. Langjun, I don't have any other intentions. I just want to do my best for you. At this point, Huijun bit her full lower lip and said hesitantly, I'm not very knowledgeable, but I do know that the logistics are lacking now. Continuing to delay will only bring harm to Langjun. The general in charge of the Gemin Gate Pass is a lustful man. Langjun only needs to let me show myself in front of him. Even if I can't seduce him, I can at least make his soldiers suspicious of me. Once the army is not united, their combat power will be affected. This is very beneficial to us. Jiang Pingji frowned. She still didn't approve of it. It's too dangerous. There's no need. Langjun. Huijun plucked up her courage and grabbed Ji Yunshu's sleeve. Her tone carried the coquettish tone of a woman. Please allow this concubine. Jiang Pingji was indifferent. Her eyelids drooped. Her words left no room for negotiation. No means no. Huijun was a little discouraged, but she knew that Jiang Pingji was cold on the outside and soft-hearted on the inside. She might agree to this kind of thing if she was tortured a little more. Why not? After all, she had volunteered. Jiang Pingji said, even though Captain Meng said that Fu Wang is a good man, a general on the battlefield and a man in daily life are two completely different concepts. The latter will show mercy out of kindness, but the former will only consider the overall situation. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is heartless. Even if you are his wife or concubine, he will not be soft-hearted when he needs to sacrifice you, let alone a woman sent by the enemy. You have read a lot of unofficial history of the previous dynasty. The ancestor of the Mengs, Meng Jing, was known as the White Dragon among men. In order to boost the morale of the defeated soldiers, he personally killed his concubines and used their flesh to cook food. Isn't this heartless enough? He is the god of war that history praises. Huijuan's face turned pale. She knew what Jiang Pingji was worried about. As expected, if Fu Wang is a little more ruthless and kills you personally in order to stabilize the morale of the army and gain the trust of others, what will happen then? Beauty is indeed a weapon, but I hope that it can protect you and not become a double-edged sword that hurts you. You don't have to say anything more about this, I won't agree to it. Huijun had no choice but to run into a wall with Jiang Pingji. The next day she was about to go to the barracks when she coincidentally ran into Feng Zhen, who was feeling uneasy because of his alcohol addiction. Based on Feng Zhen's years of experience with women, he had long discovered that Huijuan's appearance was fake. Under her plain and unadorned appearance she must be a peerless beauty. However, she stayed by his lord's side. Feng Zhen could only admire her from afar and guess at her true appearance. He didn't dare to flirt with her. "What's wrong with you, Lady Hui?" Feng Zhen saw that she had a troubled look on her face and couldn't help but ask. Who would dare to bully someone under his lord's protection? Hui Jun was immersed in her own thoughts when she heard someone call her. Her heart skipped a beat and she suddenly woke up. "Good morning, Mr. Feng." She was still dressed like an ordinary soldier. Seeing Feng Zhen walk 2 steps closer, Hui Jun's expression became more flustered. Feng Zhen frowned. He became more cautious and suspicious. Staying in this barracks, with the Lord's protection, who could make Hui Jun show an expression of unease? Did Lady Hui run into some trouble? Feng Zhen asked. Hui Jun thought about it and looked around. Her eyes signaled for Feng Zhen to step aside and talk. She told him about her worries, which made Feng Zhen look at her in surprise. "Mr. Feng?" Feng Zhen came back to his senses and said, "Lady Hui's worries are not without reason. Using beauty to sow discord is indeed a solution." Jiamen Pass was abuzz with discussion. Everyone said that Fu Wang wanted to pledge allegiance to the Lord. If a peerless beauty appeared now, even if Fu Wang had a mouthful of mouths, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. However, Lady Hui, think carefully. If you do that, not only will you be at a disadvantage but your life will also be in danger. In order to eliminate rumors, the best way was to kill the beauty who offered herself to him. From what Fu Wang had done in the past, he was quite ruthless. It was not impossible for him to destroy a beauty. Hui Jun gritted her teeth and said, "If I can share Lang Juan's worries, I am willing to do it. Please advise me on how to get Lang Jun to agree." Feng Zhen's expression became even more strange. He sighed and said, "Femme fatale." Hui Jun's expression froze. He hurriedly added, "I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the Lord." Being able to make a good little girl sacrifice herself like this was more terrifying than femme fatale. "Lady Hui, come forward and talk. You only need to say this to the Lord." Chapter 788. Although Feng Zhen's style of doing things was unreliable, his brain was still reliable. Hui Jun did as he was told. Jiang Pingji sighed and agreed. One day the messenger from outside Jiamen Pass arrived. Fu Wang was about to ignore him when Fu Wang's mood plummeted as he looked at Meng Hun's bearded face. However, the messenger today was different. It wasn't Meng Hun. Fu Wang heard the messenger's report. Before he could say anything, the deputy general next to him mocked, "I heard that Lu Shi created a women's camp. Marching and fighting are obviously men's work. Why would he bring women to the battlefield? In my opinion, the so-called women's camp is full of tricks. They say they are soldiers who can fight, but who knows what kind of people they are. Now he even sent women as messengers." As soon as the deputy general spoke, the others all showed expressions of agreement. Women should not go to the battlefield. Women on the battlefield were not decent women. Since ancient times there had been no women in military camps. The women referred to the wives and concubines of the soldiers, who would bring their wives to war. As for prostitutes, they were not considered women in the eyes of the soldiers. They were just female animals. Fu Wang frowned. He had a rough idea of the identity of the messenger. "Messenger, please wait in the side hall. I will go there now." Hui Jun was wearing a thick bamboo hat that covered her face that could bring disaster to a country and cause suffering to the people. Fu Wang saw the woman's figure and confirmed her identity. She was indeed the woman from the other day. "How should I address you?" Fu Wang asked hypocritically. "Her Majesty the Empress?" Hui Jun lifted the thick white curtain. She sat upright on the right side and bowed to Fu Wang. "General, that's interesting. His Majesty is still very young. He is not even 20 years old. He is not married yet. How can there be an Empress?" Fu Wang's dark eyes stared straight at Hui Jun, and he saw that there was a trace of astonishment in her eyes. He had guessed Hui Jun's identity, but she did not know that the general was Fu Wang, the commander of Jiamen Pass. After a moment of shock, she felt some hatred in her heart. Her beautiful eyes glanced at Fu Wang's hands and she calmed herself down. That day it was this person who had almost killed Lang Jun with an arrow in the back. Although only her arm was injured in the end, Hui Jun applied medicine on Jiang Pingji's arm for 3 days. She kept this in mind. Fu Wang corrected himself. "The late Empress? That Lu Shi sure is daring to hide you." As the saying goes, the death of a man is like the extinguishing of a lamp. No matter how absurd the emperor was when he was still alive, or how many wrongs he had committed, he was already dead. How could he be held accountable? Under the manipulation of the royal family, the previous emperor was still in the wrong, but his mistake was because of the beauty of the enchantress. It was an objective mistake but a subjective mistake. Part of the blame was pushed to Huijun, calling her a demoness who brought disaster to the country. However, Huijun could not acknowledge this identity. She only smiled modestly. Rumor has it that the late empress was a beauty of her generation. How can a firefly's light compete with the moon's brilliance? General's words, I will take it as a compliment. Fu Wang did not have any concrete evidence in his hands, so there was no point in continuing to dwell on this issue. He said, Lu Shirong, how should I address this lady? My humble name is Huijun. Fu Wang said, what is Lu Shi's purpose in asking Lady Hui to come here? Huijun said calmly, I heard rumors in Gemin Pass that you have the intention to pledge allegiance to my lord? Fu Wang's eyebrows twitched, but his expression did not change. He said, Lady Hui must be joking. I am loyal to my lord. Why would I betray him so easily? Considering that Lady Hui is a woman, I will pretend that I did not hear what you said just now. Although he said that, his eyes were glued to Huijun, as if he was attracted by her appearance. However, Huijun was used to seeing all kinds of looks. Fu Wang's acting skills could not fool her. General, I am relieved to hear that. Huijun smiled sweetly, and her beautiful eyes seemed to be shining. My lord was also shocked when he first heard this news. My lord also said that she admires you as an upright man. You have pledged allegiance to the Mengs, which is really casting pearls before swine. If it were not for the fact that we are in the middle of a war, I might be able to become your confidant. It's better for General to clarify this kind of rumor as soon as possible, lest the soldiers under your command become uneasy and hurt General's prestige. Fu Wang's smile was a little forced. Not to mention that he did not have the intention to kill. Even if he did, he could not kill Huijun after she said that last sentence. If he killed her, it would be even more obvious. Thank you for your concern, Lady Hui. Fu Wang asked again, other than that, is there anything else, Magistrate Lu? Lu Shi and Jiang Pingji were both magistrates, but the one who came forward was the latter. Lu Shi was still hiding behind the scenes, so his presence was weak. This Magistrate Lu was naturally referring to Jiang Pingji. Huijun frowned, like a frowning Shizi when she held her heart. My lord does not have any other instructions, but I do have one thing. I wonder if the general, Fu Wang said, just say it, Lady Hui. Ever since that day I have been longing for the general. Now that I have met you, it is even more. Huijun's cheeks were slightly flushed and her eyes were moist. She said shyly and timidly, it is just that I know my limits, and I dare not tarnish the general's illustrious reputation with my dirty body. Fu Wang's heart beat even faster, and he could not control his eyelids. Being confessed to by such a beauty, even Fu Wang's heart swayed a little, but he quickly steadied his mind. Lust was like a knife above the head. Although the flower in front of him was the most beautiful in the world, it was not only thorny but also poisonous. He could not touch it. Lady Hui, are you recommending yourself to sleep with me? Fu Wang's heart skipped a beat. He knew that it was impossible, but his eyes did not let go of the opportunity to admire her. Huijun raised her sleeve to cover her lips and smiled. How could that be? Could it be that in the general's eyes, a woman expressing her feelings is recommending herself to sleep with you? It is just an ordinary love, and it is not necessary to obtain it. Looking at the general's handsome appearance, have you ever received the love of a woman before? In other words, she was all about flirting and not marrying. She was only responsible for fanning the flames and extinguishing the flames as she saw fit. Fu Wang felt a little awkward. In layman's terms, how could he not feel awkward when someone was talking about feelings and his mind went blank for a moment? Huijun's appearance was beyond Fu Wang's expectations, but she only came to take a look and then left. Although she had left, she left behind the legend of a peerless beauty. Fu Wang's confidant saw this and asked worriedly, General, do we need to stop the rumors? Not for now. Isn't this what Lu Shi wants to see? Fu Wang closed his eyes and said, how are the preparations for the chess piece? We received news not long ago that the preparations are almost complete. Lu Shi has not noticed anything. After all, in the eyes of ordinary people, this chess piece was indeed buried very deeply. Who would have thought that the confidant of the late Wulong County chief was their spy? For the next 2 days, Huijun took over Meng Hun's harassment work. Every day she would come to Gemin Pass for 2 hours before leaving. As the saying goes, 3 people make a tiger. Not only did the Meng family spy completely suspect Fu Wang, even his confidant could not sit still. General, what are you? Chapter 789. Fu Wang raised his eyebrows in the face of his confidant's doubts. He looked majestic as if he was looking down on all living things. What's wrong? The confidant wanted to ask his general if he had really fallen in love with a woman. But when his eyes met with Fu Wang's, he couldn't ask any more questions. Although it was said that the general liked beauties, he knew that Fu Wang wasn't a real lecher. So the confidant swallowed the words he was about to say and changed his words. General, if you don't do anything, Jiamen Pass is going to be in chaos. Fu Wang's confidant furrowed his thick black eyebrows. He looked fierce and worried. You know, Meng Zhan is a suspicious old fox. He has never trusted you for years. He has planted a lot of spies around you. If you do anything, those spies will definitely do something bad to you. Fu Wang waved his hand and said carelessly, I know about it. Those despicable people have been jealous of me for a long time. It's funny that those idiots are so useless. They have no talent except for jealousy. Meng Zhan would rather put me in an important position than give them a high position. If there were talented people under his command, Meng Zhan wouldn't have tolerated Fu Wang's bad temper. Fu Wang knew that, which was why he dared to do this. He knew that as long as he didn't betray the Mengs, no matter what he did, the Mengs would tolerate it. Every time he thought of Meng Zhan's sullen face, he felt extremely happy. That day Huijun came to visit as usual. Along the way, the intense hostility in her surroundings made her heart tighten. These gazes were mixed with undisguised covetousness and possessiveness. She was still smiling when she saw Fu Wang as if she wasn't disturbed. General, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Fu Wang said calmly, Lady Huijun, just say it. In the next few days, you should be careful of the despicable people. Huijun looked at Fu Wang with her beautiful eyes. She said in a joking tone, I don't want you to be suspicious, so I don't dare to say more. But in history, many famous generals were destroyed by despicable people. It's a pity? I'm watching coldly. General's vice-general seems to be disloyal. I'm afraid he will hurt you. This was a blatant provocation, but it was also the truth. Fu Wang's eyes moved and he said calmly, Thank you for your concern, Lady Hui. I appreciate it. He had the intention to let outsiders see the internal discord and use it to confuse Jiang Pingji so that she would let down her guard. It was just that Fu Wang did not expect the old man to be so cunning. His arrangements were all within Jiang Pingji's expectations. The atmosphere in Jiamen Pass was getting more and more intense. It seemed that Fu Wang was really going to follow the beauty and surrender to the enemy. Jiang Pingji heard the spy's report. Fu Wang was preparing to strike at midnight the next day. Everyone in the tent rubbed their fists, eager to get into action. They couldn't wait to rush to Jiamen Pass. In the past half a month they could only watch the Jiamen Pass unwillingly. Every day they could only vent their excess energy by training. Now he could finally go all out. Among the generals, Dian Yin was the calmest. Li Yun, the little angel, and Meng Hun couldn't contain their joy. In order to quickly accumulate military merits, the former was eager to fight every day. Without military merits, how could he marry the sweetheart of a noble family? Meng Hun, on the other hand, had been suppressing his anger for the past few days because he could finally demand payment from the Mengs. They looked at Jiang Pingji waiting for their lord to assign them their tasks. This Fu Wang is really patient. He waited for almost half a month before making his move. Feng Zhen calculated the time in his mind and sneered. Tomorrow is the new moon, the darkest day of the month. Fu Wang has been thinking about this for a long time. If they hadn't seen through Fu Wang's plan so quickly, they might have really let down their guard after half a month. Furthermore, Fu Wang had spies in Wulong County. If they worked together they might really end up like the chief of Wulong. No matter how carefully he thought about it, once his plan is seen through, all his arrangements will be for naught. If the night attack was seen through, even a real god of war would be at a disadvantage, let alone Fu Wang. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and said, Don't be careless. We have to be cautious. Even if victory was in their grasp, they couldn't be arrogant, not to mention that they had only foreseen their opponent's plans. The final outcome hadn't been decided yet. An arrogant army would be defeated. She always remembered these 4 words. Li Yun suddenly thought of something and asked Jiang Pingji, My lord, if we make our move tomorrow night, then Lady Hui. In fact, Jiang Pingji didn't want Huijun to go to Jiamen Pass tomorrow. It was too risky. Now that they were at the end of the tunnel, Fu Wang might go all out and detain Huijun. If that happened, Jiang Pingji wouldn't be able to help. But Hui Jun had been there for several days. If she didn't go tomorrow, it was hard to guarantee that Fu Wang wouldn't be suspicious. Once he became suspicious, it would alert the enemy and all their previous efforts would be in vain. Hui Jun was sensible and took the initiative to say to Jiang Pingji, "Of course we will do it tomorrow or Fu Wang will definitely be suspicious." Jiang Pingji pursed her lips and furrowed her handsome brows. "I have an idea." She glanced at everyone in the tent. Seeing her eyes, Yang Si and Feng Zhen instinctively had a bad feeling. "Tomorrow I will disguise myself as an ordinary guard and sneak into Gemin Pass with Hui Jun. I will support you from the inside." Feng Zhen suppressed his impulsive thoughts. Why did his lord always like to take risks? She went wherever there was danger? But my lord, if she had to take the risk, Feng Zhen would rather choose someone else. Jiang Pingji said, "Don't worry, Zisher. I dare to do this because I have confidence. Everything is more important than the big picture." Facing Jiang Pingji, Feng Zhen knew that he had no choice but to compromise. At this moment he missed the people in Wanzhou. If they were there, they might be able to stop his lord from courting death. Yang Si said, "My lord has made up her mind, so we can't stop her. If things go south, my lord, you should prioritize your own safety. Tomorrow night, Fu Wang will definitely sneak out of the pass with his elite troops. This is also when the defense at Jiamen Pass is at its weakest. We can split up our forces and send one group to wait for Fu Wang and his men to walk into the trap. The other group will take advantage of the night to sneak around and break through the pass. If my lord can make trouble in Jiamen Pass and make them panic, it will be easy to break through the pass." By the time Fu Wang returned, they would have already broken through Jiamen Pass and escaped without a trace. Her strategists had already taken a step back, so Jiang Pingji couldn't challenge their bottom line. Otherwise they would be furious. Chapter 790. On the first day of the new moon, dark clouds covered the sky. There was no moonlight at all. Whether it was Jiang Pingji's camp or Jiamen Pass, both sides were filled with tension. The smell of gunpowder was strong. Fu Wang's expression suddenly changed when he heard the news of Huijuan's arrival. The two deputies looked at each other. They had almost forgotten about this woman. One of the deputies said, "General, if that woman sees the movements in the pass, once loose she is on guard." Another added, "Yes, for the sake of the bigger picture we can't let her go." Fu Wang wanted to chase Huijun out so that she wouldn't see something she shouldn't see. Not only would it ruin his plan, but it would also bring her death. However, the deputy general had already spoken. Fu Wang couldn't show his selfishness. He said, "I know what I'm doing." Huijun was brought to the side hall. Even though her face under the heavy curtains was cold, she still calmed herself down. "General, it's only been a day. Why do you look so pale?" Huijun smiled naturally as if she didn't notice the unusual atmosphere in Jiamen Pass. She took small steps forward and was only a few feet away from Fu Wang. He could even smell her body fragrance. Fu Wang looked at Huijun seriously. His dark eyes were filled with undisguised strong emotions. "My soldiers are disobedient. It's a little tiring. I'm not feeling well today. I've made a fool of myself in front of you." Huijuan's heart tightened when she heard how Fu Wang addressed her. She didn't know if he did it intentionally or unintentionally. "I've told you before that some of your subordinates have ulterior motives. Could it be that they are the ones causing trouble and bringing trouble to the general?" Huijun listened attentively. She wasn't an innocent girl. Fu Wang's gaze at her today was very strange. Her heart skipped a beat and the look in her eyes changed. She looked at Fu Wang with deep concern. Fu Wang leaned slightly and asked her, "Are you worried about me, Lady Hui?" "I've said before that I've admired you for a long time." Huijun nodded shyly. She wasn't overly innocent, but she didn't seem to be fawning either. It tickled Fu Wang's heart. She was trying to seduce him. "Excienmu?" Fu Wang took the opportunity to catch Huijuan's outstretched hand. It felt warm and smooth to the touch. There was an indescribable feeling, as if a feather had touched the softest part of his heart. "Please speak frankly, Lady Hui. I am but a boorish person. It is inevitable that I will misunderstand." Huijun secretly wanted to withdraw her hand, but the other party's palm was like an iron hoop. She couldn't move at all. "The general is mighty and extraordinary. As long as it's a woman, which woman wouldn't like him? Do you really want me to say it out loud?" Towards the end, her tone had a sweet and numbing tone, which shocked Fu Wang so much that he almost couldn't hold her hand. Even though he knew that Hui Jun was lying, Fu Wang was still very happy. Apart from Jiang Pingji and the system, no one else knew that Hui Jun was capable of seduction. The so-called charm art was not just mind control in the ordinary sense. It was a very high-level mind interference that ordinary people would not be able to resist. Even Hui Jun herself didn't know much about it. She only knew that others were easily influenced by her, but she didn't know the specifics. Fu Wang laughed bitterly and his mind became clearer. He said, "Everyone says that the home of a gentle woman is the grave of a hero. I used to scoff at it, but now I understand that I'm too inexperienced. If the home of a gentle woman is Huinyangzi, few men in the world can resist it." Hui Jun asked with a smile. Her delicate body softened and she leaned against his chest. She asked meaningfully, "To me this is probably the most touching words of love. I wonder if the general is in the majority of men's group, or the few men group." The tip of his nose sniffed the fragrant body fragrance. It was sweet but not greasy and it stirred up his feelings. He secretly glanced at the sky outside, smiled, and carried her horizontally, causing her to cry out in surprise. In front of Huinyangzi, Fu Jingtu is just an ordinary man. Fu Wang, whose courtesy name was Jingtu, was given to him by Fu Yang when he was still alive. Apart from a few confidants, few people knew about it. On the other side, the guards who followed Hui Jun into the pass were all settled in a remote place. There was a stable nearby and the smell was very strong. Jiang Pingji was disguised as an ordinary guard. Along the way she smelled a different kind of tension. "My lord, what do we do now?" Liyun lowered his head and asked Jiang Pingji in a low voice. Yes, Liyun had also snuck in. Now he had a heavy responsibility. Not only did he have to think of a way to cause trouble in Jiamen Pass, but he also had to protect Jiang Pingji. If his lord was hurt, he could imagine the sinister smiles of the men in his mind. Looking at the situation, they want to detain us so that we can't leak any information to the outside world. That's just what we want. If Fu Wang didn't intend to detain them, Jiang Pingji would have to worry about how to justifiably stay in Jiamen Pass. The night was deep, and there was not a trace of moonlight in the sky. It was pitch black as far as the eye could see, as if a ferocious beast was hibernating in the depths. "I'm only worried about Hui Jun now. Fu Wang is still trustworthy. He thinks that he has victory in his grasp, so he won't kill Hui Jun to raise the morale of the troops. But it's hard to guarantee that the people around him won't think they're smart." Jiang Pingji frowned. She couldn't rule out that possibility. Liyun comforted her. "Lady Hui is smart. She'll definitely be safe and sound." Jiang Pingji smiled. "She's really smart." In the void there was the sun in her heart. Because of this, Jiang Pingji cared for her and took care of her. But Jiang Pingji didn't expect that a woman's mind was really hard to guess. Even she didn't expect that Hui Jun would quietly do something so big. She gave him a taste of his own medicine and ruthlessly tricked Fu Wang. She really didn't know whether Fu Wang was a man or a wolf. How could the love between a man and a woman be like that? He almost swallowed her whole. When she took a breath and her mind gradually became clear, Hui Jun took a deep breath and her eyes were sharp. The seat next to her was already cold and Fu Wang was nowhere to be seen. Hui Jun raised her hand to touch her aching neck, collarbone and full lips. She spat softly. Her voice was hoarse. "Serves you right." She added a lot of purified sleeping grass powder to the makeup on her skin and lips. Most of it went into Fu Wang's stomach. He was a man, so how could he taste all kinds of makeup? It wasn't wrong for him to let down his guard against women, especially beautiful women. If Fu Wang dared to do this, he shouldn't blame her for retaliating. Since he planned to use sleeping grass to trick the Lord, he shouldn't blame her for returning the favor. She moved her body slightly and felt a throbbing pain in her private parts. Hui Jun couldn't help but think, "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."